Sword of Coming Chapter 898. Before I saw the hermit, I was still curious about what a brilliant man he must be to be worthy of the Ning Jianxian, who is the #1 person in the world. Even in the presence of my brother Zhong, I just confessed it. I have had this doubt more than once, twice, until I saw it today. I didn't know what a perfect match was made in heaven. I have seen Ning Jianxian, and I know that all women in the world are vulgar fans. When I saw the hidden officials with my own eyes, I knew what it means to be young and promising. I wasted my time, a lot of years, and I really lived to be a dog. I've gone. By the way, Lord Qin, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Su Gu, the lonely girl named Gusu, but I am the aunt of the 3 ants and 6 poems. I belong to the same temperament with the Zhong brothers. To be honest, the reason why I was able to marry Jinlan with Zhong Qi, traveling with Tongyi's Hao, said 1,000 things and 10,000, thanks to Ning Jiangxian's matchmaking. Zhong Kui looked at the fat man with sincere expression and sincere speech, which was pitiful. It's not all lies. Gusu has questioned Qin Pingan many times. For example, this servant must be a big pig's trotter with intestines, and his stomach is not good, and he can't eat any whole grains. He read a few books about sages and sages. Bad learning, a bit of an injustice, gentleman good at rhetoric, and I want to come to Ningyao. The qualifications are too good. I definitely don't know the dangers of the Red World. She grew up in the Great Wall of Jianxi. A scholar from a foreign country, pry the corners of the entire Great Wall of Sword Qi, Qin Pingan was fascinated by his rhetoric. How has such things been missing in the novels of Smoke Powder and Yuxian? However, the reason why the fat man is so honest at the moment, and his words are so diligent and flattering, is naturally afraid of Ning Yao, who is temporarily missing. The world's ghosts, in addition to fearing the Thunder Method, fearing the Dragon and Tiger Mountain celestial masters of the Yellow and Purple nobles, are more afraid of the great monks with luck, because they will be overcome by nature. Cui Dongshan shook his sleeves, which is very desolate. My family style is really a weird thing. Counting with your fingers, it seems that only the 14 realms like Lao Guanzhou and Zhengjuzhong can be avoided? This ghost from a human emperor was once one of Zhoumi's followers in the Haoran world. It has been laid out for a long time, but when Zhoumis ascended to the sky and left, it was like taking away his luck and was quickly ascended by the sword. Ning Yao, who is in the vast world, found traces, and was intercepted and hunted by the Confucian temple at sea. But the lean camel is bigger than a horse. Since it is a fairyland that has fallen from the Ascension realm, it cannot be regarded as an ordinary fairy, just like Jianghu. Now there are a few fairies in the world, dare to say that they are his opponents, such as the great sword of Gao Jieqingao. Xian Su Hao, on the side of Kishandu and Yuguazang Wangji day and night, mentioning the old suzerain Jianghu, Su Hao could only say that he dared to ask the sword with him, but never thought that he could beat Jianghu. Under normal circumstances, this ghost, in Tongyi's Hao, which is seriously lacking in top combat power, is considered a rare opponent in real combat. That mausoleum in the sea, the tomb is suspended in the sky so it can be hidden for many years. If it is said that a night ship that is erratic, is a mosquito and flies in a mansion, it strays everywhere and occasionally makes a little noise. Then this fatty's place of cultivation is the gecko lying motionless in the corner, so it is harder to be spotted by the Confucian temple. Probably because of reaching out and not hitting the smiley person. Looking at the smiling young hidden official, the fat man took a reassurance pill. He just shook his arms around the vultures of public practice, and passed the level easily. What? He is young and likes this set of shameless people who wants face and doesn't boast. The fat man asked tentatively, Qin Shanju, where is immortal Ning Jian? I am in love with reason, so I have to thank her face to face. After all, I resisted, and instead of learning from Zhong Kui, I directly called Ning Yao his younger sister-in-law. Qin Pingan smiled and said, she has returned to the colorful world. The fat man was full of regret, rubbing his hands gently, and his momentum changed a bit. Although he lowered his head, his waist straightened a bit. That's right, next to Qin Pingan, there is no ascendant swordsman right now. Don't look at the fat man's slick tone and boring speech, he is just like an unlearned market helper, but there is something that he really spotted. If Qin Pingan was born out of the sky like Sword Immortal Su Jun in Jinjiazhou, the fat man would not follow Zhong Kui to Shindu Mountain, he would only dare to stay far away, waiting for Zhong Kui to finish his next celebration. Continue to travel with companions. But since Qin Pingan was still in the Jade Realm a few years ago, no matter what Qin Ping's feat frightened others in the wild world, the fat man can be sure of something. Qin Pingan is definitely not a 14th level monk. As for how he can interrupting a highest city in the world, dragging and competing with Fei Fei for a dragging down river, and even able to open Tuyueshan with swords, and behead an ascendant peak sword repair great demon. It doesn't matter, the fat man still kills a truth. Go the shortcut of Qin Pingan is like a greedy the great thief who has his own merits, waits for the young hidden official to return to Howran, let alone the 14th realm. It is estimated that even if it can keep the golden core realm, even if Hongfu is in full bloom. This idea of the fat man was the result of the final deduction based solely on Zhong Kuei's chatting with him. In Zhong Kuei's view there is actually no problem, even the truth. The fat man suddenly noticed the young monk in the yellow hat and blue shirt, and began to smile slightly, not smiling. The widow has cultivated the Tao for 3,000 years, and he is invincible. If it weren't for that Madame Tundun, who was so stubborn that she couldn't even get out of her mouth when she turned off the light, otherwise a Shui pit would have changed its owner long ago. Qin Pingan turned his head and smiled. Xiaomo, treat your distinguished guests well. Xiaomo nodded and said, don't worry, son. Only two kinds of guests are distinguished guests. One is personally greeted by his own son, and the other is able to eat melon seeds. Zhong Kuei glanced at the fat man doing it himself. Just now when he came on the road, Gu Su said he had to say that he wanted to try the deep and shallow water on this cloud-covered Shindu mountain. As long as the other monk is singled out, don't worry about it. As a senior on the mountain, I have to teach them one mountain and one mountain high reason, lest young people set up the next sect. They will raise their tails, eyes higher than the top, and look down on the heroes of the world, and they will suffer a lot. But if the other party doesn't talk about justice, fights, and likes to hug them, then you Zhong Kuei has to persuade me to fight, lest I get up in the fight, and the shots are not serious, causing the young people around Qin Pingan to hang up and go back to participate in the celebration with injuries. It's not pretty. Qin Pingan pulled Zhong Kuei alone for a walk. Everything is difficult at the beginning. The preparation of a new sect often involves many secret formations in the early stage. It is not easy to hire mountain craftsmen and organ teachers. It can only be done by the veterans. At this moment they are busy in the ferry in the mountain. There are as many as 200 Fulu leisure and government puppets, and their ranks are not high. They are much lower than those rain workers, mountain pickers and fish catchers on the ferry, but they are more than enough to work as coolies. The supervisors, responsible for driving the puppets and driving the powerful men, are exactly three. The exiled monk from Yezigang Shi Tower was not very old, more than 100 years old, and his realm was 2 views of the sea in 1 cave, and the 3 of them were still secret guests of Shindu Mountain. As soon as Zhong Kuei stretched out his hand, Qin Pingan already handed over a jug of wine. Zhong Kuei lifted the red paper mud seal, lowered his head and sniffed, said a good drink and asked with a smile, "Did you fall on the side of Toyue Mountain?" Qin Pingan nodded. Fortunately the martial arts realm has not fallen much, but he has fallen back from the Guasian level, otherwise he would not dare to go out. Zhong Kuei turned his head and raised his chin toward Xiaomo. "There is such a guardian next to me. What are you afraid of? Change to me. When you go out, you have to walk sideways like a dart and shout all the way. Mountain." Qin Pingan was puzzled. "You can see Xiaomo's realm cultivation level? Mr. Xiaomo is ingenious." Zhong Kuei smiled and shook his head and said in his heart, "I can only see some long-standing causal entanglements and roughly piece together the truth, such as a long Dao from the wild world or a sword repairer. Because he died under the sword of Mr. Xiaomo, many of these immortals are still unresolved, and they are naturally ascended predecessors with a story. Ordinary people and monks on the mountain have completely different visions of the world. Then there are changes between Wangqi and ordinary monks. The 2 of them sat on a piece of xianxia timber as thick as the mouth of a well." Qin Pingan took out a wooden box from his sleeve and handed it to Zhong Kuei. "I wanted to give it to you a long time ago. We have never had a chance since we started it for many years. Meet. In the early years, I bought a piece of goods at the Qingfufeng at Dalongshan Ferry, a set of 4 celestial masters cut ghost money." Zhong Kuei took over and opened the wooden box directly. "Yeah, good stuff. Did you spend a lot of money?" Qin Pingan didn't pretend and quoted the price. "It's not a small amount, but 5 grains of rain." Zhong Kuei sighed. "How many pots of 5-year brewed plum wine can be bought, and a few roasted whole lambs? Even I, who is used to being the accountant, can't be counted." Qin Pingan said for no reason, "Being the accountant, I still learned from you." Zhong Kuei smiled and said, "It doesn't feel good." Zhong Kuei had been to Shujin Lake, but Qin Pingan was so exhausted that he lay on the ground and fell asleep. Zhong Kuei didn't bother at the time. Qin Pingan laughed off. Zhong Kuei took a sip of wine. He only said that there were 3 Confucian academies in Tonggishao in the past. In fact, Zhong Kuei had many friends. Teacher, classmate, good friend, old man is like a tree in the garden, and the autumn breeze is sparse day by day. Qin Pingan said, I heard that Xuanhuan went to Longhushan Heavenly Master's mansion and returned home this time. Have you seen it? Zhong Kuei rolled his eyes and said, which pot does not open or lift which pot? There was a moment of silence. Zhong Kuei couldn't help sighing and put his palm against his chin. I didn't think about what I could say after I went there. Besides, there may be a closed door, let's talk about it later. In fact, the biggest knot is the Qianhu Jianyang who is cultivating Taoism in Longhu Mountain. According to Zhong Kuei, it is not the lady proprietor who opened the inn back then. Back then, together with the heroic spirits of Skeleton Beach, Jingwenqing, were ordered to go to the Western Buddhist countries. Zhong Kuei once asked a respected Buddhist dragon elephant. He asked 2 questions and reincarnated as a human being. Am I still me? Even if you can resuscitate, recover memories, remembering the past lives of Lu predecessor, who is the older and the younger? Qin Pingan roughly guessed the entanglement in Zhong Kuei's heart, and didn't say anything. There was some embarrassment. It was not all the authorities were obsessed with bystanders, and the authorities might have thought too thoroughly. Zhong Kuei began to change the subject. In your light, I saw Wui in Xinjiang City. He and Master Qianghu kept hiding their heads and tails on the Yiming Road, because the 2 ascending realm ghosts were there. Be extremely cautious, it's almost equivalent to the mountain and wild repairs on our side. They are all ascending. They still have no branches and leaves. They don't gather the Yin soldiers without killing them. They are doing the business of the feudal town, and they have unique means to hide. Breath, just slowly eating away the aura of clear spirit, so the underworld is quiet because of the headache. There is no such thing as a thorn in the flesh, but just letting it go. After all, it is not plausible and there is a suspicion of negligence. So when I saw Wui at the time, I moved with affection, understood reason and took a mouthful of a senior. I finally convinced him and helped him find an official position before leaving. I heard not long ago that Senior Wu Tai soon, pulling out the radish to bring out the mud is a little rewarding. If not unexpected, Senior Wu Tai is busy looking for the master right now. Qin Pingan asked in his heart, the founder of Xinjiang City who is now in Lingxiang? Zhong Kuei shook his head and said, after seeing Wuxi I have checked 2 files and there is no clue. There is another one that I cannot go to temporarily. I will look for opportunities in the future to see if I can go there and look through the list. Qin Pingan asked about the Green Book. The name of the Green Book is almost equivalent to the so-called rank of the immortal class in the Zhiguai novels. For example, Lao Guanzhu used to travel to small towns with Taoist ancestors before, and took the initiative to visit Luapa Mountain. The rare Taoist painting presented by Lao Guanzhu was not taught by those who have immortal names and green books in ancient times. In fact, the clear and distinct route means that the water of the well does not violate the river water in the true sense. Just like Qin Pingan traveled through the mountains and rivers of the 3 continents, the pure martial artist and the trainer, the genealogy teacher and the Yamazawa Yeshio, the relationship between each other is intricate, and there are constant disputes, but there are few direct conflicts between the trainers and the gods of mountains and rivers, especially the Qinghuang Temple. Of case. Regarding the archives of the Hades, there are few records in the Summer Palace, with only some scattered fragments. On the side of the Fire Temple in Dali capital, Feng Anti holds the Baiwafuti distilled beverages with 10,000 years of soil as the mud. It used to be every 100 years. We'll pay tribute to the 3 Ming forces, but at that time Aunt Feng seemed to have deliberately omitted a certain force, and only mentioned with Chen Ping and about the 6th palace of the ghost mansion of Fengdu, as well as Fang's Hushin Qingjun, who is in charge of the heaven and the blessed land of the earth and all the immortals. According to Aunt Feng's statement, Qing Fangzhou Mountain, which was ruled by the monarch, was the mansion of the commander who took charge of the death record. And the name of the upper life. The rules are strict, the ceremonies are cumbersome, and they are step by step, just like the officialdom of Yang. Then Qin Pingan said something about the immortal way, hoping that Zhong Kuei would help as much as possible to check the person's past life roots and feet without breaking the rules and prohibitions. Zhong Kuei nodded and agreed, remembering the fake Taoist monk from Aquarius. His name was Nian Jing, the word Xianwei the name of Xuanhuan Taoist and the birthplace and birth date. Qin Pingan smiled and said, there are people in the DPRK, it is convenient. Zhong Kuei said solemnly, it's your skill to make friends like me, you can be complacent. Qin Pingan drank a sip of wine and wiped the corners of his mouth with the back of his hand. Learned. Qin Pingan glanced at the fat man and asked in his heart, how can this Eugene follow you? Zhong Kuei shook the hip flask. It is the meaning of the saint of rituals, how can I refuse? But after a long time, in fact, it still makes do, of course. The premise is that you will temporarily take over, otherwise I have been beaten to death by this fat man with ill-tempered temperament. It's been 100 times. This fat man who now claims to be Su Gu and Taoist Gusu, his real name is Eugene. He was known as the Emperor of the Ages when he was alive, and he was infamous after his death. In any case, an emperor almost made the feat of one country as one continent earlier than the Dali Song clan. It is probably not too much to criticize and brutalize in the history books of later generations. It's not very reasonable just to scold him for being faint. Zhong Kuei lifted the hip flask and touched Qin Pingan lightly. Yeah, you are well informed. Do you all know the fat man's real name? Qin Pingan smiled and said, I'm not afraid that Eugene will seek revenge with me. I know myself and the enemy and be prepared for it. In fact, leaving aside some secret history of the palace, Qin Pingan may now know Eugene better than Eugene. National titles and various reigns, important edicts issued, policies for governing the country, resumes, posthumous titles of the ministers of civil and military affairs in the court, and Qin Pingan did not miss a single word in the archives of the Confucian Temple's merits. A copy, in addition to Qing Yujing Sheng Siping, asked in detail about some gossip that should not be recorded in the Confucian Temple. Therefore, in Qin Pingan's Xianhu library, there has long been an extra secret file dedicated to the ghost Eugene, and he regards Eugene as the pinnacle of the Ascension realm. 5 thunders rectify the law, Long Hushan Thunder Board. Just to mention that the Book of Alchemy contains several types of talismans specially used to discourage ghosts. For this reason, Qin Pingan meticulously refined 700 or 800 Huangshi talisman. In order to one day be fortunate to meet, there will be opportunity to entertain distinguished guests. There are only a handful of monks who have similar treatments, such as Sui Chu Gong Wu Shuangjiang, and Pei Min, one of the 3 masters in swordsmanship. It's not an exaggeration to put it at all. If Qin Pingan has never fallen into a realm, he is still the sword repairer of the Yupu realm and the real martial artist of the realm. He is alone, without the help of external forces, and he can completely wrestle with a ghost in the fairyland. Anyway, the fairy is not. I haven't played. Yunyao of the 9 Realms Immortal Hall, and Han Yushu of Wanyaozong have all experienced them. If Eugene is not with Zhong Kuei, but a narrow encounter, even if there is no Xiao Mo around him as a follower, Qin Pingan will not be a ghost who has fallen into a fairyland. Zhong Kuei tweeted, "This is too much to say." With Ning Yao as a Taoist companion who would dare to provoke Qin Pingan easily. There may be some secret calculations, but it is impossible to explain the provocation on the face. Now the 2 nominal co-lords of the world, Ning Yao in the colorful world, are magnificent in the barren world. And both of them are ascendant realm sword repairs with great avenues of expectation. Under the 14th realm, who can't weigh his own weight. It might be okay to say now that Ning Yao has not yet entered the 14th realm. The number 1 person in the colorful world is still relatively not so scary. Moreover, the current has not really changed, and there are now several 14th realm great monks in the world. Do things both don't dare to be too capricious. When the sky changes, it's like the shackles are gone. All 14th level cultivators' character or heart will have many subtle changes, and when they do things they won't be so conservative. As for Ning Yao's temper, the mountain monks in Howren's world already knew roughly. If she had a good temper, she wouldn't be able to fly into the world with the sword, but she didn't say hello to the Confucian temple. As soon as Zhong Kuei left, Eugene suddenly felt a little pressure. After all, there are many people on the other side, and he is a dragon who crosses the river, and the strong dragon does not suppress the snake. There is really a conflict. Zhong Kuei must turn his elbow out. The kid Qin Pingan seems to have been injured, hurting Dadao's roots, so he has to hide here to retreat. It seems that he has a good relationship with Zhong Kuei and is willing to leave the customs temporarily, so he was a sword intent before show it out. That's the way a sign that the heart is fluctuating, and the realm is not yet firm. That's why I just moved 1 step horizontally, hee showing weakness. The fat man looked at the little girl, began to put on the elders and said with a smile, "I heard that you knew Zhong Kuei when you were very young?" Pei Qian nodded. The world of this ghost is more complicated. There are horrors of corpses spreading across the wild and starving for thousands of miles. There are also scenes of prosperity, singing and dancing and fertile soil. There is also a thin man wearing a very loose dragon robe, sitting on a dragon chair. Self-drinking judging, staring blankly at the opening doors from north to south, the vision spread all the way. Eugene sighed and nodded and said, "Blink of an eye, she is the big girl." Pei Qian twitched at the corner of his mouth. How did Eugene know Pei Qian's talent? For the time being, the fat man only knew Qin Pingan's disciple. The little girl whose name was Zheng Qian was a martial artist of 9 realms and she was well known on the Howren Mountain. But I don't know that the 3 people who are right below are actually an ending martial artist, an immortal, and an ascendant peak swordsman. I don't even know that the boy in white is equal to half an embroidered tiger in Aquarius. I don't know that the young man in the yellow hat and green shirt used to make wine with the old masters. 10,000 years ago he most liked asking the sword with the strong. In fact, after Eugene left the undersea tomb, the person who most wanted to see was the embroidered tiger Cui Yang, who was a master of the country, and he was sincerely regarded as half a fellow man. Fortunately, Jiangshan is the greatest beauty. The iron cavalry shook the ground like thunder, and it was a kind of luck to walk all over the mountains and rivers. Zhong Kui said suddenly, "Stretch out your hand." Qin Pingan passed a hand over. Zhong Kui is like a doctor taking the pulse. In an instant there was a vision from the sky and the earth, and the sky over the entire Shindu mountain boundary was densely covered with dark clouds, and the sea of clouds was rolling, extremely heavy, covering the sun, and in a flash the day was like night. Xiao Mo hesitated for a moment and did not go there. Since that Zhong Kui is a friend of his own son, he can be trusted. Pei Qian is worried. Cui Dongshan shook his snow-white sleeves suddenly, offering a golden flying sword like a wheat ear, castrated like a rainbow. The sword light circulated sharply in the air, and quickly drew a huge golden circle, instantly reminiscent of the vision. Band not right, the secret is leaked outside. Eugene's eyelids trembled. This young man named Cui Dongshan was actually a hidden fairy, or a sword repairer. So Eugene cautiously said, "If you have some misunderstandings, why don't you just let the wind dissipate? Misery is also bitter. Is there a poor ghost in the world who has a more ill-fated life than yourself? Everything is difficult, and people are always down. Wuxi is a ghost and immortal as well as Xianpin City." You would like to hear what Zhong Kui said. The last time Wuxi appeared in the barren world, he still teamed up with Master Xianghu, and one of the barbaric old thrones, the old ancestor Zhu. Tired of fighting, lost money, and moved out. Master Shanzhu pleaded with Zhu Nai, and saved the fairy hairpin city. But Eugene couldn't think of anything. The man in front of him was called Xiao Mo, but he used to chase and kill Yang Ji, who was also one of the old thrones. Then Zhu Wei came over after hearing the news and rushed to help Yang Ji, and Xiao Mo took his sword and evacuated. Xiao Mo reached out and grabbed the fat man's arm and asked with a smile, "Senior Gusu, why don't we choose a secluded place and learn from each other?" The fat man snorted and sneered, "Wait a moment." Then he turned his head to look at Zhong Kui, coughed a few times and screamed like a pig in a thunderous manner, and shouted with Zhong Kui, "Brother Zhong, help me." Xiao Mo had to let go of his hand and gave up the idea of inviting this ghost into a drunken land, flying sword world. After talking and practicing, the other party lay on the ground with a disagreement, waiting for the soles of the shoes to fall on his face. Xiao Mo is not stingy in dealing with such a mess, but he still doesn't have enough experience in the arena. The fat man rubbed his arms, his eyes were sad. "Mr. Xiao Mo, so vigorously. A man who can bend and stretch, what a little cheek is." Pei Qian rubbed his eyebrows, and looked at this fat man with a little admiration. At first glance he was hungry. Cui Dongshan started to favor this fat man a bit. He was a talent. I have to find a chance to persuade Eugene to go to the Middle-earth Confucian temple to play and roll, cry, make troubles and hang himself. Anyway, let the Confucian temple return to the place of cultivation, and then let Eugene put it on the side of Shindu Mountain. Shindu Mountain can take care of it. Eugene only needs give Qingping Jianzong a sum of immortal money on a regular basis, and everything is easy to discuss. It's just that Zhong Kui didn't pay attention to Eugene at all. He focused on investigating Qin Pingan's soul. After a while, he frowned and asked, "If this is the case, why not stay in the Great Wall of Jianqi?" Qin Pingan's 3 souls and 7 souls really had a big problem. To make Qin Pingan leave the Great Wall of Jianqi where he met, he had to consume his energy and spirit all the time, just like a deal. It is also due to the physique of the Wufu of the end of the world, full of vitality, strong muscles and bones, which can nourish the spirit, coupled with the sword repair's life-flying sword, can naturally nurture the physique. If Qin Pingan was only a far-traveler Wufu, he would have long been skinny and strong, withered up. Zhong Kui once saw a portrait on the side of the Confucian temple. Above the city there is a bright red robe. The figure of the person holding the knife is vague. It is no longer a flesh and blood body, like it is composed of thousands of silk threads crisscrossed. In Zhong Kui's view, that's called a miserable can't bear to see. Originally being in the fairyland, he could stabilize his soul, but after a trip to the barren hinterland and Toyue Mountain, he fell again. Stay there, but I can't settle down and practice well. Qin Pingan shook his head and said, "What's more, it's not a too loss-making business. After all, I can strengthen my physique. The reason why I was able to stay in Taiping within a few days. The end of the mountain's entrance to the mountain comes to a large extent from this one's own. Ask yourself with punches. Zhong angrily smiled and said, just a little bit of a crime? Chen Pingan smiled and said, if you don't have to suffer hardship when practicing boxing, just get used to it. Seeing that Zhong had no intention to stop, Chen Pingan had to remind him softly, it's okay, don't be aggressive. Zhong looked solemn and was silent. Chen Pingan was about to raise his hand and push away Zhong pulse-taking 2 fingers. The inside of his physique is like a stone grinding jade, always grinding 3 souls and 6 souls, jade scraps are splashing all over, and Zhong is trying to stop the sharp rotation of the grinding wheel with his hands. It is equivalent to a questioning sword. Zhong glared at Chen Pingan, despise me? Half-human not ghost fun? Chen Pingan joked, since you are friends you can't share the blessings and share the difficulties? Zhong said solemnly, open your palms. Chen Pingan hesitated. Zhong didn't give Chen Pingan a chance to refuse, he had already stamped his foot, like a stone slammed into the long river of time, a scene of water ripples appeared under his feet, and the waterways were layered on top of each other, and finally showed a backward trend. Zhong who partitioned Yuming into 2 heavens and earth, showed the image of the law. He was dressed in a red official robe. He sighed and condensed into a vermilion ink ingot that seemed to be specially used for reviewing official documents. Zhong put his fingers together again. Brush the ink, make a pen with your hand, and say something in your mouth. The words are all obscure old sayings, which helped Chen Pingan draw an anchor in the palm of his hand. When you're done, Zhong let out a hey, it's a ghost symbol. Chen Pingan shook his palms and the whole person seemed to be less sloppy. It's like taking off a piece of Jinqi, half a caddy and 82 talisman from the Yang family medicine store. At this moment, even if I sit still in place, I still feel the sense of relief and wind protection. Chen Pingan took a deep breath, twisted his wrist, smiled brightly and said, thank you. Zhong said with no good air, so see outside. Chen Pingan ridiculed, if I'm not polite with you, I'm sure I will slander again. I can't be a human being. Mr. Accountant in the world, how many people do not have a small belly? Scold others first and be invincible. One more irritating remark was often out of the question, and his success fell short. All the truths he had worked so hard before were all killed in battle. If you say less nonsense, misunderstandings arise. People are full of weeds, suspicion, disappointment, resentment, one after another. Only the old rivers and lakes just speak. We meet, get off the horse to drink wine, encounter injustice and kill people in the city. Zhong said, my anchor will not last too long, at most a year or a half, but it's okay, I'll look for you again later. Chen Pingan calculated the time and said, in the middle of next year, I may travel to the Middle-earth divine continent. I will trouble you to take a trip to Shindu Mountain at that time. Zhong nodded, maybe I can drop in. Zhong said softly, let me say a few words that are not so festive? Chen Pingan nodded. If there is no engraving you will be miserable. Don't forget, the confrontation between the 2 worlds, the first person to say that you want to fight is you. Not even the Saint of Rights. Assume that on the wild battlefield, if you win more than you win less, fortunately Howren will remember you and the Great Wall of Jinqi more or less well, but if we are like a broken bamboo, advancing rapidly and fighting in various places, you will be very miserable. Eugene, this fat man, before there is a saying, it may be an unintentional remark, or it may have been deliberately asked me to remind you, called greed of heaven for oneself. Because you are the last hidden official of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, you are equivalent to carrying the exploits of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, no matter what Qinping thinks. What have you done as a hidden official? What to pay? Once were days, it will all become unimportant. But since you have carved words on the city, no matter the future situation is good or bad, at least for 100 years, you can stop a lot of gossip. Chen Pingan raised the flask, it's better to drink. Zhong gently touched the hip flask in his hand, just treat me like a nonsense, I can go in and out of my left ear, even if I have heard it. There is something you may need to help. Zhong stood up, is there a Xuanhuan temple nearby? Pray for the gods to worship the Buddha, find Qigong and worship the mountain. Chen Pingan followed up and shook his head and said, there is only one earth temple called Daoshi. The place is not big. I heard that it is quite effective. Let me lead the way? Zhong shook his head and said, no, don't delay your retreat and recuperate. I went there and talked with the master of the land on my own, so I'll go shopping nearby. He slapped the man in the blue shirt next to him on the shoulder, and Zhong said with a grin, there is some wine you dare not drink. Chen Pingan smiled and said, Drink flower wine. When you drink flower wine, remember not to use my name to charge the bill. Xianxia was choked for a while. What a boy, an unaware prophet. Qin Pingan reminded, I advise you not to do this kind of wicked thing. Xianxia waved his hand, Uncle Gusu, you have moved the ground. If the fat man received an amnesty, Pai Dian came to Xianxia's side. The two of them didn't protect themselves from the wind, but walked like flying, leaving the Shindu mountain boundary. Qin Pingan watched Xianxia go away, cast Yunshui body, and then returned to the Changchundongtian where the entrance guard was set at Qingping Peak, and continued to retreat. After making sure that there was no one around, the fat man whispered, I've found out, the water is very deep. Xianxia was too lazy to talk. The fat man immediately changed his words. Brother Qin saved a big share of possessions at a young age. It's gratifying and congratulatory. I also feel warm in my heart and I am happy for him. Congratulations, right? Xianxia asked with a smile. Is there nothing left of your belongings on your old lair? It used to be an ascending ghost somehow, and it must have a good family background. When Eugene was found by Ning Yao and forced out of the nest, it was an embarrassing escape. Maybe it happened suddenly and he was cut off guard by a sword. The fat man didn't carry anything on his body. So during this period on the day, it really wasn't Eugene pretending to be poor on Xianxia's side, the fat man really had no money. Eugene stomped his feet with anger and said with sorrow, Xianxia, why sprinkle salt on the wound? If you scholars are willing to don't want the dough and ask for money harder than the merchants, can you give me the leftovers? Some leftovers? The fat man became more and more angry, beat his chest vigorously, howling dryly, heart is like a knife, heartache. Xianxia kept walking and said in a huff, okay, it doesn't make sense to cry poorly with me. It's not that I want to be the guest of Qingping Jianzong. Money can make ghosts grind, but in that dark, grinding thing, it can be more permeating. The fat man continued on his way and asked, if you really give money, do you deserve it? Xianxia smiled and said, I'm just giving a suggestion whether it will work or not. I said it and didn't count it. Just listening to the implication, this fat guy must have a lot of private money? On the other side of the Confucian temple, digging 3 feet in the ground, can't search all of them? Or do you mean that there were countless treasures in your hometown? The fat man was a master who didn't see rabbits or scatter eagles. He reached out and grabbed Xianxia's arm and said, Xianxia, you have to give me the right words. Suddenly Eugene always felt something wrong, but no matter how the fat man thought about it, he didn't have the slightest clue. Perceiving a change in the fat man's mood around him, Xianxia asked, what's wrong? Eugene shook his head vigorously, it's weird, I always feel that something is wrong. Xianxia glanced at the fat man with pity in his eyes, you don't mess with someone, you want to provoke Pei Qian. Eugene doubted, that little girl? I look very polite. Xianxia smiled and said, believe me, when you arrive at the Temple of the Earth, please respect the Master of the Earth. On the side of Shindu Mountain, Pei Qian asked doubtfully, Big Brother is going to travel far? Cui Dongshan nodded and said, bring Xiaoma and visit the immortals together to try your luck. Pei Qian said, Master, if you ask, I will explain it. This is the tacit fellowship. So the white-clothed boy and the yellow hat and blue shoes put aside their business, went to the sea together and went to explore the old bottom in a sneaky way. Riding Dragon Alley. Xuanhu at the New Year's Eve shop, Chui Peanut at the Chowtu shop. 2 small benches, one large and one small sitting side by side. The white-haired boy began to imply that he had a very good relationship with a certain shop, and he could help buy rouge gouache with a 10% discount. If you have a few more words, you have a chance to get a 20% discount. Chui Peanut finally couldn't help it anymore, just forget it once or twice. How can you cheat me so hard? It's not easy for me to make some money now. What's more, my brother is not around. Although Zhao Dengao and Sister Jiao in the shop are both good people, they are seeking a living in a foreign land after all, and there is no one to rely on. If there is no private money in their pockets, how can they be made? The white-haired boy abducted most of his wages. The girl angrily said, do you treat me as a fool? The white-haired boy smiled and said, you are not stupid either. Today Bai Xian took Yao Xiaoyan away from the worship platform and came to the small town, otherwise she would not dare to go down the mountain alone. Yao Xiaoyan was greedy and she wanted to buy some cakes from the New Year's Eve shop, not to mention that there was a master who wanted to honor her at the shop. Although Bai Xian couldn't speak well, he still had a little way of doing things. Arriving outside the shop, the white-haired boy stood up with his hands on his hips, haha smiled and said, good boy. The little girl laughed and said, good master. Look, the family of both the master and the apprentice love each other in many ways. After Bai Xian held his hands, the stall inside the pavilion hadn't been opened for many days. Even if he couldn't compare to King Sun Chun, who didn't know what to do except for practicing swords, he was more than 7 or 8 Yao Xiaoyan. Isn't this about to break the borders soon? Just come here to hang around in the small town? Who dares to provoke the uncle Bai Xian? Please come, he'll be invincible single-handedly. 3 under 5 divided by 2, Feijian swish swish. It's a pity that Brother Jia is not in the shop now. He listened to the right guard at the gate of the mountain and said that he was promoted. Huang Zhu smiled and said, "Yeah, isn't this Brother Bai?" After Bai Xian was still holding his hands, he nodded, crossed the threshold, and began to inspect the business situation of the shop. The white-haired boy and Yao Xiaoyan asked, "How did you practice the 7 or 8 sword books that your teacher threw to you?" Yao Xiaoyan grimaced, "It's hard to learn. I thought I was going to be trained, but I never thought that." The gray-haired boy touched the little girl's head, admiringly said, "Very good, follow master." Naturally, the female cultivator who was exempting the palace at that time really wanted to talk about the qualifications of cultivation. She and that person, the difference between the two sides is more than 10,000 miles? So the ancestor of the hidden official threw this little confusion to himself. It was really wonderful. Bai Xian bent his fingers, knocked on the counter, and said to the little mute who was standing on the small bench, "Bring the account books, I want to check the accounts." The little dumb looked dumb, raised his head and moved his lips slightly. "Look at the mouth shape, it's a roll call." Bai Xian sighed, really a little mute. Bai Xian asked casually, "Where is the treasurer of Shi?" Amma continued to pretend to be deaf and dumb. Bai Xian didn't have the same knowledge as the little dumb, turned around to get a piece of cake and said vaguely, "Yao Xiaoyan, it's on your account, I can't accompany you on a trip for nothing." Yao Xiaoyan screamed outside the door and started to pay. The white-haired boy was pleased with his expression. As expected of my good disciple, doing things magnificently. "Master, don't you eat some cakes?" "It's my honor to respect master." The white-haired boy stared. "No matter how poor the master is, I can't have a poor ambition." Bai Xian turned his head and yelled, "Old girl Hong Ho, do you want apricot flour cake? There is not much left. If you don't want it, I will eat it all." Outside the door immediately opened his throat and replied, "Leave me $2. The white-haired boy suddenly turned his head, and at the corner of the street, a sword fairy Mida came. There is also a dull-looking little girl around her, who seems to be King Sun Chun. Fengyuan fairy was about to set off at Nujiadu to go to Baijiluzu. Miyu came over and called Bai Xian to board the boat together. Bai Xian ate the cakes, clapped his hands, said goodbye to Yao Xiaoyan, and asked if she needed to her back to the sword platform. The little girl said no, there is a master. Bai Xian left the shop and followed Miyu to Nujiadu. When he arrived on the ferry, Bai Xiankai asked with curiosity in his heart, "The dead fish eyes have followed, why don't you go to the next sect with us?" Miyu sternly said, "It is the hidden officer who called you to participate in the next celebration. In addition, Nuanshu, Zhao Shuxia Xiaohuan, and Yao Xiaoyan, they may not rush to Shindu Mountain. Guizhugio and millet grains are now very well mixed. They visit the mountains and watch the door together every day and enjoy it." After Bai Xian held his hands, he hummed and said in a deep voice, "Sure enough, the hidden official still values me, the little hidden official, most." Miyu nodded with a smile. In fact, Bai Xian has been looking at Miyu from the corner of his eye. There will be no fraud, right? Miyu curled his lips. Bai Xian hesitated. "Miyu, you have to swear to me it was not that Pei Chen called me over, or I would go back to the sword stand and practice sword." Miyu raised a palm. "I can swear it's definitely not that Pei Chen is making trouble for you." Bai Xian laughed loudly. "I'm still afraid that she won't make it?" Miyu smiled without saying anything. "This kid Bai Xian owns a flying sword named Wandering. The heavenly granted, magical powers of this flying sword are a willow leaf with jianghu. They have the same effect and are good at exchanging injuries for their lives. If it is a fight between sword repairs, it will take advantage. That's the case with Jian Xiu, let alone dealing with other Qi practitioners. It's a pity that he was born in the Great Wall of Sword Qi, but it was tasteless, so in his early years at the Summer Palace, he had no choice but to have a Bing Xia rank. Coupled with the number of natal flying swords, it is no better than a small abacus and little confusion, because Nalan Jade has 2 natal flying swords, Xingguatian, and Flower Lantern, both offensive and defensive. Yao Xiaoyan is the only swordsman in the lower 5 realm with 3 flying swords at the same time among the 9 peers, Chunshan, Cobweb, and Neon Clothes. Despite being nicknamed Little Confusion by Bai Xian, Yao Xiaoyan is among the 9 sword fairy embryos, the sword repairer who has the most hope to securely enter the Jade Pu realm. On the other hand, King Sun Chun and Bai Xian, although they will definitely be among the golden core and Yuaning earlier, but Yao Xiaoyan has more advantages than the smooth and secure of breaking through the border. So poor Uncle Bai Xian, he still feels that he has average aptitude, but compared to the lower aptitude, when he first left his hometown and met the hidden officer, Bai Xian has learned something afterwards, and Bai Xian is not stupid. I was on the side of the sword platform before, following a group of people of the same age to practice swords, Sui Right occasionally pointed out, more or less knowing his aptitude not bad. The Fengyuan ferry stayed at the Changchun Palace ferry for a while, and the teacher was still responsible for winning the relationship on the mountain. Miyu didn't get off the boat but just stood by the railing. On the ferry besides Chai Wu, there were a few more similar children. Bai Xian, who didn't recognize anyone as a master. King Sun Chun is temporarily an anonymous disciple of Ning Yao. And Miya's new disciple Higu. King Sun Chun is still withdrawn, but Bai Xian and Chai Wu seem to have a better temperament. They don't talk much, but they often get together, one for tea and the other for drinking with companions. Miyu is still very optimistic about King Sun Chun. He is talented and works hard. He likes to compete with himself on the way of practice, but he doesn't know if this little girl has anything to do with Sun Jiyuan. Miyu had never heard of such a sword fairy embryo before being brought to the world by the hermit. But it's normal. The youngest generation of the Great Wall of Jianqi was of course led by Ning Yao. In addition to Qin Sanxiu, Dong Huafu and the others, there is also Qi Shou and the others as well as Gao Yeho and Pang Yuanji. Although they are young, they are too dazzling. It is a well-deserved big year. Younger ones are the little hidden officials, Qin Li and Guizhujiu. Originally, children like Bai Xian and Sun Xuanhuan were in the same generation as Chen and Li. If it weren't for that war, these kids, in a few years or so, it would be their turn to guard the gate and take care of the sword repairs in the foreign country. In a room, as the host, Chai Wu lifted the hip flask and shook it towards Bai Xian and Higu, probably asking if he wanted to drink together. Bai Xian raised the teapot in his hand, Higu waved his hand, and Chai Wu poured himself a bowl of wine. Higu asked, Bai Xian, the chief worshipper and the master of the law, which one is the most important? On the side of Luapa Mountain, Zhou Fei, sister Changming, couldn't show who was the official. In the Xindu Mountain of the Xiazong, Miyu is the chief worshipper and Chui Wei is the master. Among the 9 children, Higu, the tallest one, had his natal flying sword named Fei Lai Feng, and his natal magical powers were similar to those of Wuyue Mountain monarchs. The He family is not considered a wealthy family in the Great Wall of Jianqi, so it could not have a house on Taixiang Street or Yuhu Street, but the background is not shallow. The ancestors of Jianxiu belonged to the line of criminal officials. When Haosu became the last criminal officer, anyway, there was no such thing as nothing. Higu had a short sword studying maidservant, hanging from his waist, which was an ancestral thing. Bai Xian raised Erlang's legs and said, if you follow the seat arrangement on the side of Ji Sifeng, the position of the chief worshipper is more expensive, but the ancestors in charge of the law are more powerful. But at the bow, Mi was lying on the railing, listening to Cui Dongshan talking about something privately, that Mi Xiefeng only Jianxiu can cliff it. Miyu has already begun to look forward to the Luapa Mountain and Qingping Jianzong in 100 years. Grandmasters come forth in large numbers and sword celestials gather. The future can be expected and the future will come. Sword of Coming Chapter 899. A group of people disembarked at the Xinjia ferry crossing called Moxiandu. The ferry is crowded with buildings, but most of them are newly built after the war. It is like a small town. There is a small river running through the town. The water is quiet, the water waves are not thriving, and the river water. There are many shops on both sides of the strait, but the business is deserted. The reason why the ferry has this name comes from the early years of the ferry. There was a strange aquarium at the ferry. Like an ink line, swimming in groups, the ink lines winding through the water like mountains one by one, but after the war, there is no such aquatic figure in the river, so the ink line crossing is no longer worthy of its name. Huang Yiyun took his disciple Xuanhuan as well as 2 Pushen guests, to participate in the opening ceremony on Xindu Mountain. The old women and young girls beside Yi Yunyun are the owners of the tea shed that has an engagement shop on the banks of the Jilin River. The old woman is a pseudonym Chudu and she is an old Qiu. She has nearly 5,000 years of age. She was born as the teacher of the old Dadu Dragon Palace. She belongs to the first class, emperor and close minister. She is humble and powerful. Half of the master of the law, the girl's name is Hu Chuling, her father and mother have both surnames, and her nickname is Vinegar. She is different from the old woman, but she is not a member of Shanzi's spirits, but from the local people of Xianxia. Her ancestors are all proficient in water-based quarrying. The girl is a first-class fairy material. She has been examined by the old woman due to fate, qualification, temperament and character. In the end, he was accepted as a direct disciple. In fact, the two sides are more like relatives who depend on each other for life, or the kind of intergenerational relatives. Xiaodu was cautious. After the old real Long Hushan and the sword fairy in Qingshan left, she did not leave the Qilinjiang boundary immediately, but took the initiative to take a trip to Pushan Yunkatang. On the one hand, she was with that Huang Yun. Thank you, I brought gifts to the door and sent thousands of kilograms of Qilinjiang mature in one breath, and now Tongyi's Hao, whether it is a local or a foreign monk, they are not very friendly to the demon race, and there are special training men from other continents. In groups, search for mountains and rivers, hunting and killing fish that slip through the net on a large scale. The Wild Monster Clan, based on this to make money, can also get an extra credit for recording files at the academy. Yunkatang received the gift and appreciated it, so she repaid her with a peach, and Yi Yunyun wrote a letter and sent it to the head of Qingshan of the Dafu Academy. This is a guarantee for the old Xiao. This is a lot of incense. Once Xiaodu went out to travel, Pushan and Yi Yunyun need to be held responsible at the college for any mistakes during the period. Later, Yunkatang received a letter from Fei Jian. The writer claimed to be Cui Dongshan from Xiandushan, Qin Pinggan's proud disciple, and wanted to invite the old woman and the young girl, the master and apprentice, to be a guest at home. At the end of the letter, besides the seal, there was one party. Self-use seal and a private monogram shaped like 3 mountains. Yi Yunyun told the old woman who happened to be a guest in the mountain, that the sect was about to be established on Xindu Mountain, and the first sovereign kindly invited the 2 masters and apprentices to visit Xindu Mountain. The intention to solicit is very obvious. After Xiaodu learned of this, after thinking about it, he felt that he should take a walk with the vinegar to see Xindu Mountain, and then make a decision. I have been imprisoned for thousands of years and now I want to go out and relax. It would be a good thing if I could help the vinegar to find a strong identity on the mountain. It's just that being the immortal master who is included in the golden and jade genealogy of the Patriarch Hall, there are many rules. Shackled, so it's best to be a guest. It is not only a talisman but at the same time the restraint is still small. Yi Yunyun hasn't told Xiaodu about Qin Pinggan's multiple identities. The lord of a sect of Luapa Mountain in Baya Pingzu, Wensheng's close disciple, the last hermit of the Great Wall of Jianqi, and of course he is also a Taoist companion of Ningyao. Anyway, waiting to visit Xindu Mountain together, it will soon be revealed. When Yi Yunyun showed up at the ferry, some of the roadside bag houses who were originally sick and waiting for business to come, shouted louder. The shop assistants also bypassed the counter, came to the door and began to whistle. It's just that I don't know who is the first to recognize the identity of the woman, and when she shouts out Pushan Huang Yun, one by one will be silent like a bird and beast scattered. Annoyed, a woman stop-bound martial artist, and it is estimated that she hits it casually in 2s and 3s, and there is no ink line crossing. Yi Yunyun glanced at the river where there was no more ink line vision, and asked casually, Mother Chio, that kind of aquatic race has been thriving here for many years, and now I can't see any of them. Is it because the wild monster race has grabbed and died? Glancing not far away, there was a young shopkeeper sitting in the sun at the entrance of her shop. After both sides looked at each other, the old woman didn't say anything in her heart and said with a smile, It's all hiding. This kind of aquarium really has a negative name. The fish is one of the descendants of Mo Jiao. It is not recorded in the book, so the reputation of later generations is not obvious, because the old Dad Yulong Palace has long been removed from the water-descendant jade, which caused the secular monarch to not be able to seal it. Even if the water is successful, it will destined to be unable to transform the Jiao. This is the road to sever, can only linger. In the early years, there was a negative mountain fish that was about to transform into a fairy, and the relationship with a land lake dragon palace on the side branch of Dadu was very stale. In desperation, I had to take a chance and secretly chose a thunderstorm in the yellow plum season. Without telling the Dadu Dragon Palace, I walked the water without authorization, hoping to produce a golden pill, but somehow the news was leaked, and it was stumbled by people, which accidentally caused floods. The 2 banks along the way were flooded for more than 1,000 miles, and there were more than thousands of floating corpses in the water. Thousands of crimes, the guilt was great, so he was charged with 1 case. When the Dada Dragon King learned of it, he was greatly furious. The Shui people in his own jurisdiction dared to violate the law of heaven. If the party is in trouble, he must be detained and beheaded. Negative Xianyu had to abscond all the way to this place, and took refuge in a mountain repairman with luck. Sure, hide its breath to avoid the calamity. In return, it had to help that school to gather the fairy water transport quietly, and wait until the Battle of Xianlong was over before it dared to show up. The young man asked in his heart, "You old lady, you are so kind. Since you are both of the great descent of the descent, you can be regarded as half Taoists on the mountain. Even if you don't support each other, why bother to make things difficult?" "Why, because now I hug my thighs. Are you planning to take me to ask Huangyun and Dafu Academy for credit? This trip to the Moxiandu, is it rushing to me?" The old woman replied with a heartfelt smile. "A little negative mountain fish has not been able to walk the river to turn into a black dragon. Fortunately, it has been here to form a pill, and has been stagnant in the nascent soul realm for so many years. If you know my identity, you dare not dare." Such a blatant rhetoric. Don't go to the old almanacs. Since you just said it yourself, we are both blasphemy remnants. We can be regarded as half of the same way. Also, since you didn't go astray and took refuge in the wild, then it'll be nice. One word of persuasion: report to Dafu Academy as soon as possible. Otherwise wait. The gentleman in the academy came to the door, but it was too late. Of course, if you are willing to switch to Pushan, I can help introduce one or two now. In the early years, this negative mountain fish was able to escape the questioning of xianxia from Dadu Dragon Palace. In fact, it was also attributed to the plea of Jiao. The old woman then took the place of the dragon girl to slow her cheeks. Otherwise, a small mountain where an earth fairy sits can really shelter? The young man sneered. The man is not a servant of a skirt. Yi Yunyun also saw the clue. "Mother Chiu, what did you chat with him?" The old woman smiled. "Little negative mountain fish, his heart is higher than the sky, and he doesn't want to cling to others." Yi Yunyun smiled. "I finally recovered my free body. Anyway, I am still a Yuaning monk. As long as he is innocent, he is in the academy. After the side inspection, you can occupy the mountains and stand by the water. Since you are the backer, you really don't have to rely on anyone." The old woman around him is an exception, and she is used to being a servant of the Dragon Palace. If the monk's realm is not enough, you can start a mountain and establish a faction. This is a recognized thing on the mountain. Many new sects tend to be lively in the early stage and then short-lived. Just like his own Yunkatang, even if Zhanglu Tanrong entered the upper 5 realms and then left Pushan, it would be impossible to open a sect, and the old Yuaning would never think of such a thing. In history, those founding generals who have the skills to support dragons and are well known in history are also the same, not wanting, unwilling, and unable. The young man seemed to have changed his mind temporarily, and suddenly said with his own heartfelt heart to the old woman, "Auntie wife with a big tone, you can talk to Huang Yun. If you are willing to become a Taoist couple, I can enter Zuepu Mountain." The old woman laughed blankly. However, she didn't tell Yi Yunyun the truth. In other words, it roughly means that this fellow Taoist negative mountain has been admiring the Lord for a long time. Yi Yunyun smiled and laughed. After strolling through the various shops and the ferry crossings of the gates, Yi Yunyun made up her mind and couldn't buy it. She finally found a secluded place. She took out a piece of origami from her sleeve. The multicolored paper boats were thrown into the ink line crossing the river water, as if xuanhuan fell into the sea, and the river shook gently, and finally suddenly appeared a top-grade talisman boat, which was like a high-rise boat 2 stories high and could carry more than 30 people. Compared with Luxiazu, which is expensive and has no market, the Color Luan ferry is the first choice for the immortal children on the Tonggishao mountain. Of course, the premise is that they can afford Guyes money, and it is not suitable for long voyages. Next, the private ferry will traverse an old dynasty's southern border mountains and rivers. It is about 2,000 miles away from Shindu Mountain. If it is an ordinary boat and car, the distance will be at least doubled. The ferry lifts off, the earth, mountains and rivers are like bonsai. Yi Yunyun was standing on the bow of the ship, her sleeves flabby, and she was in a heavenly attitude. Shui Huai glanced at the master. Only one thought: the future master is too difficult to find. Pushan is busy with business, so Zhanglu Tanrong will come later. When Lao Yuanying learned that Master Chao, who had visited her daughter-in-law in Wanshishai before, was actually the real master of the Yinpu of Baijin Immortal and the Yinpu of Jianxian, Lao Zhanglu almost didn't stare his eyes out, and waited until Tan Rong returned to God. "Come, it's spitting all over," began to complain about his own mountain master. Why didn't he say it earlier? Otherwise he wouldn't have to prepare the 4 treasures of the study and a lot of plain seals? Put the young hidden official on the chair and not let him go? Yi Yunyun is not easy to explain. She actually only knew the true identity of Master Chao before him. Lao Zhongli was like a lady who was abandoned by the beginning and the end, with faint eyes and babbling words, complaining constantly on Yi Yunyun's side. The mountain owner mistaken me. If he knew the identity of the other party early, and the young hidden official did not leave a few angry drenching calligraphy, and then engraved more than a dozen engraved seals all night long, Qin Pingan would not want to leave the study in Pushun. It's okay now, and I missed a once-in-lifetime opportunity. Remedy how to remedy it. When Tan Rong turned my head and arrived at Shindu Mountain, it was the outsiders and guests. How could I speak so much? The owner is confused. Mountain Lord, don't leave, you have to compensate me for this loss. As for how to ask the young hermit for the calligraphy seal, it's the Mountain Lord's business. Anyway, I just accept the gift. If the ritual is over, the Mountain Lord is empty-handed when you go down the mountain. This is exhausting. A good job of mastering. He Tan has long been worried about him. Yi Yunyun is not afraid of Tan Rong's threat, but she really doesn't understand the old monks like Tan Rong. In the face of Qin Pingan, she refuses to be obsessed with the young sword immortals' deployment of troops in the Summer Palace in the past years, only on the issue of printing. Mud. Yi Yunyun had a slight headache. She gathered the sound to form a line and discussed with her disciple Xuanhuan, do you really want me to go to Shindu Mountain and ask Qin Pingan for a seal? I can't open this mouth, why don't you go? Xuanhuan smiled and said, Master, it is not difficult for me to speak, but this matter, the starting point is too high. It is Pushun that the hidden officer took the initiative to visit. It has invisibly boosted Tanzangla's appetite, so I want to watch it. It's a matter of 1 or 2 sentences. Perceiving the change in Master's face and thinking about Master's temper, Xuanhuan immediately changed his words. If Master is really embarrassed, it's a big deal that I will start with Master Qin Shan. While provoking the conversation, when the time comes, the Master echoes a few words. I believe that Qin Shan's personality will definitely not make Master embarrassed by Tanzanglu. Then Xuanhuan helped Tan Rong make the rounds. Tan Zhonglu has been obsessed with calligraphy, gold and stone in this life, and he may be more concerned about 2 things than practice. It's like a young poet who saw the most proud man in the world, the descendants of the poet, and saw Suzi and Lu Qi. Master still has to understand a bit. As for the angry words that Tanzanglu threatened Master, don't take it seriously, it's just asking for prices. Having said this, Xuanhuan laughed. Master, it's better to make a bet with the 2 of us. I bet that Master Qin Shan must have been prepared for this matter. Maybe he is waiting for Master or Tanzanglu to speak. Yi Yunyun did not speak up, but asked curiously, Xuanhuan, do you have a good impression of Qin Pingan? Xuanhuan smiled and said, they are all scholars. It is fortunate to follow Master to practice in Pushun, participate in various ceremonies, and I have seen many outsiders, but it is the first time I have seen a monk like Qin Shanju, and it is very refreshing. Sense. If you must describe Qin Shanju in 1 sentence, it is. After a moment's pause, the old master nodded and said with a smile, it looks as if it is looking, and it is also warm, respectful and peaceful. Yi Yunyun said, very high evaluation. At the end of the new year, there is still half a month away from the sect celebration. The reason why Yi Yunyun rushed to Shindu Mountain ahead of time was selfish. She wants to be open and honest with Qin Pingan. Yi Yunyun is extremely young among the martial artists of the end, Wu Tan, the martial sage of her hometown, Zhang Xiaoxiao from the Middle-earth Shenzhou, the old Mangong Wang from Luzhou in Beiju, and Pei Xiang from the Leigong Temple in Aiezhou. Not too small. Yi Yunyun really wants to know a pure martial artist who can question Chao Ci and who is the same age as Chao Ci. How heavy is the fist and kick, how big is the boxing theory, and how high is the boxing technique? On the color boat, when it sailed into the sea of clouds, the surrounding water was filled with fog, which made people feel refreshed. The old woman had gray hair and a rickety figure. In the past years, I also held a golden emperor's rain symbol, showing his true body, soaring through the clouds and driving the fog, spreading rain for the earth, mountains and rivers and raining rain. The side carries a hand stove in both hands. Because of its small size, it is also known as the sleeve stove. It is made of copper with built-in charcoal and woven bamboo strips. A group of people overlooked the earth, sparsely populated, and still green mountains and green water did not change its color, but along those big rivers the towns of Xiongqing, which were built by the water in the past, are still mostly ruins, devastated and horrible. Yi Yunyun couldn't help asking, Dayuan hasn't regained the country yet? Otherwise, with the background of the old Dayuan dynasty, after so many years of recuperation, how could it not be so lifeless and lifeless? She increasingly felt that Yunkatang would not only lift the ban on Shanshui Dibao, but also set up a special organization to collect various xianxia debao. Xuanhuan sighed and explained the reason for the master. The original Yuan dynasty of the Yuan family had already fallen apart. Now the land of the mountains and rivers is divided into three. The three offspring of the imperial family who were born only from the domain of the feudal clan are supported as emperors, and the soil is broken. Founding of the country, the Yuan family was also Tonghishao, one of the few dynasties under the mountain that dared to mini-arm as a car. They gathered armies in the border and the capital to resist the wild monsters that swept the mountains and rivers like tides. The result is only it was the place where the city was slaughtered, including the capital, and there were as many as 7 places, and the lives were burnt, and the vitality was severely injured. Therefore, compared with the Yu dynasty of the past, it can no longer be compared. The ruins of the old capital city have become veritable ghost towns everywhere. The evil spirits are soaring up into the sky, except for ghost repairs. Chi practitioners under the earth immortals generally detour and don't touch the mold. In addition to a few groups of academies led by gentlemen and sages, together with the genealogical monks on various hills, they entered various ghost towns to search for hidden monsters. In fact, the 3 separatist forces have also spared no effort to send in shrines and clear the way, with a large number of training talents. The guards entered the city to gather the corpses, spent a lot of talisman and god's money, and also held a few water and land ceremonies to extradite the dead, but the results were not great. In addition, there is only Yamazawa Yeshio, who will pick up leaks under the guise of searching for mountains. Although some of the old mansions of the wealthy clan are dilapidated, there may be some unexpected gains, and they will strictly follow the sunrise. The rules of going out of the city at sunset moment, otherwise you will be trapped in a lot of obstacles. It is easy to have no return, ghosts hit the wall in the city and become new ghosts. Ordinary martial arts fighters, young men with strong young spirits, would never dare to enter without permission. At most they would lay hands on those casual practitioners, do some deeds in the city and get some dividends afterwards. And most of them are in the midsummer, the days when the sun is in full bloom in the chosen heaven and the earth, and most of them have to stay away from the ghost town for at least 100 miles at the end of winter like the current cold and freezing weather. Yi Yunyun asked, "We Pushun disciple, haven't we been here?" Although most of his Pushun disciples are in the southern boundary of Tonghishao, they cooperated with the 2 academies in Yuguizhong to search the mountains, but when Yi Yunyun saw the ghost town of Jiyu's mountains and rivers, she was still a little worried. Xuanhuan shook his head lightly and said truthfully, "I haven't been here yet. Tong Yezhou is too big, almost equal to the territory of 2 Aquarius continents. Besides, Tong Yezhou does not have the Dali dynasty, and there is no embroidered tiger Cui Yun. There is no invincible Iron Knight that is invincible, let alone the low eyebrows of the immortal masters on the mountain and the human dynasty. There is no feat of erecting the law of a country on the top of the mountains." Yi Yunyun said, "After participating in the Xindu Mountain Festival, we will walk through these ghost towns to see if there are any ghosts and generals who have already become the weather, and try to gather the Yin soldiers to disturb the Yangjian. Once it happens, the seat of the old Great Yuan dynasty. A ghost city will form a small world similar to the ruins of an ancient battlefield. When living things are in it, they will be subtly affected by evil spirits. Especially when the ghost city has formed a pattern of ties of air, it is even more difficult." Yi Yunyun will not complain about the inaction of the academy. In the 3 brand new academies, including Dafu Academy, in the years after the end of the war, from the mountain leader and deputy mountain leader, to gentlemen and sages, and even to Confucian scholars in the academy, almost everyone did not talk about studying in any study all year round. Running around and struggling to deal with it, in addition to searching for mountains, in addition to mending old mountains and rivers, it is also a lot of clutter, and it is a mess. Everywhere needs the academy to solve hidden dangers, and over the years the students of the academy have suffered no casualties. Xuanhuan hesitated and said, "Even if the ghosts in the city are fierce, they are all pitiful and respectable." Yi Yunyun sighed, "Of course I know, it's just the end of the matter. What else can be done? I can't leave the city alone." Yin Ling was soaked by evil spirits year after year, and if he dragged on, even if the burnt academy was able to vacate his hands, he could only clean the ghost town. At that time, it would be tantamount to a new massacre. Xuanhuan was worried. Those ghosts and ghosts are very troublesome to set up. Not only Tonghishao, in fact, except for the Middle Earth Shenzhou, there are no sects of ghosts and sects. At most they are complicated and not lacking. The bulk of the site can open up several hills alone for ghosts to practice. So now it can be made into a hammer, the feat of fixing the sound, unless it is an ascendant monk who is proficient in ghosts, who will not hesitate to spend his own way and use the means of reaching the sky to perform spells here, and there is hope to turn the breath of heaven and earth from filthy into pure spirit. It's a pity that Tongisao now has no ascendant realm, let alone a mountain monk who is proficient in ghost ways. But it is said that in the past years an unidentified monk once suddenly appeared on the battlefield of Tongisao and led an army of heroic spirits to block an army of withered bones under the command of Baiying, the wild old throne. Just looking at the old city with broken walls everywhere, even in broad daylight, under the sun, it still gives people a ghostly feeling, but there is one thing that makes Xuanhuan feel quite strange. The city is obviously very evil, but it is filthy. Meaning but not heavy, the old woman and the girl said in their hearts. Jealous, I will tell you in advance when we get to Shindu Mountain, even if you have some good feelings about that side, no matter how good the other party gives, we will be the most imaginary title. Kaching, don't be that worship monk. The girl curiously asked, why is this? The old woman didn't explain much, just touched the girl's head. In fact, it is best for them to simply take refuge in Pushan Yunkatang. Huang Yiyun is trustworthy, and Pushan has an excellent reputation. She is well known on the mountain and down the mountain, especially Yi Yunyun's Taoist heart, like a Wang Qingxuan, clear enough to entrust her life. It is a pity that she and Pushan did not take the initiative to speak from beginning to end, and Xiaodu couldn't get on the pole to send himself in the vinegar. On the other hand, the Qingshan sword fairy, who was very young and mastered sword skills, had met by the river before, but he was always gentle and polite in the tea shed. But the old woman couldn't understand the other party's character at all. Moreover, the Shindu Mountain turned a blind eye to these ghost towns entrenched with evil spirits and left it alone. For the monks on the mountain, thousands of miles are just a few steps away from the neighborhood. But on the side of Shindu Mountain, since the sect is about to be established, it must be good. But I can't say that Shindu Mountain is doing something wrong. The dust is rolling, the karma is heavy, the cultivator is clean and self-conscious. Why is it wrong? It's just that the old woman inevitably murmurs in her heart. The vinegar and vinegar are too good. If it is on the Shindu Mountain side, the door is not correct and you can make the best use of everything. What will you do? Attaching to a certain xianxia mountain, it is always easy to get off the boat. In his early years in the Dada Dragon Palace, Xiaodu was in a position of importance, and he had long been accustomed to the treacherous intrigues between his colleagues, between Shantao and the fairy master. The monks in the mountains with bad reputations are not necessarily bad guys. With a good reputation, it may also be a man of integrity and good calculation. With the vinegar and vinegar aptitude for practice, you will never be able to find the end of the temple if you carry a pig's head. Don't say it's Huang Yun's Pushan, maybe even Yuguazong can become a patriarch's genealogy monk, so jealousy is not a sword repairer. If you suffer a big loss, you will enter Shen's Hufeng and become the master's descendant of Wei Ying. Disciple, it's all possible. Therefore, the old woman will never allow herself to push the vinegar into a fire pit by herself. If it didn't work, she lowered her body and didn't talk about the lack of face. The big deal is to change the tradition of vinegar and vinegar. If you change to a master, she will also help vinegar and vinegar to find an ancestral identity in Pushan Chaotang. Anyway, I can't teach her any Dao skills. With one person and one person, the Dao roots and feet of both the master and the apprentice are completely different. Many of the dragon's genus can master the secrets of life, vinegar and vinegar. Wasted time. The human monk is no better than the demon, and he is too particular about the strength of an early mountaineering. It doesn't matter if you don't have the status of mentor and apprentice. The old woman stretched out her dry palms, gently picked up the girl's sleeves, her eyes were kind. It said that apprenticeship is like reincarnation, and women go up the mountain to practice as a married man. The master is so old that it is difficult to prove the avenue. People can be relieved. In addition to this, there is a secret matter. The old woman did not tell the vinegar and vinegar that the ordinary dragon palace, the so-called ruins, is just submerged. However, the Dada Dragon Palace where she is located is different from those on the land and rivers. It has a higher status, so the opening of the ruins is more difficult and extremely difficult to find. Just talk about Mrs. Tan Don Lushui Pit. Once the door was closed, wasn't even Huolong being able to forcibly open the restriction back then? As the teacher of Dadu Dragon Palace, she is similar to the Hanlin Academy bachelors who served as the prince's grandson teacher. Unlike the negative mountain fish that used to be the side branch of Dadu Jinyu, the old woman is of orthodox origin. In short, Xiaodu is the opening dragon, the key to the palace secret. Yi Yunyun didn't mention a word. The old woman believed in her own vision and the other's character. Pushan was not putting a long line to catch a big fish. As for the Shindu Mountain, It was the xianxia who walked on his front foot, and then followed an invitation with his back foot. How could the old woman not weigh the pros and cons? So she made up her mind, taking advantage of the real dragon in Aquarius Island before it has been announced to the world. She will gather the world and the abandoned dragon palace, and she must quickly take a trip to hometown and homeland. Naturally, the old woman didn't dare to enter it, so they all regarded it as her own belongings. It was too greedy and inadequate. She would only choose 1 or 2% of the old dragon palace treasures that were easy to carry as a vinegar dowry. In the mountains and rivers of the old Yu dynasty, in a ghost town, there are colored boats passing by. In a dilapidated and ruined mansion, there are 2 gentlemen who have just entered the city. Xuanhuan. On the beam between the two, there are 2 pots of wine, a dish of salted peanuts and a dish of dried soybeans. The shabby scholar twisted a peanut, threw it high and dropped it into his mouth, then glanced at the fat man on the side and persuaded, "You hurry down and sit down on the beam." The fat man said with anger, "No, the widow's dragon chair can sit on it, but the small beam can't sit on it. This family has smoked from the ancestral grave, so that the widows made of gold can sit here. It is Xianxia and Uncle Gusu. I've been to the Temple of the Earth before and then wandered here." Inside the ghost town there was a little awe-inspiring spirit. Only then did the spirits of the many spirits in the city maintain a little refreshing aura so that they would not be reduced to evil spirits. It should be the fairy family of the white-clothed boy. The fat man grabbed a handful of soybeans, put them in his mouth and chewed and took another sip of wine. He lifted his head up and gurgled his mouth with water and swallowed his brain. "Xianxia, why don't you speak to Brother Qin directly? Ask him to help up." Xianxia took out the wooden box from his sleeve, put it on his knees and gently pushed open the lid. Inside it was a set of celestial master-cut ghost money. Xianxia twisted one of them to spend money, he sighed and wiped his sleeves. "Besides, the creation of the next sect is a great celebration. The thing I want to do is replaced by you. You don't feel bad?" The fat man laughed and said, "I'm afraid of being rejected, right?" Seeing that Xianxia cast his sight, the fat man immediately remedied it. "Isn't it? It's not that we're going to be with whom, people like me who want face don't show our true feelings over there." Xianxia said, "In fact it is because I know he will agree and he will not hesitate, so I am embarrassed, whether I want to speak or not and when to speak." The fat man sighed, understanding, "It's like I saw Brother Qin and didn't ask him for anything to offer to Kachin. Our brothers are just thin-skinned but we really suffer when we go out." Xianxia frowned slightly. This group of people dare to stay overnight in the city wanting money without life. The fat man smiled and said, "They know the inside story because of that existence, they will only feel that this place is stable, but they don't know that they have already walked on the road of xuanhuan. In this ghost city, probably because of too much resentment, he accidentally gave birth to a piece of food. The ghost of the ghost is much more cruel than the so-called ghost house ghosts and ruins ghost kings. The biggest problem is that this ghost is like a gifted monastic embryo. In less than 10 years, it depends on devouring its peers. Has quietly formed a golden pill and acted extremely cautiously. It has not been found by the monks. If it now eats up a lot of people in the sun, especially the soul-nourished spirit trainer and the pure warrior with strong blood, I will give it to its fishing for a few ghost books. Hey, it's estimated that it won't take 30 to 50 years for it to become a climate, and then refining a ghost town into its own small world, waiting for it to walk in the day without hindrance, just change a pair of vulgar skins. If you want to find the trace, you have to find a needle in a haystack. Otherwise, Xianxia wouldn't take my Uncle Gusu to stop here. Killing demons and demons is an indispensable responsibility." After Xianxia finished drinking a pot of wine, he asked the fat man to put away the dishes, and gently jumped down, like a flying kite flying out of the lobby, splashing on the roof of the building, and then suddenly landing, where the beauty outside a woman's boudoir stood by. Sitting on the side, looking at the courtyard outside a book building in this mansion from a distance, there is a group of people picking up leaks, a total of more than a dozen people. Half of them are digging 3 feet here, and the rest are searching for cellars, dry wells and secret rooms on the wall. Everyone is very busy, among them are half-hearted trainers, and there are also rivers and lakes Wufu. The latter mostly wore armors and were picked up nearby, either with a back bow, crossbow or a copper coin sword. Some people were carrying a bag of glutinous rice and a bag of black dog blood. There was a monk with a bell tied to his waist and holding it in his hand. According to the demon mirror, he clearly came prepared. There were also a few wheelbarrows parked outside the gate, because the donkey and horse did not dare to enter the city no matter how they whipped. 7 or 8 jars of silver were dug out, and the cheers were thunderous. One of the young men with yellow face and thin skin suddenly said, "You can try to dig down another 10 or 2 feet. Sure enough, under 1 foot, more jars were dug out, and once opened they were all more valuable jewels. The fat man laughed and said, looking at the shape of this mansion before returning to the hometown, he should be the third-grade Beijing official at the center. In the end, he only accumulated so little possessions. He is really an upright official. If he is lucky enough to become a widow of love, no matter what seal the beautiful posthumous title of a letterhead. On the other side of the yard, there is a beautiful woman about 30 years old. She is a little short, but she is gorgeous and the material is pure white. Because she is wearing a short nightgown with a waist, she looks more curvy and her skin is better than snow. Chiobwa circulates, his voice is delicate and delicate. Guchio, I really have you today's harvest, you can get an extra 10%. The young man thanked the woman. The fat man leaned on the bowtie's railing, craned his neck, his eyes lighted and whispered, "This elder sister really behaves like a hazy outsider, making people forget the customs." The rest of the mansion also rushed to the courtyard. At the same time, one of them was holding a huge fire-painted gourd. The key was that it still had a handle and had an excellent appearance. The man and the woman laughed and asked, "Madam, is this a thing used by your gods?" The woman glanced at her and couldn't look at it. There were so many spiritual artifacts on the mountains under the sky, and she said in a bad mood, "Only these wealthy portals who are full and have nothing to do will be treasures and worth a few dollars. You have to ask Guccio, he is an expert." The young man said, "Find a literati who knows the goods, maybe it's worth 300 or 400 taels of silver, but you can't sell it at Xianxia. The man glanced at the woman, stretched out a palm and touched the gourd with a smile, before he threw the gourd out and hit the wall heavily. The woman cast a wink, "It's like death." The young man felt sorry in his heart, and did not dare to say a word. The woman looked quite contented, she really picked up a treasure halfway through. The young man deserves to be a family boy from a country's weaving bureau. He has a very good vision. Otherwise, they would just go into the city this time and they would just bump into the city like a headless fly. Estimated to harvest the least halved. Another person squatted at the bottom of the steps with a big sack, rummaged and picked it up, and asked the ancient Chio to verify the price one by one. The valuable ones were left behind, and the worthless ones were smashed. He took out a wide-mouthed one. Celadon ware, famille rose lotus and heron pattern, and used too. Just looking at the possible value of some money, he asked the young man, "Is it a vase?" "Slag bucket." "What the hell? It's worthless." At the top of the steps, a burly man in armor was sitting on a rosewood chair, his hands leaning on a knife, his face was scarred and his appearance was quite hideous. He stepped on a single Nanmu couplet, the previous ancient hill. Said, "This thing is quite valuable, it is you family, the handwriting of a former literary master in the dynasty, if paired, can sell for at least 500 or 600 taels of silver." The man couldn't bear the eyebrows of his wife and this little white face, so he stepped on it and cracked it. The man glanced at the sky and said in a deep voice, "You can go back to the house." The group of them came to this old state office when it was summer this year, looking for something left from the mouths of the immortal masters. Yes, the unexpected joy, extremely smooth compared to the many unexpected surprises of my peers in other ghost towns, it has been confessed many of their lives have not been seriously damaged yet. There are only some lonely ghosts wandering in the city at night. They chose a xuanhuan temple as a habitat, and the ghosts dare not get close at night. But half a year of hard work, full of calculations, converted into fairy money, has already earned a small amount of money. Zhongkue glanced at a small house in the city, where a young girl leaned against a peach tree and stood with a peach blossom face. In this late winter season, the peach blossoms are full of branches, which is of course unreasonable. The young girl seemed to be aware of Zhongkue's sight shyly and walked away slowly. When she raised the curtain, she looked back and smiled. Zhongkue sighed, stood up, patted his palms and shouted to everyone in the courtyard, "Hey you guys, since you have gone back to the house, you should just go ahead. Anyway, you didn't make a profit, so you went straight out of the city and went back to each house." The dozens of people in the courtyard looked up at the attic not far away as if they were facing a big enemy. They only saw a weak scholar and a fat guy with big ears followed. The burly man sitting on the chair turned his head to look at Zhongkue and sneered, "Is it a man or a ghost?" One of the trainers shook the bell vigorously, and then raised the bronze mirror high, shining the rays of sunset light to the two uninvited guests. The ancient mirror light dangled on Zhongkue's face. Zhongkue turned his head slightly, waved his hand and smiled, "It's okay, I just kindly remind you that there are ghosts in the city. I have been watching you long ago and waiting for the opportunity." The fat man rolled his eyes. The monk whispered, "It's not a monster or a ghost." The woman looked at the elegant man in blue shirt. She bit her lip. Yo, she was a poor scholar again. The man who lost the painted gourd looked at the fat man lying on the side of the beauty and laughed. "It's up to the new year, dare to run out of the pigsty and wander around? Are you worried that our group of brothers will not eat well in the city? Young people shouldn't be so temperamental. Talking is weird." Eugene stood up and withdrew his gaze from the woman. "There are brothers in the 4 seas, and they are all brothers in the 4 seas. They are all brothers in the 4 seas, and they are friends if they are destined to touch them. Why do words hurt others?" Xianxia glanced at the fat man. How his temper became so good. "I have encountered similar things in the past. I am by my side and I dare not hurt others indiscriminately, but I will definitely get addicted to the mouth." It seems that his memory has increased on the side of Shindu Mountain. Xianxia finally stayed on the wuxiao, who was no different from ordinary people, and said in his heart, "Stop it. The girl in the small courtyard leaning against the peach tree is actually a ghost in the Golden Core realm, and this young man is the master of this ghost city." The young man looked up at Xianxia and said in his heart, "They are all people. I heard that there is a saying in your mountain that it is difficult for gods to find dead people." Xianxia shook his head and said, "It's not so simple to die. You can't sit still in the Qinghuang temple now and you can't turn the merit book. Don't be too confident." The young man stopped speaking. After hesitating, he nodded and said, "Then take them out of the city." Xianxia asked with a smile, "I haven't asked my identity first and then test the level of realm?" The young man shook his head and said, "No, Mr. is a righteous man, don't offend." The fat man was surprised and said, "It's a shame to be able to chat like this. It's a pity to be a ghost." Then the fat man burned his and jumped up. "Oh hey, why did the Lord Qin come here? If you miss the distance you will meet the miss. What a ghostly city." Suddenly the heavens and the earth are clear and immortal. It turned out to be the master of Qinshan come here. Between words, he had a little tiptoe. More than 200 caddies of meat floated off the ground, supported on the railing with one hand, dexterously jumped out of the women's attic. A huge body landed silently on the courtyard steps. It turned out that there was a blue shirt and long gown standing on the back of the man with a knife, looking down at the Nanmu couplet that had been crushed, and then scanning the broken tiles under the steps, regretting endless. "Are you so burdened? How much energy does it cost to build a few more wheelbarrows?" Qin Pingan raised his head and smiled and explained to Xianxia, "Just passing by, I saw you here, so I rushed over to take a look." Xianxia complained, "Have you been in retreat like this?" The fat man immediately became unhappy, turning his head and staring at Xianxia. "Presumptuous! Why are you talking to my brother Qin?" Xianxia angrily smiled and said, "What an uncle." The fat man said awe-inspiringly, "I want help my brother, or else I would turn my elbow to you, an outsider." Qin Pingan patted the fat man on the shoulder and reminded, "It's too late to pass. Heat, pay attention to heat." The fat man said humbly, "Qin Shanju is worthy of being an old world, and his casual words are all hard-earned experiences. A group of people in the courtyard are like falling clouds. Especially the burly armored warrior sitting on the chair with the big horse golden sword, motionless, with a great master demeanor. Because the mysterious man in the blue shirt behind him gently pressed one hand against the back of the chair, it wasn't that the sixth realm warrior didn't dare to move." Qin Pingan glanced at the wuxiao. He had previously overlooked the ghost town in the sea of clouds and noticed that something was wrong with this young man, except that Xianxia was present, so he didn't need to worry about anything. Looking up at Xianxia, Qin Pingan smiled and said, "I am so embarrassed to say that Eugene is an uncle, so I have to ask you to ask me for help?" Xianxia rubbed his chin and said, "Don't worry, let me choose a day after Lichuan." Qin Pingan said, "Then I will continue on my way." Xianxia waved his hand. A green shirt disappeared out of thin air. The color boat flies across. One fell down in the river, while the ferry shrank to the size of a awning boat. It turned out to be a place of victory. The two mountains and the river, the cliffs are as sharp as knives, and the chisel marks are faintly visible. In the canyon, the light suddenly dimmed, as if entering a ghost gate. Another black boulder abruptly rises in the middle of the river, like an ancient mountain spirit waiting in black armor, stopping here, splitting the river water with a mammoth body and splitting it into two. Therefore he was regarded by the local boatman Josie for fear of the road. Xuanhuan said with a smile, "When the water is low in autumn and winter it is still slightly better, but if the water is in full season in summer, the water will be turbulent, and the boat will be as fast as an arrow." It is easy to hit the rocks with the pebbles and the boat will be destroyed or killed. And the ships on board collided head-on, especially the floods and the turbulent river water. Go straight to this big rock in the heart of the river, you can hang the rainbow, and the boat with noble experience will not dare to sail. Xuanhuan likes to travel to famous mountains and rivers. He had been here before and he deliberately picked a bright moon night when floods broke out. The old master stepped on a flat boat with his feet and was mistaken for immortals by the local people. Xuanhuan asked, "With this huge rock standing over the river, it is a major obstacle to water transportation. The local court didn't have the emperor to seal the water he bow, and built temples nearby to help press the water and smooth the water veins?" Xuanhuan shook his head and said, "Don't say it. Since ancient times there has been no imperial court-approved water temple, and even the local natives did not dare to build an unruly temple. They said that this was a fight between the mountain and the water god, and the temple was built, whether it was one or two. It seems that it is not appropriate to worship the gods of mountains and waters, but local county officials, when they took office, must come here together with official documents to sacrifice water for protection." Xuanhuan wondered, "Why do you look a bit like that historical Yanlingdui?" Xuanhuan admired, "It's still the master's knowledge and strong knowledge. If it weren't for the master's mention I would really not lean towards Yanlingdui." Howran had 4 major mainstays in the past years, and Yanlingdui was one of them. In addition, there was also a place in Baidi City in the divine continent of the Middle Earth, where the word Dragon Gate was inscribed in a red lacquered book. Xuanhuan said, "If you are in the Pushan area you can excavate a place to stand on the north side of Dashi for Wufu to stand on, and then wait for the floods and waters. You can pass fist here, beat your muscles and bones." Xuanhuan asked tentatively, "Should I talk to the local court? Spend money to buy. My master, who is in an abnormal yellow attire, does not put on cosmetics, never likes gorgeous clothes and spends money, which is very different from ordinary women." Xuanhuan turned her head and looked at the old woman. "Mrs. Chiu, is there any weirdness in the water?" The old woman smiled and shook her head and said, "Actually, there is no water descendant that is weird. It seems that at the root of the river bottom, a master nailed to death with a few iron chains, probably because he could not take it away, and he was unwilling to benefit from other immortal masters. However, this boulder is not of high rank and cannot be refined. What a good thing, just because of the special material, extremely heavy general spells and weapons, it is difficult to dig and quarry, and it is easy to unwind with the sharp edge and it is cast. The weapons that came were of average value and not cost-effective. In the history of the old Yu dynasty, there was indeed the Qin Tianjian geomancy master, who was ordered to have an investigation here, and the result was similar to what Mother Chiu said. The most famous weapons of the gods on the rivers and lakes are mostly cast and refined from this kind of flying rocks outside the sky. There is a difference between 100 refining and 1,000 refining. Like the town national treasure knife of the Daquan dynasty, that's it, only the material itself is much higher. So the only use is to pull it out of the roots and move it away, using it as a whole piece of feng shui stone. It is only a gash trainer of the immortal family. It's hard to move this hill. Here the Yu family calendar, the emperors of the generation are considered simple and unwilling to relocate and move them to the capital. A slender figure landed on the top of a cliff. When the young woman saw Huang Yiyun and his group from a distance, she had a little accident, and she immediately landed on the shore with wind, and moved gently, just in line with the colorful boat. Pei Qian estimated the time, and Yi Yunyun should also cross the ink line. Before going to sea, the younger brother Cui Dongshan asked her to come here to wait for the guests. "It doesn't matter if you can't wait." She said that she has fallen in love with a piece of river stone. "If the master sister doesn't mind, you can move to the Shindu mountain boundary for resettlement, and the price has been negotiated with the people in charge of this land boundary." At the ferry crossing, Pei Qian failed to meet Huang Yiyun, and never expected to meet him here. After Pei Qian greeted him with a fist, he asked, "Is the Lord Yishan hit this huge rock in the heart of the river? Want to relocate back to Pushan?" Yi Yunyun smiled and said, "Shindu Mountain also fell in love with it?" Pei Qian smiled. "Is too far away from Pushan, I have no idea." Yi Yunyun said, "How do you move? There is still a long way to go from Shindu Mountain. The threshold for moving the mountain to the peak is very high. Unless it is a mountain monster that is a member of the mountain or the monk's realm. To get high, you need to cut off the roots of the mountain first, and you must also be familiar with the talisman and the formation. Traveling thousands of miles, moving away from mountains, the burden is extremely heavy, and accidents are prone to occur in the middle. If he was just migrating the boulders in the water, Chiu on the boat would still have some tricks, but after landing it would be very tricky. Even if the real body of the old Chiu appeared, it was actually not easy. Pei Qian's answer was extremely concise, just 2 words, carry away. Yi Yunyun smiled and nodded. You are busy, we will go to Xindu Mountain after we go shopping for a while. Pei Qian stopped on the shore. A colorful boat went downstream like an arrow. It's just that Yi Yunyun and her group turned around and looked around. I saw that Pei Qian leaped into the river, and after a few blinks the river was shaking, and there was the sound of muffled thunder and shaking at the bottom of the water. After a while the woman squeezed several iron chains. She dug a big hole at the bottom of the river bed, held the whole river rock with both hands, lifted it up, and threw a small mountain into the air and then punched it out. Raising the falling boulder up 100 feet tall, a woman as small as a mustard seed came to the side of the hill, hovered in the wind, rounded her arms and hit it with a punch, hitting the stone in the sea of clouds. Rolling forward again for more than 100 feet, the figure is as fast as thunder, dashing forward, a brain the bag was slanted and the shoulder raised the hill 10 feet high. The woman came back to the back again and gave out another palm. In this way people took the rocks and went to Xindu Mountain together. The old woman swallowed. The little girl's family, where is such a strong force? Isn't he a martial artist at the top of the mountain? Will the qualifications be too exaggerated? Yi Yunyun smiled and asked, Xuanhuan, do you want to challenge her? Pure Takeo, all of the same generation in the same realm. So Xuanhuan and Pei Qian, as the direct disciples of Yi Yunyun and Qin Pingan, respectively, took the lead in asking fists before master, and it was normal. What's more, Xuanhuan's trip was to a large extent just rushing to ask Pei Qian for his punches, trying to determine whether he could carry 20 punches. Xuanhuan smiled bitterly. It seems that I am asking for hardship no matter how you look at it. The layman looks at the excitement and the expert looks at the doorway. Pei Qian moved the mountain. In this way, in addition to the extremely heavy punching force, he also has to use cleverness in his boxing. Yi Yunyun held back a smile. Support 20 punches? Xuanhuan took a deep breath. Fight for at least 10 punches. On the way Pei Qian moved to the mountain, a blue shirt appeared in the sea of clouds. Pei Qian just turned his head and wanted to speak. Qin Pingan scowled and said, You can't fall in a bit of pure anger. Pei Qian grinned, nodded and continued to punch. Of course not. Qin Pingan is just saying that. In fact, what he really wants to say in his heart is to make Pei Qian lazy and change a few more mouthfuls of pure innocence. It's okay. Sure. Fatherly. It's like 2 identities are fighting. I feel that Pei Qian can do one thing in one go with the beginning and the end, which is very good. But I also hope in my heart that the grown-up disciple will occasionally learn Xiao Haitan's stealing and skidding back then. What does it matter? A child has worked hard when he was young, isn't it just to be less hard when he grows up? The taste here is so complicated that it is not for outsiders. Accompanying Pei Qian through the sea of clouds for more than 100 miles, Qin Pingan finally stopped and said, Master still has something to do. I will pay attention along the way. Pei Qian blurted out, Master, don't worry, you won't bump into the mountains and rivers along the way. If you meet some high mountains, if there is that city temple under your feet, you will deter early. Qin Pingan was speechless. Was it because I was too strict before? Yes, it is. Pei Qian walked away and after handing out another punch, he turned his head and looked around. The master was still standing there. After seeing her turning his head, he smiled and waved away. Ink line crossing. The rain is torrential like long June splashing ink. It is also like the little black charcoal girl back then holding a brush to trace the calligraphy, until the end there is no text, only ink. There was a blue shirt with a hat on his head and a drape. The man walked in a hurry, stopped outside a shop and took off the hat. The youth shopkeeper inside was rubbing a white jade-carved fish-like dragon handle. The guest shook his hat at the door and asked with a smile, Can I borrow a treasure to avoid the rain? The young man nodded, Whatever you want. Glancing at the man in the clothes, the other party pretended to look at the clearly priced Kit Kat items in the shop. After a while, the young man was really too lazy to go around in circles. Did he see me toast and not drink, so he asked me to drink fine wine? From this it can be seen that the Pushen Yunkatang is also a man of fame and reputation, and as expected, there are not many good birds on these mountain monks. Ijo Shinfu, only the monk of Taiping Mountain, he would be willing to go there with just one sentence, and he would take whatever he gave him, giving him the title as he pleased. In addition, Yu Guizong, if a certain ancestor of the upper 5 realms in the Ancestor Hall came to Moxiandu to invite himself out of the mountain, he would be reluctant to be a guest clerk or something. Otherwise, Tong Yezhou is really not interested in other immortal palace sections. What kind of mountain monarch's golden summit temple and mountain prime minister's Bailong cave will not enter the deity's eyes at all, and he will not touch his eyelids? The guest asked with a smile. Why did the shopkeeper say this? The young man sneered. You immortal Pushun, since you like going around so much, why don't you just take a few more trips to Moxiandu? Why hide from the rain in my little shop? The customer smiled and said, the shopkeeper misunderstood, I am not Brother Pushun. The young man was puzzled. Just come to my shop to buy things? Qin Pingan smiled and said, not all. I want to see the nascent soul realm monk with my own eyes, and if feasible, try to invite him to serve as the protector of Taiping Mountain. At the gate of the Taiping Mountain, Yang Pu, a scholar of the academy, mentioned one thing. There was a young monk who claimed to be from Moxiandu, whose surname was Negative Mountain, and the name was Negative Mountain. The monk from the outside town only offered 3 sticks of incense at the gate of the mountain, and chatted with Yang Pu a few more, and then left, only to let Yang Pu encounter something. He could fly the sword to spread the letter of the Ma Xindu, and he could do his best. Earlier in Mixifeng, Qin Pingan had read a piece of espionage. It was Cui Dongshan's own efforts to trace all the mountain spirits and water monsters around Xindu Mountain. The battle is recorded in the book. In addition to Moxiandu, there is also the old Yu dynasty. All the ghost towns in the territory Cui Dongshan walked all the way. Moreover, according to Cui Dongshan's arrangement, it is very likely that the junior brother Chao Qingqing will change his status and re-enter the imperial examination. In the Xinyu dynasty that will soon be unified, he will first get a 3 yuan in a company, and then Chao Sunny will be an official in the temple. The step-by-step career promotion, in the words of Cui Dongshan, is, no matter how you have to make your husband happy. Yu Jishan lazily said, if you have something to say, let go of the fart. When the rain stops and going to drive guests. Qin Pingan opened the door straight to the point. Do you want to go to Taiping Mountain to practice? Which green onion are you? Yu Jishan couldn't help but smile, stretched out his thumb and pointed at himself. I am a person who speaks violently, don't mind, don't listen if you like. Bragging and not drafting drafts, a little Dragon Gate monk, dare to lie about his path to the cultivation of the nascent soul realm? Besides, your kid has a half-bronze relationship with Taiping Shan, so what qualifications do you have to point your finger at it? Qin Pingan smiled and said, presumably fellow Taoist has already known about it. Huang Ting has returned to Tongjishao from wuxialover, and is now a guest at Xianxia. I believe she will go to Taiping Mountain and rebuild the sect soon. Yu Negative Shan frowned and said, is there anything? It's another person who doesn't read the Shanshuadi report. Qin Pingan nodded and said, there is indeed such a thing. Yu Jishan asked, what is the picture for making wedding clothes for others? Qin Pingan smiled and said, distant relatives are not as good as neighbors. Yu Jishan thought for a while, his eyes were weird, and he asked, are you Taoists? Qin Pingan shook his head and said, it's just a friend. Yu Jishan let out a cry and suddenly said, is that the future Taoist couple? This skilled veteran Yuan Ing Shui said, does this count as taking advantage of the fire, taking advantage of people's danger, taking advantage of the void? Then the shopkeeper added a more ruthless sentence. If I didn't guess wrong, you are a half-hearted scholar who failed to enter the academy, right? Qin Pingan smiled silently. This kind of thing, the more you explain, the more misunderstanding it becomes. Dao friends are so good at chatting, it's no wonder that they can't live to the Yupu realm. It took 3,000 years to get a nascent soul realm from the Longmen realm. Previously, it was fortunate that Huang Yiyun had a big measure and didn't care about that joke. Otherwise, only relying on his nascent soul realm cultivation base, he could not walk Jianghua Jiao. So if you want to say that the physical toughness is limited by the innate threshold of the road roots and feet, you can only say that it is really average, very average, if Yiyun had been temperamental before. Almost this negative mountain fish and must not drown directly in the river. Yu Jishan asked, are you really friends with Huang Ting? That's right, how can a monk in the Dragon Gate realm be worthy of my family's Huang Ting? Qin Pingan nodded and said, I was lucky enough to meet the Taiping Mountain Laotian when I traveled to Tongjishao in his early years. Yu Jishan groaned in silence, considered for a long time and said, if Huang Ting can be asked to come here to find me, I will believe you. I will talk to Huang Ting for any plans afterwards. Qin Pingan smiled and said, the Taoist Negative Mountain is old and prudent, so it should be. As soon as Yu Jishan was about to ask the other party's name and teacher, he saw the other party picking up the inkstone from the ancient bricks of the founding year of the Yu family, turning his head and smiling and asked, can you get a 50% discount? Yu Jishan smiled and asked, "What do you think? 50% off? Why don't you grab it?" Never thought that Yinyike would start to pay. A colorful boat was approaching the destination, and Yi Yunyun could clearly see the Shindu mountain from the old mountain. She suddenly rubbed her brows. Apart from Tanrong, she actually had a more difficult job. Before she left, she went to the waterhouse of the East China Sea woman again. As a result, she walked out of a lot of trouble. The goddess of water who suddenly became a nymphomaniac began to sneer, and she had to let Yi Yunyun bring a collection of woodblock color watermarked poems. The characters were dusty, the water was quiet, the colors were complicated, and the printing was extremely beautiful. Poor worker Jian. I said I saw the hermit. Be sure to ask the other party to help yourself and ask for a signature with Fengshua Temple Greatsword Immortal Wei Jin. Don't worry about it. Even if it's delayed for 10 years, it doesn't matter if you get a piece of paper. It was a thank you gift from her and the hermit. The old woman asked in a heartfelt voice, "Master Yi Shan, isn't the location of Qin Jiangxian sect selection a bit sloppy?" Looking around, no matter what the old woman thinks, it's a barren land that is not suitable for pioneering the mountain. It's not really a place of beauty. Mountain luck is average, water transportation is thin, and the aura of heaven and earth is only slightly better than the so-called places of nowhere. Yi Yunyun smiled and said, "Back then, Pushun, even if it weren't a poor mountain and bad river, was still in the same situation as here. We managed it bit by bit." Seeing Huang Yiyun didn't want to say more, the old woman stopped asking questions. It is estimated that the peaks of the golden cores of some sects will not lose the weather here. Unless, the other party has already moved to the mountains, dragging the river out of nothing, and has already used some kind of blindness right now. The hostess on Shindu Mountain was Pei Qian and the scholar named Chao Sunny. In fact, they had seen each other in the tea shed in his hometown before. The old woman has a good impression of Chao Sunny. But I couldn't see Qin Jianxian and that Master Chui. In Mixifeng Mountain the hospitality was simple, but Yi Yunyun and the others didn't care about it. Shui Huai tentatively asked Pei Qian on the way to climb the mountain, could both parties find an opportunity to ask for a fight? Pei Qian said with a smile to ask the master. As long as the master nodded, there is no problem. After the old woman settled in the house of vinegar and vinegar, she went to find Yi Yunyun, said hello, and said that she wanted to travel around the surrounding land. Of course Yi Yunyun has no objection. After the old woman left Mishue Peak, she hid her figure and used her life water method to swim away quietly. Coming to a place where the land and the sea meet, who can imagine that this place is always arid even though it faces the sea, and it is the hiding place of the Dadu Dragon Palace. With a secret treasure, after opening the prohibition, visit the old site of the Dadu Dragon Palace, the old woman saw things and hurt people, everywhere Qiangli Yuyu lifeless, especially the palace of the princess, how lively in the past, crowded with friends, coveted, and guests. In the middle, there are countless daffodils, mountain monarchs like clouds, and the old woman standing at the door, inevitably sad and weeping secretly. In ancient times, the dragons of the four seas were responsible for water transportation in the world, and the dragon in the sea, holding the secret bottle of the dragon palace, went to the land to spread the clouds and rain, and a drop of water in the sky, a foot of rain on the ground. On those Shelong stones entrenched and rested. All going forward. Chiu-Du did not immediately search for the rare and exotic treasures, searched many treasures and put them into the bag, but wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes, and went to the hall of Dadu Longjun. The old woman sighed faintly outside the threshold. The old woman suddenly raised her head and saw a young woman wearing a snow-white robe sitting on the steps at the foot of the dragon chair. The old woman thought she was dazzled or some mirage illusion, but the next moment, it was confirmed that the other party was indeed a real person. The old woman suddenly had a sharp voice and angrily said, "Who dares to break into the forbidden area of the dragon palace?" Only the next moment the old woman felt sad. The woman twitched the corners of her mouth. "Isn't I supposed to ask you this sentence?" She was condescending, her expression arrogant, her snow-white eyes were full of disdain, and she could vaguely see the golden light flowing, like countless golden dragons swimming in the abyss of two ancient wells. An old Qiu from the Yuanying realm had a very loud voice and full of air, which made her think of the long-tongued women by the well in the small town in the past for no reason. The old woman frowned and said, "The old man is an old man in this place, the girl?" In ancient times, the dragon palace in the world was respected by the dragon palace of the four seas. In addition, there were 18 Dadu dragon palaces. Many of the rivers and lakes on the land were suffixed with the word long, such as the length of Qiantang and the length of West Lake. The ranks are strict and cannot be overridden. The ranks are distinct. Only talking about the dragon pillar is very particular. They are carved with 5 claws, 4 claws and 3 claws. In addition, the color of the dragon pillars has a clear etiquette system. Separate golden color, purple, green, black, etc. Like the beam pillar dragon in this hall, it has 4 claws and blue, which means that the lord of the dragon palace here, although he is in a high position, has an improper background, is not the orthodox of the dragon monarchs of the 4 seas in the past. Descendants. The young woman yawned and joked, "You said that you are an old person, so what do you come here for, stealing things?" Old Xiaodu blushed, a little guilty. The weird woman who was unidentified but was able to enter the Dad Yulong palace did not take any action, so as to monopolize all the old treasures, and did not seem to have any interest in chatting with the old woman. Although she failed to serve as the co-master of land and water transport, or even one of the 4 sea kings, the Zhongtu Confucian temple promised that the relics and old sites of the dragon palace in the world have been excavated before and occupied by various immortal forces. She is not allowed to turn the old account. I asked for it. At the same time, all dragon palaces that have not yet lifted the ban and are still in a dusty state, regardless of scale or specification, all belong to her. For example here. In fact, she had been here once before but she didn't move anything. She was just used as a Xielong stone to escape the summer heat. Escorting Howren's troops to the wild world, the water walking the dart is not too easy. This time she is a break in official business, come here to take a breath. Seeing the young woman, Xiaodu suddenly sniffed and looked at herself again. Finally, she lifted her cheek with one hand and smiled with a soft look. In the hands of some so-called strange people, she has eaten suffering? Let's talk about it. What kind of taboos did you commit back then? Taboo. The old woman was silent. She didn't want to reveal her own shortcomings, not to mention that she didn't dare to arrange behind the Dragon Tiger Mountain Heavenly Master. The woman chuckled and laughed. It's just a talisman from the Dragon and Tiger Mountain Taoist priest, and crushed the backbone of a 5,000-year-old Xiao? The bones are so soft, it's no wonder that they would go back to the owner's house and steal it, where they intended to give the Dragon Palace treasures a high man on the mountain. Let me listen or let me guess. As soon as she raised her eyebrows, she seemed to become interested suddenly. Is it Wei De Jiangxian from Yuguazang in the south? Or is it Du Jinren from Jindingguan in the north? Seeing that the other party's tone was louder than the sky, the old woman became more embarrassed, and wanted to find a reason, first withdraw from the old Dragon Palace site before making long-term plans. The woman squinted her eyes and said, "Do you like to pretend to be deaf so much?" With a white palm like jade, gently tapping the steps, ripples and circles of green and faint essence water transported in the hall. The old woman seemed to have been hit by a sky thunder, hitting her heart, suddenly bleeding from her 7 orifices. She stretched out her hand to cover her ears, her throat moved slightly, but she could only make a babble. The woman who made her aggressive shots smiled and said, "Isn't that what you wished?" The young woman put her hands away, shook her sleeves, patted her knees gently and sneered, "The descendants of the world's dragons have survived 3,000 years of cold and heat. Finally all the hardships come, and the Dragon Gate fight's over so that I can do that fish-to-dragon transformation. I really want to be on the top of the Dragon Gate, and you ask one by one over the past 3,000 years, how hard it has been and how difficult it has been. I think Qing Shanchang from Dafu Academy and the old Jiao from Fengshui Cave, I think they will all enjoy the blessings, so why are they boiled? What's going on?" Seeing the old woman crawling on the ground, whimpering and dry howling. The woman was angrily noisy. The old woman was forced to show her true body, entrenched in the hall, dying, with a 700 zhang body, as if carrying the weight of 5 mountains. The woman stood up, walked down the steps, raised her foot, and stepped on the forehead of old Chio's huge head, with a playful expression. "Are you stealing something?" Old Chio finally realized it, and a strange brilliance burst into his eyes. "It's you?" The young woman sneered. "The old faint-eyed thing finally recognizes me?" Lao Chio was extremely excited, enduring the severe pain. Tears were shining in a pair of eyes as big as a lantern, and the words unique to the ancient dragon, said in a hoarse voice, "The old maid is fortunate to see the real dragon. Fortunately no regrets though he died." GK showed no sympathy and increased the strength on his feet. "Then die." The old Xiao under her feet really didn't have any regrets, neither prayed for mercy, nor did he have the slightest unwillingness in his eyes. The big old Xiao's head squeezed out a smile instead. Jigue squinted his eyes and said, "As soon as the restrictions are lifted, he rushes to steal things, right? Tell me, who is going to ask for credit and beg for mercy in exchange for a future?" Old Xiao answered truthfully, not daring to hide it. Jigue asked, Chui Dongshan? Xiandushan? How far is it from here? On the threshold of the main hall, someone helped replied, It's not too far. GQ raised his head and looked at the guy at the door. She looked complacent, but her heart was slightly shaken. How could she be so close that she couldn't notice the other person's breath? By the way, it's the girlie who likes rouge gouache in my hometown. This guy made this guy so watery. Oh, it's really lingering now, it's not half a neighbor again. The man always stood outside the door and said, It's almost enough. Jigue hesitated for a moment, and put away the foot that was trampling on the forehead of the old Chio, and said with a smile, Who am I, such a powerful official? After the old Chio lost the mighty and mighty avenue suppressed, he immediately regained his human form, staggered, and turned his head to look outside the door. It was actually that Xianxia? The next conversation left the old woman both frightened and confused. So like to be nosy? That also has to be nosy to manage. You didn't do this before. You are the same. Then inside and outside the door, the neighbors of the past were silent in pairs. But the old woman noticed a murderous intent as thick as water in an instant. Sword of Coming Chapter 900. Tanggishao Dadyulong Palace Ruins, women in white clothes in the hall, green shirts outside the door. The two neighbors meet again in a foreign land, but there is not the slightest harmony in the atmosphere of meeting old friends in another country. In the Beipingza Luapa Mountain, the main peak is the Lingfeng Bamboo Tower, the wall on the first floor, the long sword is in the sheath, and the sword air is like a dragon and snake flying on the wall. Suddenly the sword light flashed, and the unsheathed long sword left Luapa Mountain in an instant. The sword aura was like a rainbow, and suddenly swept out of the Beiwa area of Dei. Mountain Monarch Weibo didn't even have time to help hide his sword light. Fortunately, the long sword pierced the air very fast, and the cultivator in the world gave him a glimpse at most, and there was no trace. Standing on the top of Piyun Mountain, Weibo was inevitably worried, so he walked around Luapa Mountain and found Julien. Julien just smiled and gave a simple answer. If it's okay, it will pass. Weibo feels a little relieved. Indeed, even in a foreign country, Qin Pingan has both Chui Dongshan and Mr. Xiaoma beside him. In the main hall of the Dadu Dragon Palace, Qiudu was unable to see the true realm of the sword fairy in the Qingshan sword when he was in the tea shed by the Jilin River last time. The old woman just felt that a sword repairman, since he dared to confront a real dragon, and there is no wind on the momentum, no matter how it should be a fairyland sword repair, it is even very likely to be ascended. Otherwise, in the former site of the Dragon Palace near the sea, let you be Wei Ying, the great sword immortal of Yu Guizhong, against this woman named Wang Zhu. As long as you don't change the battlefield, there is no suspense about the outcome. Jigue smiled and asked, My wife, I really want to fight with this sword fairy. Who are you going to help? The old woman did not hesitate to say, The old man is willing to be sent by the real dragon, and he will go through water and fire. Vinegar and vinegar. If you can follow this true dragon to practice, the road is promising and the future is limitless. My own little Nizi, who has excellent cultivating aptitude, if he can practice the water law to the extreme in the future, not to say that it is to establish a school, or to go to the top of the Hauran Mountain, it is not impossible. Like the real fire dragon on the top of the earth, the fire method is recognized as the #1 in the world, and it is possible to suppress Madame Tundun, who is also in the Ascension realm, from beginning to end as a tortoise in the Lushui pit. Qin Pingan laughed blankly. One dared to ask and the other dared to answer. You are living here. But the old woman didn't have any murderous intentions. Being detained by the Dragon Tiger Mountain Celestial Master for too many years with a talisman, this old man now has neither the ambition to establish a school nor the desire to prove longevity. Everything is done for the little girl. All beings with spirits have their own instincts. Among them, the genus of Jiaolong, many characteristics are especially obvious. Jigue stood at the bottom of the steps and glanced at the old man. This wife and aunt, like those long-tongued women who carry water in her hometown, she is stern and stubborn, and the wall is just like the wind. So it's more cordial to watch. Jigue suddenly turned his head and looked at one place. Dao's heart trembled slightly. She shifted her gaze again, her eyes cold, looking at Qin Pingan outside the main hall. If she used to be more murderous than murderous, then now she is more murderous than murderous. Resentment was in her heart, like wild grass spreading wildly. There was no reason to speak. It's like saying, even you have to kill me? Outside the door, Qin Pingan turned a blind eye to this. Zigui's face was green, she sneered, turned her back to the door and slowly walked up the steps to the dragon chair. She turned around and reached out to hold the handle of the chair. Since the former site of the Dragon Palace was in a half-open state, even Qiu had noticed the majestic aura outside the door, and the old woman was panicked for a while and lost her color. Remember that back then, in the ancient times when the dragon's palms went to the land to spread rain according to the law, the old woman was still here as a teacher and maid, and Dadu Dragon Palace encountered a storm, and a group of sword immortals joined forces to ask the sword in Dadu. It was just that shocking questioning sword. Fortunately, under the efforts of Donghai Longjun personally appeared to mediate, the thunder and the rain were small, and the two sides did not cause any casualties. Qingshan, surnamed Qin. Gentle temperament, decisive shot. In the old days there was such an unknown sword fairy with a sword in a blue shirt. He belonged to Hong Kong in the Howran world. No one knows the origin of this person. He only knew that before the Battle of Xianlong, this person used to be located in the boundary of ancient Shu. In that cicada-shed cave in the sky, only one person and one sword and a group of sword repairmen, there was a sword lead. After that, the kendo luck of Ao Pingzhou was ruined. The old woman suddenly turned pale and said in a trembled voice, "Are you a dragon slayer?" Qin Pingan was silent. Jiaogui chuckled and said with a smile, "It's really like your usual style of doing things. Always be careful and careful again, never pursue the maximization of profits, only seek one without making mistakes. Ordinary people, rich and noble, do not return to their hometown, like a night walk in genie. But the neighbor in front of him is suddenly rich and not surprised." She actually saw the clues before that sword aura approached Dadulong Palace. The so-called Qin Pingan in front of him was only a puppet talisman, and several ancient talismans that had been lost for a long time were used. Is like an array of blessings. The real body is outside the Dragon Palace. It's no wonder that lifelessness, with this covering the secrets, hiding the sky and crossing the sea, coupled with his avenue water, and the fate of the flying sword, can isolate the small world, and finally let the substitute, the gods, sneak into this place unconsciously. Sure enough, there is another blue shirt, floating with a sword. Two Qin Pingan appeared at the same time. The latter stretched out his two fingers, and the former dissipated and turned into a pocket flying sword, which was illusory like a spring breeze. Qin Pingan put that Jing Zhongyue into his sleeve, and while a grain of mustard seeds returned to his true body, Qin Pingan also quietly erased the overlapping rune formations on the flying sword. Qin Pingan's magical power of the talisman originated from a certain idea of his friend Lu Jinglong. As the youngest master in the history of Taihui sword sect, Lu Jinglong is both a sword repairer and a battle master. Zigui's face was gloomy. Why break the contract without authorization? Qin Pingan is too lazy to answer this kind of question. You haven't asked me about the contract, but I will ask you if I resolve the contract? Juvenile was very angry but quickly smiled because he remembered many old things. The mud legs and mud bottle alley are indeed the same virtues, but they are not unfamiliar. At that time, Song Jisun was so angry that Qin Pingan was so angry. Two people of the same age, separated by a wall, often when Song Jisun had nothing to do, they took Qin Pingan to relieve their sorrow, provocation, sarcasm, and a basket of acrimoniousness. Throw away his words. On the other side of the yard there was almost no response. Instead, Song Jisun felt aggrieved. There was no need for words to fight, just a kind of silence which made Song Jisun failed. Qin Pingan has at most one face and one eye, or occasionally a fluttering sentence. Song Jisun was able to deflate so many times he almost jumped into thunder. He had to go over the wall and fight, clenched his fists with his hands, his veins violent, but he was helpless. When it comes to fighting, Song Jisun grew up and really didn't have the confidence to follow. Qin Pingan really wrestled his wrists. For example, Qin Pingan was annoyed by Song Jisun's remarks, so he just said casually, "As an apprentice as a kiln worker, how much is a month's wages? And at the end of the year he can't afford Spring Festival couplets." A very simple sentence but with a lot of meaning. It will naturally make Song Jisun, who has been enlightened very early, think about it. It is easy for him to think more, and then the more he thinks, the more he feels being poked. For example, Qin Pingan is, "I'm not saying that although you Song Jisun is rich and has no worries about food and clothing, I make money by my own ability." Taking it one step further, it's like repeatedly suggesting that Song Jisun is the illegitimate son of the kiln superintendent, so you don't have to go to the grave on Qingming Festival. All your money has fallen from the sky. At that time, Zhigui felt that this boring gourd neighbor was to be a good person. Otherwise, as long as he was willing to talk and scold the street, maybe the widow in Nipping Lane, and the maid-in-law in Xinghua Lane, it might not be Chen. Peaceful opponent. Zhigui smiled and asked, "You are not the kind of person who has a good face. Now that you have fallen, why bother to be strong?" Chen Ping held a night tour, strode across the threshold, came to the hall, watched the dragon pillars up close and said casually, "Before in Dali capital, some of the monks of the earthly branch said that since the national teacher is no longer there, it is better to do something. Yes, I accidentally heard it and it didn't end well." GQ pouted, "Do you really consider yourself to be him? The person who can take care of her is no longer there." Chen Pingan seemed to completely ignore Zigui's ascension, and the two sides got closer and closer. GK suddenly sneered, "You even brought a helper?" Chen Pingan raised the long sword and gently wiped the blade with his left hand. The blade was clear like Xianhuan, like a mirror. The sword holder looks at him, like a clear stream of autumn water. Jigue glanced at Chen Ping's sword-holding hand. She suddenly stretched out and yawned, as if she suddenly became in a good mood. A needle in the heart of a woman. Judo looks weird. How does it feel like a pair of enemies in a complicated relationship? Could it be that idiotic man complaining to women? There was a period of love-hate entanglement that was constantly cutting and arranging? GK asked in his heart, "Now that I have the identity of Dong Haijun, will I be entangled by those sneaky dragon cultivators?" Chen Pingan said in his heart, "Of course they just need to wait for you to make a mistake." GQ walked down the steps, smiled and asked, "What are you talking about?" Chen Pingan nodded, turned around and walked towards the main hall gate first. Jigue twisted his robe with his fingers and trot quickly to keep up. Leave only a stunned old woman. After stepped out of the hall, GQ smiled and asked, "Did you make a special trip to find me?" Chen Pingan shook his head, "It's just a coincidence. The reason why I followed this trip was because I was worried that the old lady would go there without knowing it and be settled by you." This time, Xiaodu revisited his old place and selected the old treasures of the Dragon Palace. No matter what the purpose is, once he is known by Jigue, he will definitely not be able to eat. In addition to knowing the promise made by the Zhongtu Confucian Temple and Jigue, Chen Pingan knew more about the temper of this neighbor back then, and he would definitely be taken revenge by Jigue. Back then there were many trivialities in Jingfang in her hometown, and Jigue would be careful. I remember all of them, not to mention this kind of thing that she completely took control of. When Jigue shot Xiaodu, it would only be indifferent. In addition, the buried river in the Dequan dynasty was once a section of the main road in Judu. Chen Pingan was also worried that the Bio Palace and the buried river Empress would be affected by this incident. The only accident was that Chen Pingan did not expect to meet her here. In the 60 years of his hometown in the early years, Mr. Qi was restricted by his identity and could not contact her too much. But Jigue was able to regain his freedom. On that snowy night, she climbed out of the iron lock well and staggered all the way to Mud Bottle Alley. How could it be Mr. Qi's oversight? Is of course a deliberate act. Because of this, Chen Pingan was in the Chidu temple and reminded Jigue to be careful. Otherwise, Chen Pingan, no matter how good a teacher is unwilling to take care of Jigue. After parting ways with her, the big deal for both parties is that you take your Yangguan road and I take my single plank bridge. Chen Pingan asked in his heart, "On the other side of Nipping Lane, our two houses are next to each other. It seems that no one lives all the time. As long as I can remember, I have been deserted. The households in Huaihuang County can't be found. Do you have any clues?" Jigue and Chen Pingan walked side by side. She turned her head and smiled. "Are you asking me for help?" Chen Pingan nodded and said, "That's it. The two parties have neither relatives nor cause, nor grievances or grudges, and they are both fellow villagers and neighbors. Ask a few more gossips without hurting the bones." GQ smiled as if he didn't intend to speak. Holding her head high, she strolled in the courtyard of this Dragon Palace ruins. "Y'all think that back then, the mud legs around me on the road, I met myself carrying water and returning to Mud Bottle Alley, and he would help to carry the bucket. In winter she would carry a big sack of charcoal because she didn't want to go there. At that time she was the poorest worm suppressed by the small town avenue. She always felt that the road was far away and looked extraordinarily heavy. Song Jisin and Lu Xianying are such careful men, but they have never misunderstood anything about this matter. Neither side felt that Chen Pingan would be a little bit crooked. The woman folded her hands, interlaced her 10 fingers, looked forward and asked softly, "Do you think I am worthless except for the realm?" Chen Pingan thought for a while but did not rush to give an answer. It happened to be the gentleness of the man next to her, and her face suddenly became gloomy with anger, so it was better to just blurt out and nod in acknowledgement. Chen Pingan said slowly, "No. Yomo is thinking of some old stories from his hometown, and Chen Pingan has a softer expression. It was a silly straw shoe boy who met Mr. Qi for the first time and begged for help. After, Qin Pingan re-examined the time-traveling picture, only to find that the girl used to scold the locust tree in her hometown. Made Qin Pingan feel very relieved. Qin Pingan put away his thoughts and asked, "How did you know those few?" The difference between a dragon cultivator and a dragon cultivator is a world of difference in their respective pursuits. Jigue was a little impatient, knowing halfway through, but each taking what he needs anyway. In the future, my Shuefu also needs something that can really do things. Qin Pingan did not restrict Jigue to what he should or should not do. Instead, he just said casually, "What we have seen along the way is either good or bad." GQ wondered, "Aren't they good or bad?" Qin Pingan smiled, "This is the crux of the problem." Juvenile smiled and said, "Why don't you just become a teacher?" Never thought that a man nodded and said, "I have chosen a school." The Dragon Palace site is a private garden of Longzi in the past. It covers a very wide area. There is a lake and pond, lotus leaf fields in the water, and a grasshopper boat. There are 4 people in the boat, an old man, a beautiful woman, and a burly man. A young man. They are now the servants of the true dragon King Zhu, and they can be regarded as taking refuge in her, the newly promoted king of the East Sea. The beautiful woman stood at one end of the small boat, dressed as a palace, combed the cloud bun, slanted away from the golden steps, lightly put on the powder, and the slender waist was hung with an ancient bronze mirror and a crystal wall. She turned her head to that person. The old man at the stern asked curiously, "Li Ba, do you think the master and the hermit Sama would fight if they didn't agree with each other?" The old man named Li Ba, with gray hair and clear bones, shook his head lightly and said, "If you have no grievances, you can't fight." Beside the old man's feet, there was a burly man sitting cross-legged. In the end, the young man must be in the mountains with successful cultivation. His skin is like jade and his appearance is as beautiful as a beauty. He is lying in the boat with one hand under the back of his head with his legs raised, his mind is relaxed, leisurely, and one hand shaking the jug. The amber liquor fell straight into the mouth, shook the empty jug, sat up, and glanced at the direction of the hall. "It's so heavy, sword spirit, it deserves to be a sword repairman in the Great Wall of Jianghu. People." The beautiful woman turned around and looked at the majestic man sitting like a rock. "Shiman, if you allow both of you to fight the enemy only as martial arts, can you fight with your bare hands?" According to the list of 10 young people in the world, I heard that this young hermit was the martial artist of the 9 realms when he was alone at the head of the city, playing with Xianxia. The man is obviously also a master of martial arts, and he said straightforwardly, "The other party told me not to hit me with a hand." Pure Wufu looks at the world and often only takes Wufu in his eyes. This Hauran native monster named Shiman once carefully weighed the caddies, and he had no chance of winning against the old ape who moved to Xingyang Mountain. The latter was also naturally tough, so he asked Qin Pingan. "That's not called a discussion, it's called death in vain." The woman laughed and cursed, "How old is he? How old are you now? Why don't you die?" The man sneered and said, "According to you, everyone except Chao Ci and Qin Pingan should stop learning martial arts and boxing." Zigui's 4 servants from the water mansion, 1 immortal, 2 jade Pu, plus 1 martial artist at the top of the mountain. In addition to the human monks, there are also ghosts and demons, but they have all been recorded and checked on the Confucian temple. The young man sat up and remembered something. The Xianxia wine in the liquor store on the Great Wall of Jianghu has spent a lot of money, and it has been a drag on the favor. It was hard to buy a pot and I would doubt my life after drinking it. Is it possible that the drinks at the Xianxia banquet were all fake wines? The burly man nodded and said, "It's really awful. I'm not afraid of drinking bad wine, but am afraid of drinking fake wine. I have to stand in front of the drugstore to drink." Between words, the man habitually reached out and took out his crotch. The woman glared and complained, "It's not nauseous. Can you fix this stinking problem?" The burly man's earned voice said, "I can't change it." He also had a catchphrase that Gong Yen couldn't bear the most, "Don't look up, my brother, our brothers won't have that Yenfu or that life." A group of people, the woman's name is Gong Yen and her nickname is Ao. She is a native monk in Fuyao, and she was once a female ancestor of an old sect. She is only homeless after a battle. Gong Yen was quite gloating at the situation of the mountain and water cave. Later she also met a female Jianxia with the surname Nalan, a foreigner whose realm is unknown, probably from the Yuaning realm, and the other party claimed to be from the Palace of the Suspended Landscape. The 2 parties had done a few big deals. The outgoing Jianxia who was in charge of the affairs of the Abbot Shanshui cave at the time was a prodigal lady. She had a relationship with the Middle-earth Confucian temple. She even dared to openly behave as a seller. Those who came to Gongyan would not refuse. Just like going to the street to sweep the goods, the harvest is quite fruitful. The old man's name is Li Ba, his hometown is from Jinjiazu, and the Taoist name is Quenched. He was once a year-long friend of Jinjiazu Wanyan Laojing. He was devoted to the Tao and served as the national teacher of a great dynasty under the mountain. He only assisted 3 emperors successively. It is used, especially the last talented subjugated king, who actually played with the Qingjiang Taoist Academy where the national teacher Li was removed, intending to canonize himself as the leader of the Taoist emperor. When Howren's water walks the darts for the time being, the owner, Wang Zhu, promised them that they could choose good woods and dwell on them according to their wishes. For example, 2 of them decided to practice long-term practice in the water mansion, and the other 2 planned go to Aquarius Island to settle down with the capital, because they are quite optimistic about the feudal King Song Mu. A snow-white figure, like a white cloud falling down the lotus pond, stepped on a green lotus leaf, swaying, finally stabilized, craned his neck, and looked at the handsome man sitting in the middle of the grasshopper boat. Yelled, "Oh hey, this is not the one who used to be famous like Spone-lying Songyun, self-proclaimed Jiangdong alcoholic, self-proclaimed Maiji Tian Y Tian, threatened Toksep the heart, keep the heart fast, being a heart palace. It is rumored that a sigh of breath can catch the wind, rain, cloud, and thunder, and then was almost killed by Zhang Tiaoxia because of the fight for fishing position, Huangman the Jade Taoist?" The young man in white clothes akimbo his hips, "Let me take a breath, I'm exhausted." The uninvited guest stared at the 4 people in Zhouzhong for a moment, then the white-clothed boy turned his head and looked at a waterside pavilion on the shore, and smiled and asked, "In this place I am fortunate to meet so many outsiders. Mr. Xiaomo, tell me what is this called?" In the water pavilion, a weak scholar with a yellow hat and blue shoes appeared at some point, holding a green bamboo stick and replied with a smile, "Probably it can be regarded as a wild scene without going out, and I will meet the expert from the lane." The yellow mantle sitting over there, never thought that he would be exposed to the bottom in one breath, and smiled and asked, "Who are you?" He used a number of blinding methods, and kept his name incognito for more than 100 years. Logically speaking, he should not be seen through his identity at a glance. 4 strange men and strangers in the boat, only listened to the white-clothed young man's serious words, "I am Dongshan." Cui Dongshan shifted his gaze and looked at the old man, with a look of Chinese medicine smell and bitterness, and his face was astonished. "Oh? Isn't this Li Ba from Luxiazhua's national teacher?" Yes, it must be by that. The extremely respected Wanyan Laojing broke his heart, and he no longer wants to stay in the sad place in his hometown. Putting me off, I have to change a place to relax. Cui Dongshan suddenly took out something from his snow-white sleeves, and another golden rooster stood alone, holding the demon mirror in his hand, holding it high and aiming at the woman. "Hey! Where are the monsters and ghosts running? Don't you come back soon?" "It does not work?" The young man in white frowned slightly, put the ancient mirror in his sleeve, and then took out a new one from the sleeve. One jumped, changed position and moved horizontally. It landed on the side of a green lotus leaf. Picking up the ancient mirror, after changing hands to catch it, he shouted, "Stop." Later 2 ancient mirrors were taken out. The 4 most famous demon mirrors in Howren were all displayed by the white-clothed boy. 2 of them were made by the Dragon Tiger Mountain Heavenly Master's Mansion and Fu Luyu Xian sect. 2 sets are the regular mirrors collectively called Mountain Mirrors by Jin Jiazhou, and the Water Mirrors of Delankyu. The latter 2 draws the refining sun essence and moon flower respectively, each has its own strengths. The mountain mirror is powerful, and the obstacles are broken quickly. The water mirror can find the traces of the spirits and ghosts, and there is no way to hide. The 4 people on the grasshopper boat looked at each other. Especially the targeted Gong Yen, who was even more dumbfounded. Is his party a sick mountain master? It was equivalent to the white-clothed boy who had turned around and returned to the place, and put away the demon mirror and angrily, misunderstanding, complaining that this sister is too beautiful. The old saying goes that if you meet in the mountains by chance, it is either a spooky ghost or a fox monster. Shimon looked at the old man and Li Ba nodded. He could take action, grasp his measure and see if he could check it out and explore the depth of the other side's Taoism. The burly man's figure suddenly rose, the water level of the lotus pond around the boat dropped suddenly, the lake in the distance was surging, the waterway cascaded up and spread to the shore. Only the water pavilion where the yellow hat youth was located was not affected. The Shimon of the 9-realm warrior slapped an elbow on the forehead of the white-clothed boy, and the opponent had no strength to fight back, like an arrow leaning into the water. After a while, the white-clothed boy stuck his head in the distance and wiped his face. After the water was over, he reached out and grabbed a lotus branch that was swaying with the water, and then grabbed a lotus leaf that fell towards him, flipped his figure, jumped onto the leaf and yelled, "Thief, dare to commit murder and injure others. This thing is endless, wait, I will call someone if you have the ability, don't run." Cui Dongshan stopped talking suddenly with a face of self-pity, stomping and saying, "I never thought that I would still be the person I hated the most. I acted like this, like molesting a good woman on the street and then being beaten on the ground by a hero. The dude who only dared to run after he got up and yelled at others while running?" Shimon gathered the sound into a line and reminded the other three, "I have ideas." The woman glanced at Huang Man and sneered, "Jade Taoist, can this be tolerated?" Huang Man smiled and said, "Be careful not to overturn the boat in the gutter, I can bear it again." Xiao Mo watched the farce from a distance, without any intention of blending in. He is just the dead man of his own son, not to mention this sect Master Cui as the proud pupil of the sun, does not need Xiao Mo to worry about safety. Cui Dongshan looked at the plump beautiful woman, and recreated a regular mirror with the inscription, "Up to the mountain," from his sleeve. Ah? The old mirror hanging from the waist of this sister is so familiar. The villager sees the villager. Two eyes full of tears? Gong Yin said helplessly, "This guy is so annoying." Xiao Mo leaned against the pavilion pillar and lifted the trekking stick in his hand. "I advise you not to move around, it is easy to kill you, but it is hard to get it covered with water." The white-clothed boy seemed to have found a backer with his hands on his hips and laughed. "Have you heard, did you hear? I called Mr. Xiao Mo to say, I want you to be honest, behave, restrain yourself and be more polite to me." Xiao Mo does not deny that if this sect Master Cui is just a passerby who has just met, his words and deeds are indeed quite awkward. Among Xiaozhou, the Jade Taoist with the highest realm seemed to be unable to bear the absurd behavior of the white-clothed boy, so he planned to do it himself. In an instant, the young man in the yellow hat and blue shoes came to the grasshopper boat, standing on one side of the boat, and gently touching the Jade Taoist's eyebrows with a mountain stick. A green bamboo staff like a scion-long sword, with bleeding threads on the forehead of the Jade Taoist at the tip of the sword. "Fellow Taoist Huang Man, cultivation is not easy, so cherish your life." Xiao Mo smiled and said, "Walking around the world, I often stand by the river. There are no shoes without wet shoes. I only know how to fight and kill. It will not go long." The boy in white began to be a demon again, his hands clapped quickly but there was no sound. As soon as Shimon was about to make a move, his whole body flew upside down, like being hit by hundreds of sword auras at the same time, stepping on the surface of the lotus pond, retreating again and again. Those invisible sword auras are very measured, as if just to make a martial artist of the 9 realms peeked out of the boat. A man and a woman appeared on the shore of the lotus pond. Xiao Mo put away the hiking stick, left the boat and then passed away in a flash and came to his son. When Cui Dongshan saw her husband, he immediately changed his mind, followed Xiao Mo to Qin Pingan, and introduced Huang Man and Li Ba to his heart. After Qin Pingan heard this, he fisted the 4 of the small boats, and then asked Cui Dongshan to call Chiu Du to leave the place together. Jigui suddenly said in his own heart, "Qin Pingan, you and the old Chiu said that I asked her to take away the treasures of the I Ching Dragon Palace. This Dragon Palace will be closed after the first incense stick. If she has the courage to come here, if you have the courage to not listen to my instructions, you will let the old Chiu take the consequences at your own risk if you have the courage to steal things." Qin Pingan smiled and said, "As expected to be Lord Donghai, such a great official authority." Jikyu rolled his eyes. Qin Pingan took Cui Dongshan and Xiao Mo, and only waited for about half of the incense outside the gate of the Dragon Palace site, and Chiu Du panicked out of the gate. Returned to Shindu Mountain together with Yufeng. Cui Dongshan walked forward in the form of pouring water and said with a smile, "Mr. Jigui now knows how to recruit soldiers and buy horses, she is still very progressing. Nowadays in the vast world, in addition to the 5 mountains of the Middle Earth, including Sui Mountain, Jiui Mountain and Yenji Mountain, there are also 5 lakes and 4 seas. Now the gods of these mountains and rivers have the highest rank, and they are all the first grades on the Golden Jade genealogy formulated by the Confucian Temple. It's just that although the 5 lakes are equal to the 4 seas, the difference in the waters under the jurisdiction of the 2 sides is 1 world. Among the Hauran 9 continents, the largest Middle-earth god continent, the master of land and water transport, Mrs. Lushwiking Tundun. According to the boundaries of Sahajan, the East China Sea under the jurisdiction of Jigui includes the vast waters outside Dongbeiapingshao and southeast Tonggishao. Therefore, Jigui chose Tonggishao, the Dragon Palace site, because she will focus on managing the water mansion in the future. In addition to pursuing the river Xuanhuan within her jurisdiction, she also needs to foster the Tongya dynasty in addition to the Aquarius Dali dynasty. The powerful and prosperous new and old dynasties of the Yao dynasty in Daquan in the central part of the continent, the Yu dynasty in the north, and the Yuan dynasty in the old Diyuan, helped Jigue grow and strengthen his dragon spirit. The new South Sea Lord will be in charge of Nan Pasua Chao and Fu Yao Chao in the southwest. Therefore, Qin Pingan wants to sow the mountains and rivers of the three continents, and he really needs to deal with him. In addition to Jigue, his old neighbor, there is also Li Yeho, who previously served as the Shuijun of the Moon Lake. Because of the Shanshui Mansion report of the Shanhaizong, it is estimated that all mountain monks now know that Qin Pingan has obtained a savage river water transport. Maybe the new South Sea King will soon send an envoy secretly and take the initiative to visit the door. It is even possible that Li Yeho will take the time to visit Luapa Mountain in person. Cui Dongshan smiled and asked the old woman, "Is it embarrassing?" The old woman smiles far-fetched. "Is really embarrassing, I can't wait to dig a hole in it." According to a proverb on a mountain in Tongyi's Hao, it would be called, Jiang Shangzhen looks in the mirror, and he is not a person inside and outside. Where does she want to get this hidden Qinjianxian, not only the hermit of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, but also the real dragon who has been next-door neighbor for many years? Wang Zhu accompanied her all the way in the previous half of the incense, and even helped the old woman to select a few water law treasures, not to accept it? How dare Qiu do not accept it? Qin Pingan smiled and said with relief, "Old mothers don't need to feel awkward. There are some misunderstandings that belong to human nature. Let's just say don't have to worry about it. There are many things that are hard to let go of. Today's heart will not be laughed at in the coming year." The old woman was a little relieved. Master Qinjianxian has a lot of them. He used to be an old man with shallow eyelids and a gentleman's heart. Now he has a ridiculous and generous ending. It is the old man's own responsibility. Qiu Du has made up his mind and changed his original intention when he came. For the sake of jealousy, there is nothing to be shameless. Now that he knows the true identity of Qinjianxian next to him, what is the ambiguity? The old woman hit the railroad while it was still hot. Qinjianxian, this trip to visit Shindu Mountain with Lord Yishan is here on the journey of vinegar and vinegar. Even if Sect Master Cui doesn't invite him, the old man will walk with Yishan's face and dare not expect vinegar to become a vinegar. Qin Jiangxian's direct disciple only asked for the vinegar and vinegar to have a name on the golden and jade genealogy of the Shindu Mountain Zhu Shirtang. What kind of guest? Xiaojia is angry. As for the Donghai Jun, who is still the only real dragon in the world, Wang Zhu, the old woman can be regarded as chewing some aftertaste. She and the Fengshan and Fadu around her are all outstanding Qingshan sword immortals, neighbors for many years, and there is a story between the two. Xiao Mo smiled, revealing the secret with his son. On Xiao Mo's side, the monks in the Ascended Realm, it is best not to worry about it. So Qin Pingan said straightforwardly, "To be honest, even if the old mother dared to send the jealous girl to Shindu Mountain for practice, I wouldn't dare to accept it." Before, in the engagement shop on the river bank, the girls dared to lead herself to Huang Yiyun indiscriminately. She was not afraid of the sky and was not afraid of it, and her personality was too detached. Speaking harder, the little girl is a master who does things without regard to her head. Qiu Du glanced cautiously at Qingshan Jianxian. If there is no reason to think of something, the old woman feels a little guilty. Vinegar and vinegar, this little girl really likes to mess with mandarin ducks. Not only did they secretly lead the red line for Qin Pingan and Yi Yunyun before, in fact just this year they met two foreigners, an old scholar and a dull man, who traveled the Jilin River. During the period they rested in the tea shed, vinegar and vinegar. Almost got into trouble. Cui Dongshan whispered, "Sir, I dare to accept it." His own ancestor is called a hidden dragon and crouching tiger, with a wealth of talents, sword fairy like clouds and master like rain. But at the beginning of my creation, I was in dire need of talents. That little girl, according to Xiao Mo's statement, was born in the ancient moon family. Although her blood relationship is weak, she has good cultivating aptitude, hopefully Yupu. It is hoped that Yupu, that is the nailed Yuaning Dixian, but don't ignore the Dixian as a god. In the Taiping years, the Dixian monk is often a signboard with the sect outside the mountain, and it is also a golden signboard. Just like Huang Yun's Pushen Yunkatang, Yi Yunyun really can handle things? It's not that people like Tan Rong and Shuai, who are the master of the law, are running around busying themselves. Furthermore, this old man is a little bit better. It protects shortcomings. Is it a natural fit with your own style? Qin Pingan squinted his eyes. Cui Dongshan immediately changed his words. Mr. is right. When the group returned to the Mishue peak of Shindu Mountain, Yi Yunyun immediately found Qin Pingan and asked if the two masters and apprentices could each ask a boxing. Sword of Coming Chapter 901. Shindu Mountain Band Xianfeng sweeps the flower platform. Pei Qian and xuanhuan, who are about to question the boxing, are 10 feet apart. Next to Qin Pingan, Cui Dongshan hugged the back of his head, ready to applaud the master sister at any time. Xiaomo didn't come, so he went to Luobaetan and was busy. He was going to build a hut next to the Qingyi River and asked him about boxing. Special interest just said one sentence: the visitor is a guest, the son and the girl will punch lightly so as not to hurt their peace. Anyway, all the corners are flattering. Anything can be done? With arms around his chest, Qin Pingan leaned against the railing and said with a stern face, "Let's go back. How do you plan to explain to Eugene later?" They all called Xiaomo to go out together. What else can he do? Cui Dongshan looked embarrassed. He didn't use his heartfelt words and whispered, "The big sister is still facing the husband. It's really unreliable at all. There is no accident at all." Very good. The elder sister didn't hear it at all. This means that Pei Qian really has no distractions. This kind of martial arts mentality is the so-called 10 directions. I am in the center and everything goes with the fist. Really achieved fist with me. Qin Pingan smiled and said, "This is how you wronged the money. It has nothing to do with her. If you don't believe it, wait until the questioning is over and ask her if she has leaked the news." Cui Dongshan immediately said, "Sir, please don't tell the master sister about this matter. I was on the xianxia account book, and it was so easy to pay off." Qin Pingan said, "Indeed. I was very curious and immediately asked with my heart, Dongshan, you are the xianxia account book? Tell me carefully who are before you." Old cook Wei Haoyang, a few of them must be among the best. It is estimated that after leaving Owafudi, Zhong Kuei, whom she had known very early, could not escape, plus our Wei Das Hanjin, Shiro, Chen Lingjun. Only the character account book, without Qin Pingan guessing, must be his own master. Cui Dongshan shook his head vigorously like a rattle. Don't tell me if him killed. If the master sister knows about it, it's probably not about adding an account, but a new account book. Qin Pingan nodded, not overwhelming. Suddenly, Cui Dongshan was full of energy, intending to make up for his work with her husband, turned sideways and acted like a thief. He took out a book from his sleeve, spit on his thumb and was about to turn the book and read the good news, Mr. Visiting Immortals at Sea, Students and Xiaomo. Qin Pingan immediately raised a hand. "Stop, I don't know anything and I don't want to know anything. I will not get involved in your next specific affairs." Cui Dongshan stretched out his hand to cover his heart, his eyes were dull, his lips trembled and said, "You?" Mr. S. words are extremely harsh, and it chills the hearts of the soldiers of the next sect. Qin Pingan turned a blind eye to hearing. "Don't try to drag me into the water, my husband can't afford that person." Cui Dongshan suddenly said, "Some of the magic weapons of cultural and water transport are suitable to be picked separately and given to Nuanshu and millet grains as gifts. Anyway, the students have made up their minds. Even if Zhong Kuei helps you to collect debts, the rest of the treasures are easy to talk about. The big deal will return to the original owner, and I will treat myself as a free boomerang with Xiaomo. These are the only ones who will definitely be killed and won't admit it. If the trouble gets bigger, Zhong Kuei will turn his elbow away and he will not hesitate to move out of Mr. to frighten people. Students are at most paying to compensate, but these 7 or 8 treasures, I really like it when I look at them. It's really hard to choose." Before Cui Dongshan finished speaking, Qin Ping slapped the head with a slap on the head, and then put the booklet in Cui Dongshan's hand into the sleeve of his blue shirt in a thunderous manner. Qin Pingan said heartily, Zhong Kuei sighed, "I will deal with it. You would like to leave it to you? And Xiaomo, you two will go to deal with this senior together." Cui Dongshan suddenly made a fist, raised one high, and it was done. Qin Pingan even added some words afterwards, "Kindly remind his student so as not to be adolescent, do things wrong and incomplete. Remember to see the thunderous senior Eugene next time. You and Xiaomo, if you want to be friendly and happy, and what is the point of spitting stars? You still have to calmly discuss with others, don't bully customers, business is not righteous, green hills will not change the green water, what is your life? Everywhere does not meet, there will be a period later, in the future, there will be more opportunities for you two to meet Senior Eugene, right?" Cui Dongshan's little chicken pecked at rice, got it. "In the future, I will often find Fat Gusu to play the autumn breeze." Qin Pingan began to change the subject. Do you think this questioning boxing can be ended? Cui Dongshan smiled and said, it depends on the sincerity of the master's sister. Pushun Wufu Shuai, as Yi Yunyun's proud disciple, the old master's foundation in the far travel environment is quite good, and he is definitely not a man of bamboo strips. Qin Pingan gently twirled his toes and asked, I will ask Yi Shanju a fist later. This sweeping platform can withstand the fist and kick of the two boundless martial artists? Cui Dongshan smiled and said, even if it is broken, it doesn't matter. The repairs will not take a few days. The students promise that they will be as new as they are when the beginning of the spring festival is celebrated. Qin Pingan was non-committal. Yi Yunyun, Qiu Du, Hu Chuling and the three Xiandushan guests stood together. The old woman asked in her heart, has Lord Yi Shan already known the identity of Qin Jianxian? Yi Yunyun smiled and nodded, I plan to give you a surprise. For the rest of his life, the old woman had a complicated expression and murmured, it is indeed a great surprise. At the old site of the Dragon Palace, I was almost not scared to death by this Qin Jianxian teaming up with the true Dragon King Zhu. Fortunately, it was a false alarm and more than expected, there was still an unexpected happy return. If it weren't for Qin Shanxi's meticulous actions and quietly following all the way, her trip to the Dragon Palace is doomed to have endless future troubles, and the gains outweigh the losses. Once Wang Zhu grasps the handle, it would not be so easy and comfortable to return the stolen goods. Just to say that the temper that Wang Zhu showed before Qin Pingan appeared was really not good. A little further away from Qin Pingan and them, at the moment Sui right side stood disciples Qing Chaolu and Jian Xiuyu slanting back. Before asking the boxing, Cui Dongshan first found Sui right and said that he needed to borrow a land from her. Sui right side certainly has no reason to refuse. Qing Chaolu asked in a low voice, Master, Sister Pei and the old master, do you want to fight with arms or literary fights or stand on your feet and join hands? Sui right side couldn't help but smile and said, let's read less unreliable miscellaneous books. This type of mountain-level questioning boxing is no better than the mountain-level martial arts style. In the center of the martial arts field, both sides were about to hand their fists. Pei Qian glanced at Master from the corner of his eye. Qin Pingan nodded and motioned to this big disciple not to press too much, just treat others with sincerity. Then quietly raised a hand, made an 8 gesture, and then quickly flipped his palm. Pei Qian understood. 8 realms, 10 punches. On Pei Qian's side, Qin Pingan has only had the experience of teaching boxing and feeding boxing twice, especially the first experience of teaching boxing, regardless of the process or the result. In addition, he was used to throwing his hands at the shopkeeper, so Qin Pingan had not really seen Pei Qian's shots, so it was impossible to say that he was not curious. Qin Pingan only knew that Pei Qian once asked Lu Suiyu in the mountain at Leigong Temple in Iazhao, and later in that Jinjiazu, Pei Qian had also been on the battlefield with Chao Xi and Yu Yufu. As for Yu Yufu's martial arts qualifications, methods and character, Qin Pingan is very clear. It is just that Yu Yuhua was interrupted by someone for the first time in his life when he was able to beat the drums by the gods. There was a smile on Sui right face and it was really impossible to overlap the image of Pei Qian in his eyes with the image of Xiao Heitan back then. The young woman in front of her has a bun with a ball, a smooth forehead, a nice face and a slender figure, especially her calm and well-deserved master demeanor. It's hard to imagine such a woman. When she was a child, she was tired, sly, grudges, heart-minded, most afraid of hardship, most likes to take advantage of small things, unconstrained imagination, messy strange words. After Xuanhuan lost his hand, he handed out a palm forward, Pushun Xuanhuan, please enlighten me. Pei Qian gave his hand back, his voice was crisp and his expression was indifferent, Lea Pushan Pei Qian, you are offended. Just these words, this grandmaster's manner, made Qin Pingan mixed with emotions. Want a drink? Qing Kaila's eyes widened and her heart swayed. Sister Pei is the true grandmaster in the legend. She used to be in the Cloud Cave blessed land before, and that punch of the king in 8 punches was really unbearable to look back. His mothers are all those who are not right in their minds. They make myself embarrassed. After I have finished learning boxing, I will find a chance to go to Bailong Cave to find him for a while. Well, I still have to learn from the hermit in doing things. To be prudent, to be able to fight and to run after the fight, then call by Xuani who is invincible one-on-one up. Xuanhuan suddenly smiled and asked, can Grandmaster Pei be able to hold down 1.5 levels this time? The old master didn't feel embarrassed when he offered to raise this matter. Zheng Qingming and Zheng Seiqian on the battlefield of the Dali accompany the capital. These 2 nicknames have spread far and wide in other continents. They are famous for their punches and quick fights with the enemy. Especially when Xuanhuan saw it with his own eyes, Pei Qian uprooted the boulder in the river, and then moved it to Xindu Mountain above the sea of clouds with his own power. The journey is far, thousands of miles away. Xuanhuan thinks that she can't do this strong lift. If the opponent is not overwhelmed at all, it is very likely that he will be unable to survive 10 punches. Then the so-called question punch is just one side. It is nothing more than Pei Qian handing his punches. He can only carry a few punches until he falls to the ground. Then simply talk about it. Nothing to learn from each other, the original intention of strengthening martial arts. Xuanhuan was actually not afraid of losing punches, only that he was meaningless to lose. What's more, it is a questioning boxing. In fact, Xuanhuan knows that it is more of a kind of letting the first game on a chessboard. Although it is not considered that the top national players deliberately feed the low-level players, it is almost the same. Invisibly, Xuanhuan is now facing Pei Qian as half a junior in martial arts. Xuanhuan is very aware of the subtle changes in the heart of this direct disciple, and she will not be disappointed by Xuanhuan, a pure martial artist. Pei Qian, who had originally planned to be in the Yuanyu realm, immediately turned his head and looked at Master. This kind of thing still requires Master to make up his mind. If it were not for Huang Yiyun to question the Master next, the person Pei Qian really wanted to ask the boxing would of course be Xuanhuan, not Xuanhuan, who could not get acquainted with Huang Heji. She and this good-looking old Master Xue had nothing to do with each other. If there is a chance to ask Huang Yiyun for a fist, anyway both sides are full of strength, and they can let go of their hands and feet and give their fists with all their strength. Wu Fu asked the fist in the same realm and it was a bit bumpy. What's weird? There is no public revenge. Qin Pingan nodded and signaled that Pei Qian was down. Xuanhuan and Xuanhuan still don't know that Pei Qian has actually reached the end. This is also normal. How long has it been since the two sides had a farewell at the Yunku Fudi last time? Asked the punch to start. In accordance with the conventions of the arena, do not sign the life and death arena competition, only the high and low martial arts competition. The one with the strongest fist gives way to the first. The floor of the sweeping platform trembled slightly. Xuanhuan was already close to Pei Qian, and he didn't hold back any effort when he took a shot. The punch he handed was soaring like a picture of a waterfall falling straight down, just turning a scroll of a vertical scroll into a horizontal position. Xuanhuan relied on his aptitude and extremely high savvy to integrate the 6 immortal pictures passed down by Pu Shan's ancestors, and created a set of boxing techniques. From each immortal picture he took the most subtle part and refined it into a punch as long as one punch was delivered first. The next 5 moves continue. There is no end, the fist is closely connected, and there is a tendency for rivers to flow to the sea. Pei Qian didn't retreat but instead moved forward. He actually raised his elbow and directly resisted Xuanhuan's punch. Compared with the old man from Zhulu, he was used to the iron cavalry and chisel formation when he was a child and he punched in front of him. The speed was too slow, the force was too light, and he played cotton. Pei Qian stood there, motionless, just raised one hand, spread his 5 fingers and was about to fall on the old master's front door. When practicing boxing, Xiao Heitan was beaten by the old man countless times, and his whole body jumped on the bamboo floor. After a few more harsh words like to walk on the ground, the old man's fist feeding is not over. Xiao Heitan will be kicked by his toes in the center of his mouth or on his forehead instantly, hitting the corner of the wall, causing pain. My heart, my stomach are turning around. I curl up and I have to get another comment from the old man. I like to be a rag so much. Like your master, I am too poor in martial arts and I am tired and lazy in boxing. I'm very happy. I will be sticky every day. Just next to the little Nuanshu, or with your master trash standing together, staring at small eyes, writing on one's forehead and writing on one's forehead, it will not waste you 2 masters and apprentices. Of course, every time he spoke, the old man would not be idle, and would never give Pei Qian a chance to breathe, or step on a few fingers of the middle and small black carbon, or step on her entire forehead, constantly adding gravity. At this time Xuanhuan leaned back slightly, swept across his arm like splitting a wood to make a piano body, sinking vigorously, shaking his fists and howling into the wind. At the same time Xuanhuan kicked out fiercely, with his toes as sharp as an arrow and as fast as an arrow, poking at Pei Qian's waist and ribs. Pei Qian put an arm on his shoulder, then suddenly raised his leg, twisted his ankle and kicked Xuanhuan skillfully, just to stop Xuanhuan's fists and feet at the same time. Finally, no longer standing, she moved a few steps horizontally, and in an instant Xuanhuan seemed to be waiting for Pei Qian's figure to move. His mind climbed to its apex. a mouthful of pure infuriating energy was nearly twice as fast as the previous circulation speed. It is only said that at this moment Xuanhuan's momentum has not lost the 9-level martial artist, and a series of purple fist gangs emerged behind him. Xuanhuan, like an 8-armed god, moved forward in one stride. With one punch, countless punches were scattered, and countless random punches smashed at Pei Qian at the same time. On the stage of sweeping flowers, Xuanhuan's fist was condensed, and his qi was rapidly dissipating in all directions. Cui Dongshan waved his snow-white sleeves and dragged them to the outside of Zhanshan Peak, crushing countless clouds passing through the sea of clouds. Cui Dongshan smiled in his heart and said, "Senior sister can be a man." If it weren't for Pei Qian to stop slightly without showing any traces, Pei Qian could easily carry Xuanhuan's hands and feet at first, and then just slapped it down. After hitting the latter's forehead, Xuanhuan is probably about to lie down in a big pit and sleep. Cui Dongshan asked cautiously, "Mister, I don't think that the master sister blindly cares about it, right?" Qin Pingan shook his head and smiled. "How is it possible? She didn't ask Yi Shanzhu about the boxing or asked Master Shui about the boxing, but she still has to talk about etiquette. Actually, Qin Pingan has already seen it, not only because of her master. For the sake of the onlookers, there is a bigger reason for Pei Qian to be restrained. If Pei Qian makes a fist, he will habitually attack him if he wants to achieve perfect fist. To put it simply, Pei Qian is more suitable for unrelenting boxing to determine the outcome, not suitable for this kind of questioning boxing that needs to stop at any time. Therefore, when Pei Qian was in the 8 realms, Lu Suiyu Leigong Temple at the top of Wenquan Mountain, or later on the wall of the capital of the Daduan dynasty, he played 4 games with Chao Xiai Wenquan in succession, which is regarded as Pei Qian's real shot. If the evaluation is harsh, Pushan Xuanhuai's realm is still too low. Facing a Pei Qian who is already under pressure, he still can't be the touchstone. Cui Dongshan said cautiously, "The big sister may want Xuanhuan to punch more." Qin Pingan angrily smiled and said, "Okay, I have to thank her when my questioning is over." Yi Yunyun hesitated, but she couldn't help but gather the sound into a line, and curiously asked Qin Pingan, "How do you usually teach boxing?" Qin Pingan can't always say that I, as a master, actually never taught boxing for my master disciple, so I had to use a muddled wording. Stupid, teach boxing more diligently can make up for the clumsiness, and when I help to feed the boxing, strong don't feel sorry for the disciple. 6 strokes have passed. Xuanhuan still didn't take advantage of it. The 6 strokes have the same meaning, in fact they can only be counted as 1 punch. Of course Xuanhuan would not be stupid and take the initiative to speak about it. Pei Qian stood on the white jade railing, stretched out his thumb, and gently wiped the blood on the corners of his mouth. Xuanhuan's last move was a bit weird. The opponent had already lost all his fists and it could be made out of nothing. Pei Qian almost failed to escape. He could only temporarily deflect his head, but he was still rubbed on his cheek by that fist. Now there is still Sui right side with a golden body and martial artist's physique. She needs to squint her eyes to see clearly the moves of both sides. Not counting Xuanhuan's cheating. Because Xuanhuan didn't use the means of training qi, it seems that there is an 8-arm to protect the elderly, not to mention the golden body. Tongyi's Hao Pushun boxing method, the principle of pile frame is from the fairy figure, it is really good, not a fancy. As for the 2 sword fairy embryos of Qing Chaolu and Wuxia, they are actually just watching the excitement. There is a flower in front of him and Xuanhuan is no one. In the blink of an eye, he sees the old master Russian dragging out a series of ethereal cyan figures, as if sweeping stage performance in the field. There were many Xuanhuan standing at the same time, making the 2 Jianxiu dazzled. Xuanhuan calmed down a bit. Although it was clear that Pei Qian intended to take a few points, at least the 2 sides were in the same position to ask the punches, so there would not be too much disparity in strength. It seems that not to mention 10 punches, 20 punches are possible. Xuanhuan didn't have any rest, his figure flashed and he approached Pei Qian again, a breath of pure qi in his body, and his circulation speed was faster. This time Xuanhuan chose to disassemble all the 6 strokes, disrupting the order of his punches. Jianghu handle style, fist is afraid of being young and strong. Masters learn from each other and fist is most afraid of old age. Once the fist at the bottom of the box is gradually familiarized by the opponent, its power will be greatly reduced. After the 7th punch, Xuanhuan suddenly used a fist technique other than Pushun, learning from an old senior who met by chance when he was young. It's just that Pei Qian received the fist easily and was not caught off guard. Xuanhuan's 8th fist seemed to show weakness. Pretending to be weak and want to change a bit of pure qi, Pei Qian did not take the bait and dared to fight in close quarters. The ninth punch, xuanhuan has gathered all his lives learning in a punch and has no name yet. He wants to wait until he reaches the 9 levels. Xuanhuan regarded it as the most proud punch in his life. The last time Wutan was a guest at Pushun seeing this boxing, he never liked the first person in Tonggishao martial arts who was courteous. He spoke highly of this and gave a sentence of, exceeding boxing theory is close to method. The punches are like a dragon, and the majestic punches are blooming, such as flooding the entire sweeping platform so that there is a small world of air training. Now that xuanhuan has delivered 9 punches, Pei Qian no longer worked so hard to suppress his own fist. The young woman Wu Fu instantly opened her fist frame, running through clouds and flowing water. Her fist did not continue to flow freely to the world outside her body, but suddenly seemed to converge into a mustard seed. At the same time, the sweeping platform seemed to cover the sky and the sun. Fist, for example, the water descent of the land-based flood dragon, seeing the true dragon in the sky, actually retreats on its own, coming like a flood and going like a low tide. On the other hand, Pei Qian's mustard fist is like a bright moon on the sea. This punch, like a divine edict, evokes a day of bright moon. Pei Qian stepped on the ground, and the entire mountain sweeping platform was nothing different, but below the Banxian peak outside the sweeping platform, the forest birds fluttered their wings and scattered, and the mountains were dusty everywhere. 1 punch, 1 straight line. Xuanhuan fell into the ice cave with a strong breath, so that he could not close his eyes, retreat, or avoid it. Anyway, he was destined to avoid it. Yi Yunyun squinted her eyes and asked Chen Pingan, "This fist is the secret of the Luapa mountain that is not passed on?" Chen Pingan had sleeves with both hands, lazily leaning back against the railing, shook his head and smiled. "No, no one has taught it. It is a fist technique created by Pei Qian." A punch stopped 1 foot away from xuanhuan's door. Pei Qian suddenly took his fist, backed 3 steps and stopped talking, but still didn't say much. Pei Qian just clasped his fist and said, "Acknowledge." Xuanhuan waited until his eyesight returned to clarity, and he felt lingering, sweating profusely for an instant, as if walking through a ghost gate, taking a deep breath, withdrawing 5 steps backwards, holding his fists in return, and said in a deep voice, "Teached." Cui Dongshan hurriedly asked in his heart, "Master sister, when did you secretly make your own punches again without saying hello? It scared the little brother a lot." Pei Qian said, "Not long ago. I used to take the wind kite ferry to Tonggishao with master before." One night, with the independent bow, Pei Qian looked at the bright moon on the sea. It seemed to be within reach, but in fact it was far away. Brand new punch. Yi Yunyun straightened her waist slightly, and then it was her turn to question Chen Pingan. When xuanhuan came to her side, Yi Yunyun asked, "Wait for you to break through to the 9 levels in the coming year, will you dare to ask Pei Qian for the second punch?" Xuanhuan smiled heartily, "Why don't you dare? Master's question is really unreasonable." Yi Yunyun nodded in approval and said, "Very good. You can lose punches but you can't lose. Pushan Wufu should have this state of mind." Pei Qian came to master's side with a shy expression, scratching his head habitually. Chen Pingan smiled and said, "Especially the last punch, the weather is pretty good." Cheng Chaolu and Yu Xiehue became more and more vigorous, and finally it was Master Hermit's turn to punch. Chen Pingan suddenly turned to look at Huang Yiyun and asked with a smile, "Master Yishan, do you mind if I use a handy weapon?" Yi Yunyun smiled and shook her head. "It's okay. Wufu never pays attention to unarmed fists. Just like Wu Tan, Wu Sheng, he will be used to using sabers and wooden spears against the enemy. If none of them is useful, it means that it is a disparity in teaching, and the opponent is not even worth it." Wu Tan pressed on one side. Chen Pingan smiled at Pei Qian and stretched out his hand and said, "Master has to borrow something from you, that is, the trophy you had on the battlefield of Jinjiazhou. Senior Fu Lu Yusheng gave you." Although Pei Qian was astonished in her heart, her face was as usual, because she had never seen Master show any spear skills. Pei Qian still took out a long spear that had been interrupted by her at both ends of the small cave sky, presented by Mr. Xiaomo. However, in recent years she occasionally took out this long spear and secretly practiced the spear technique that was born out of that crazy magic sword technique. In fact, it was just idle and jokes. Chen Pingan stretched out his hand to grasp the middle of the spear, and slowly walked towards the center of the flower-sweeping platform. During this time he weighed the weight of the spear, then twisted his wrist several times, abruptly arced, and the spear circled. "Don't take advantage of it again." Also took advantage of it. A spear like an arm. Chen Pingan glanced at the big disciple of Kaishan, holding back a smile as if saying that he would be optimistic later, and he could learn the essence of how many marksmanship is. Because of the Zhou chief, Qin Pingan is actually no stranger to Wu Pan, who was able to obtain the title of martial saint in Tonggishao. Moreover, martial arts in the world with vast rivers and streams are, in the final analysis, the only way for thousands to return to the sect. Practicing boxing is still sword training, but boxing is not spear skill. How smart is Pei Qian? He immediately turned his head and stared angrily. Big white goose, did you tell the master that I have spear stealing? Cui Dongshan's face was dull, dumbfounded. This can also be suspected. Is the friendship of the two going to be destroyed like this? Cui Dongshan quickly stretched out 2 fingers, his eyes complained, I can swear to God there will be no such thing. Sister, it's really wrong. I'm dead. I'm sorry, Brother Xiao is not the kind of person who likes to chew his tongue behind his back. Pei Qian leaned against the railing, too lazy to talk nonsense with the big white goose, and began to concentrate, thinking that he must carefully observe Master's questioning. Before in Xinjiang Mountain he had to fight with the old ape who moved the mountain. Master was actually useless. Full force. He wore a long gown and stood still in the field. It is not a long spear in the orthodox sense, so there is no tassel and no codification. Yi Yunyun, dressed in yellow, followed and stood facing him. Both of them are stunned fighters and they happen to be alive for the time being. According to etiquette, each registration number. Pushan Yunkatang Yi Yunyun. Luo Poshan's Hula Qin Pingan. Pei Qian grinned. Huang Yiyun is going to suffer. If I remember correctly, it is the first time that Master added Bamboo Tower when introducing himself. Outsiders certainly don't know the mystery, only the pure martial artist of his own Luapa Mountain will know its weight. For an instant, the two Shijiwufu, both extremely young on their respective continents, moved their bodies almost at the same time. Qin Pingan held the end of the long spear, and the spear was pierced into a thread, deified infinitely, and in a flash, a splendid spear shot appeared. The yellow clothes seemed to be more vigorous than the blue shirt, already avoiding the torrential rain. The blue shirt moved sideways, set up the spear and knocked it down. The tempered spear was so strong that the gun body was still the same. Straight, only near the tip of the gun bent out a weird arc, just hitting Huang Yun's shoulder. Yi Yunyun bent over, twisted her waist and turned her body as fast as thunder. She slapped her hand on the spear and at the same time leaned forward slightly. She came to King Shen's body and hit her knees. Qin Pingan just took the 6 steps of Shaking Mountain's fist, moved his figure, only slightly changed the course. The two sides seemed to have exchanged positions in a tacit understanding. Qin Pingan turned around with a shot, still straight out, and Yi Yunyun turned out to be. Just stand there on the tip of the gun, the dragon flies, stepping on the gun body, and leaning away from the head in a green shirt. Qin Pingan leaned back, dragged the spear with one hand and withdrew several feet, suddenly turned around, the spear followed everyone, and a long spear in his hand was cut at Huang Yun's waist. Yi Yunyun's hovering figure disappeared out of thin air, and the majestic chi of the spear fell into the air, slamming into the sky through the gun body, directly splitting the sea of clouds high above. There was still an astonishing sound of muffled thunder shaking. Hit the head with a shot. Yi Yunyun turned sideways, the gun body almost landed straight in front of her eyes, but was still more than an inch away from the flower-sweeping table. The gun body suddenly stagnated and hung in the air, but the ground was swept by abundant air, and a gully was still cracked on the spot. The two sides are running fast and fast. Not only Sui right side is exhausted, but he still can't capture any pictures. Even Xuanhuan can only look at the general idea. Xuanhuan admits that if he takes any punches from both sides, it seems like an understatement, but in fact the questioning can be over. His far-reaching physique, under this weight of spear skills and boxing moves, is completely vulnerable. Yi Yunyun's graceful posture, handing fists with Qingshan, can be described as fascinating, like a picture of an expert walking chanting. The fist is like a dragon, and the dragon is like a water. She seemed to have the upper hand. The punch was supposed to hit the opponent's chin. Qingshan just moved one step horizontally, and the spear on his shoulder seemed to pick a mountain. Qingshan's shoulders were slightly tilted, and the gun body rolled a little. Yi Yunyun instantly withdrew to several feet, avoiding a punch. Qin Pingan put his fingers together, almost touching Yi Yunyun's eyebrows. He turned to holding a long spear again, drawing arcs again and again, as if to deliberately play a distance advantage. On the flower-sweeping table, the luminous luminosity drawn by the tip of the gun is dazzling. The circles and circles may overlap or interlace, which is dazzling. Yi Yunyun is still calm and relaxed. More than 60 piles and boxing moves derived from the 6 pictures of Pushan immortals have been skillfully used in her hands. Compared with her disciple Xuanhuan, she used all her strength to master and apprentice. There is a difference between the two sides. And the number of shots in that blue shirt was roughly 3 and 7, but every time Xianxia's offensive, especially the several bursts of spear, made xuanhuan mistakenly believe that Wu Pan shot the gun here. Because Wu Tan's only successor, Guobailu, this astonishingly talented young martial artist, had a questioning fist with xuanhuan in private. Although xuanhuan was one level higher than the other side, it was still only a small victory. Moreover, xuanhuan knew well that the other party was concealed, and he had not fully used his assassin. Of course, xuanhuan had never pressed the realm and he had not put all his punches. Through the discussion with Guobailu, xuanhuan could roughly see the subtlety and uniqueness of a part of Wu Tan's marksmanship. Today, when I look at Xianxia's marksmanship, I always feel that Wu Tan's moves are completely different from each other, but they are similar in spirit. In the rivers and lakes of the mountain, there has always been a saying that the moon sword has been practicing guns for a long time. If you put aside the suspicion of the famous spearmanship experts, no wonder Xianxia used the word hands in hand when he spoke to the master before. A shot slammed Huang Yun's neck swiftly. The tip of the gun fell through. After that, the tip of the gun pointed directly at the door several times, but failed every time. Huang Yun's face was indifferent from beginning to end, calm and relaxed, and finally reached out and grabbed the tip of the gun, dragged one to his side and kicked it out again. A simple drag and kick, but two unspoken secrets verbally taught by the past dynasties of Pushan mountain masters are used. One punch is called Daozu Qianjiu, and the other is called Water God Backing Mountain. The kick made Qin Pingan fly upside down like a bell, but the tip of the spear also cut into Yi Yunyun's palm with a blood trough with deep bones. Like a shadow, Yi Yunyun swept across and kicked to Qin Pingan's temple. Qin Pingan could only put a palm into his ears in a hurry, and then with a bang, the blue shirt flew out dozens of feet away. Qin Pingan used the tip of his spear against the railing of the flower-sweeping table and stepped on it. The ground is just enough to stop the figure. Yi Yunyun quickly changed her martial arts spirit. She was instantly full of energy, full of fists, and even a few centuries ahead. If a drunkard drinks a pot of mellow wine, he is still not happy. Xuanhuan, who was watching the battle, looked at the master Xianxia, who could not fall to the ground after being kicked. The old master suddenly thought of stealing a punch? Xuanhuan handed out the same Pushan boxing technique, or even the same boxing method, which would only be far from Master Huang Yun. Master once said that the 10 levels of martial arts are full of mystery, and any mountain master who has reached the limit seems to be able to learn boxing by seeing boxing. It's just that Xuanhuan thinks again, far from it, it must be that he wants something wrong. This Lord Qinshan is a gentleman. Although he didn't deal much with this young hidden official, Xuanhuan still had this vision and knowledge. Otherwise he wouldn't be able to teach Pei Qian, a pioneering disciple who excelled in his boxing and treated others with courtesy. In addition, the world boxing method at a high level cannot be used casually. The contradiction of boxing theory and the hedging of boxing methods are all taboos of martial arts. Those exquisite fist moves in the world that came from the hands of other families are not gold and silver, and they can be spent when they are put in their own pockets. Some fist moves are like iron cavalry rushing and killing, while others are formed by pawns. In addition, the rigidity and flexibility of the fist, the speed, the weight, the fierce and domineering of the fist, the calmness and so on, make it extremely difficult for a martial arts master to reconcile. Not only greed can't chew more, even affects the flow rate of a mouthful of pure true energy. Just like Wu Pan, the martial sage of his own Tongyi's Hao, the so-called master of 100 families, successfully cast the world spear technique, how can it really be as rumored that the world is only my family, and there is no spearmanship in the world? Without a husband by his side, Cui Dongshan wouldn't say anything about taking the sect master's heirs. He had already sat down on the railing, leaned back, and glanced at Xuanhuan, who was focused and watching the battle, secretly complained, "Sister, if I were swordmaster at this moment, I must doubt whether my husband has secretly learned Pushan boxing." Pei Qian didn't have a good temper. "This is human nature, you should not fan the flames on my side." The big white goose slapped the slap again on the railing. The master sister has cultivated her heart, and her mind is like a sea and a mountain. It will make the little brother feel ashamed. Pei Qian laughed, "It's almost enough." Next, Yi Yunyun, after changing a bit of pure innocence, passed on Napu Shanz's boxing techniques and some of his own boxing moves. On this sweeping stage he put out his punches heartily and heartily. Sui, who was also a woman, was a bit dizzy on the right. This Tongyi's Hao Huang Yun was indeed a great beauty with temperament and appearance. During the period, Qin Pingan's most dominant move was to round with a shot and hit Huang Yiyun in the abdomen. The latter almost slipped off the ground, but Huang Yiyun knocked on the ground with his elbow and quickly stood up. He quickly returned the color and hit the body of the gun with a punch, and the body of the gun burst out of an arc for a month and a half before hitting Qin Pingan's chest. This questioning punch, on the whole, was still a result of failing to really tell the outcome. Yiyun or boxing is like pounding or like a waterfall. Handing a fist with one hand, if the immortal chuckles the piano, secretly twisting his fingers, the fist is as fast as a flying sword. Her figure moved, the gong was overflowing and the mist filled with water, and Yiyun was like a mountain and river of Shundi who showed off her chi training. In the end, Qin Pingan used a punch in exchange for Yiyun's punch and kick. After that, the two sides stood still and exchanged a mouthful of pure innocence. It's just that xuanhuan is in the mood right now, but he is not at all relaxed. Because it was obviously the master who gave one more foot, but the distance between the two sides' retreat was roughly the same. This means that Qin Shan's physique of the end martial artist is actually higher than that of his master. Pei Qian was a little guilty, but it was difficult for her to say anything during the master's questioning. When I was a child, I watched Lao Wei play chess with Xiao Bai, and the hammer watched chess without talking, a real gentleman. Wu Fu asked fist, others said. It is a taboo. Qin Pingan gently tossed the spear in his hand to Pei Qian. For example, go starts first. Practicing hands, stop here. Qin Pingan seemed to see through Yiyun's mind and smiled. Chao Ci is not as weak as Yi Shanju imagined. Yiyun smiled and said, I know you didn't try your best. After a pause, Yiyun didn't just give her a fist when she just reported her name. This time she stepped back and stood with Pushun standing first. Isn't it the same for me? Seeing this scene, xuanhuan looked solemn. If you continue to fight, no matter who wins or loses, one side will really be seriously injured. Qin Pingan laughed off. Roll up one sleeve gently. Then gently wipe the arm with the palm of the hand as if wiping something. On the left arm, some kind of talisman in layers was erased by Qin Pingan. The same is true when you change your hands and roll up your sleeves. Finally, with a twist of his toes, Qin Ping's legs and knees went down from the ankles, each of which had 3 Jinqi talismans, all shattered. Pei Qian looked shocked. She really didn't know about this. She hit the big white goose next to her with an elbow, and the big white goose raised her sleeves and fell into a tan, and then still broke the power in an instant, began to grin, vaguely said, Master sister, the conscience of heaven and earth, the sun and the moon can be learned. If I know the truth deliberately not to tell, you will no longer be your little brother in the future, you just call my brother. As someone who asked Qin Pingan face to face, Yiyun could most intuitively feel the suffocating pressure. In the end, there was only one thought in her mind. Non-human. Although Yiyun has never formally asked Wu Tan about the boxing, but in a few meetings that Tonggishao martial sage will bring a huge pressure to Yiyun, and Wu Tan will give everyone a natural vigor and vitality. The sense of strong muscles and bones, it would even make the Wufu around him involuntarily produce an illusion of being a dwarf. The feeling of facing Wu Tan before has made Yiyun feel extremely bad, like a weak girl going out, walking alone at night, and meeting a powerful man in the alley no matter what. Whether the other party is malicious will make women uneasy. But at this moment Yiyun turned out to have something that was contrary to her own temperament, and she was ashamed of her martial arts and the surname Yun Xiaotang. Great despair. It's like there is a voice that echoes in my heart constantly. No need to ask punches. Don't ask punches. We'll lose, we'll die. And this kind of suffocation and despair that a pure martial artist absolutely shouldn't have, can't have, made Yiyun, the master of the realm, almost furious. No wonder Jiang Shangzhen would persuade himself not to challenge this person. With such a mindset, how can one fight one continent? How can we help Yunkatang rank among the Haoran sects? Qin Pingan keenly noticed the changes in Yiyun's mood, and suddenly shouted in his heart, Yiyun! Yiyun's originally loose eyes and mind were like hearing a burst of spring thunder, but she couldn't help but gather for a few minutes. Then she subconsciously converged her mind in an instant. In an instant, Yiyun's mind was bright, as if the big world outside her body, and the small world outside her body were nothing. Qin Pingan slowed down and punched but stood still. After a while, Yiyun withdrew from all her minds from the mysterious realm. After nothing was left, the mountains and rivers spread out like a scroll one by one. People with deep memories are like colored scrolls, pictures of life with relatively vague memories are like white-drawn scrolls with fine brushwork, and things that you think you have forgotten but actually seem to be sealed up, are like freehand ink paintings. In the painting there is no flesh and blood, but the meaning is. At that moment Yi Yunyun only felt like a god, standing in the air, high in the sky, overlooking the earth, mountains and rivers. This is the return of the second level of ending. Qin Pingan continued to say in his heart, "Don't be anxious to ask for a fist, you can wait a while." Yi Yunyun's eyes were very bright. She saw that she put away the ancient Pushun boxing frame, stepped back, arched her hand again, and the one in front of her gave her the same feeling. The inhuman green shirt guest silently thanked, but Yi Yunyun no longer had the slightest despair in her heart at this moment. She was silent for a moment, smiling like a flower, and said, "You have to be careful." Qin Pingan asked, "Are you sure?" The original intention was to ask this Lord Yishan, surely he doesn't need to stabilize his return to the true realm? After all, you can only be regarded as a small one at the moment. But Yi Yunyun has already opened her boxing frame, and there are even signs that. So Qin Pingan disappeared in place. Since this Huang Yiyun wanted to use his Qin Pingan realm to roughly infer the level and depth of Chaosis martial arts. No problem. Qin Pingan still chose to keep 20% of his strength, exactly the same as when he was in Gongdalan and xuanhuan. At that time Xianxia also gained 20% of his strength. Huang Yiyun lost all her senses in an instant. Just like that, there is no longer a green shirt in the world. After her head tilted, Qin Ping slapped her head on the side and pushed it hard. Yi Yunyun's body seemed to be suddenly placed in the air. He wore a green shirt and moved horizontally, raising his arm high and making a fist straight down. Huang Yiyun was hit in the waist with a punch and she crashed to the ground. Cui Dongshan gasped, turning his head to ignore the scene. Fortunately, Qin Pingan stretched out the back of his feet extremely quickly, slightly slowed down the opponent's falling speed, and then immediately backed up a few steps. At the flower-sweeping platform, apart from Cui Dongshan and disciple Pei Qin, no one should be able to see this action. Yi Yunyun is still heavily lying on the ground and the whole person seems a bit dumbfounded. Qin Pingan spread out his sleeves again, clasped his fists and said, "Accept." Yi Yunyun staggered and stood up, forced to suppress the shaking of the mountains and rivers in the small world of the human body. She also needs to try her best to stabilize the disordered aura that has been afflicted by the pond fish. She has a complex expression, clasped her fists and replied with a polite smile, and said with a wry smile, "Accept." The same is said of acquisition. How can it mean the same? For a time, the whole sweeping table, as the questioning parties were silent, the rest of the people became silent. Yi Yunyun forcibly swallowed a mouthful of blood, her pale face improved a little bit, and then she asked in her heart, "Is it right that as long as you and Xiaoxia are at the same level, you won't be able to fight at all?" Qin Pingan said, "It's okay to learn from me, but if you ask Xiaoxia about the boxing, you definitely won't have to fight." Yi Yunyun fell silent again. Qin Pingan was a little embarrassed. It doesn't seem appropriate to say anything polite at this moment. Cui Dongshan looked a little worried. This Master Yishan originally planned to become his own honorable guest of Shindu Mountain, but don't lose it because of his husband's fist. Yi Yunyun finally asked, "I heard that the Lu family of Aizhou did not lose. Is Chao Ci really that invincible?" As for Gong Delin's famous blue-white controversy, Yi Yunyun also knew the general process through Shanshui Dibao. Qin Pingan said, "Chao Ci is of course invincible, but it's not completely out of chance." Yi Yunyun clasped her fists and smiled, "Farewell." Qin Pingan was stunned. Cui Dongshan's eyes are even more pitiful. "Look, sir, you have done a good job. Yishanju is not ready to participate in the sect celebration." Yi Yunyun couldn't laugh or cry and said helplessly, "Recover." Yi Yunyun just took Xuanhuan to Mishue Peak, steadily walking all the way without keeping away from the wind. Only after walking far away when she left the sweeping platform in the Zhanshin Peak, between a mountain road with cliffs on both sides, Huang Yiyun stopped and stood on the bluestone steps, supporting the cliff with one hand. Reach out another hand to support the waist just a little bit after rubbing it, it hurts so much that a woman's brow frown. The disciple Xuanhuan didn't dare to breathe for a while, without squinting, pretending that he didn't see anything. The old master quickly walked forward understandingly and silently walked ahead. Xuanhuan slowed down and had already walked out more than a dozen steps before standing in place with his back facing the master. Yi Yunyun stepped up, "Ijo wuxia boxing out of Pushun, don't take it seriously. I can't control what outsiders say, but in the future, Yunkatang disciple who dares to say this to me in person." Just speaking softly, it involved the wound on her waist. Yi Yunyun oozes sweat from her forehead, and she doesn't say one more word. Xuanhuan felt that it was not good for him to pretend to be bored all the way, so he bit his head and said, "This Jiangxian's senior brothers were Jiangxian." He also repaired the sword of the Middle-earth god continent in the early years, and gave the most praise to the sword fairy. The fetus argument seems to become a curse. Yunyun smiled and said, "It's better not to say it." Xuanhuan had to drive on silently. On the other side of the flower-sweeping platform, Pei Qin was full of vigor, even more triumphant than winning a punch. Qin Pingan smiled and didn't say anything. It seemed that Huang Yun was a punch on the mountain, but in fact the distance to someone's punch was still only halfway up the mountain. Sword of Coming Chapter 902. After Yi Yunyun took the lead to leave, Sui didn't say a word on the right. She immediately went down the mountain with her sword and went to Luobao Beach on the banks of the Tsingyi River by herself. Qiu Du took the girl Hu Chuling to travel along the ridge road to Zhangxianfeng. Between Luapa Mountain and Pushun, the two masters asked the punches, which opened the eyes of the old woman. The key is the dissatisfaction of the person who wins the boxing, and the lack of discouragement of the loser, which makes the old woman feel especially valuable. After the dangerous circumstances surrounding the Dragon Palace in Dadu, and then witnessing Qin Pingan's style with her own eyes, the old woman had a good impression of the Shindu Mountain. The high mountains rise and stop. Not to mention that the green shirt in that one is still a sword fairy. The old woman looked into the distance, feeling a little for no reason. How can the mountains and rivers allow people to paint? The earth and the heaven are still separated. The old woman said in her heart, "Vinegar Master will try to help you find a genealogy status in Shindu Mountain, but this matter may not be successful." Hu Chuling nodded, without asking why Master changed his mind temporarily. The old woman hesitated for a moment and reminded, "Vinegar, if you really become the ancestor of the ancestor here, don't be willful in the future. I believe you have already seen that the young Qinjianxian, although he is a very good person, look at that girl Pei, the martial arts level is so high on her master's side, she is still so disciplined and courteous. Cui Xianxia is about to become the lord of the sect. By her husband she is not the same as respectful." But what the old woman truly feels assured and trusting in Shindu Mountain is not even these so-called sword immortals, sect masters and Zhijing, but the kind of smile from the heart. Qin Pingan treats everyone and everyone treats Qin Pingan. Like the two children whose names and identities are not yet known by Qiu Du, they seem to be full of unreasonable respect, dependence and closeness towards Qin Jianxian. This is actually a very strange thing. In the Haoran sect, there are young monks who have a lot of generations and realms from the old people. Many people have seen Zhang Li and worshipped in the Patriarch Hall on the road. They may not even greet them. Dare to fight, be cautious, be in awe, and be restrained, let alone meet a patriarch who founded a sect. Hu Chuling had a pair of watery eyes, his smile turned into a crescent moon, and his voice was soft and glutinous. "I listen to Grandma." On Cuta's side, the girl still likes to call her master Grandma in the dialect of her hometown. The old woman touched the girl's head. "I don't know who will be blessed in the future to marry us in jealousy as a wife. Well, that young graduate named Chao Sunny looks very good. Also, Chao Sunny is still Qin Jiangxian's proud disciple." The old woman glanced at her jealously. It would be better if the two of them could be beautiful and happy. Shenxian family couple, old age together, full of descendants. The old woman laughed to herself. Sweeping the flower platform, Cui Dongshan and the two children reminded, "Today's Tu Kungqun, you two remember to keep it secret and don't say a word to the outside world." Qing Chaolu nodded and agreed. As for why, Fei Naozi thought about what those some didn't do, and if he had that free time he could practice more punches and make another table of meals. Xuanhui is a person who likes to dig into the roots and wonders, it's a good thing, what's so shameful? If this is the hometown, Lao Tzu will ask who the sword has won with his true ability, and it will be awkward to beat the gongs and drums and the wine table brags and farts. Cui Dongshan frowned, a snow-white sleeve leaned back over his shoulder. "Ha!" Xuanhui immediately sighed, "Listen to Sect Master Cui. Last time, 9 of them were acquired by this big white goose with the supernatural powers in their sleeves. Except for King Sun Chun, the others were full of suffering, especially by Xian, who is not afraid of heaven and earth. Now I see Cui Dongshan. It's almost like seeing a ghost. Yu Xiaohui also remembers it fresh. It's okay, when I asked Jian to beat Cui Wei, the next one is you, the big white goose." Cui Dongshan grinned, he put his arms around the slanted neck abruptly, his head knocked, and then lowered his voice. "In the future, I want to ask the sword to beat your master Cui Zhanglu. It is not easy. I still want to ask. Sword me the next sect master? I am so courageous, ambitious, admire and admire." Why, your kid is now ambitious and wants to usurp me as the sect master one day. Who borrows your bear heart and leopard courage? Quickly speak out and listen. Yes, body became stiff when he slanted back, immediately looked at Qin Pingan and yelled, Sect Master Chui, if you are so innocent, I'm going to sue the hermit. Qin Pingan turned his head and smiled. Since our next sect is the sect of Kendo and you are also a sword repairer, wanting to ask the seniors like Sect Master Chui about the sword is the meaning of the question in this mountain, and it happens to be you practicing the sword. Is there anything you dare to dare? I can put my words here now. In the future, whether you win your master or Chui sect master, I will invite you to drink. You slanted back and immediately felt confident. Even if he was still strangled by the big white goose, he began to laugh. Hi, my lord, then I have to practice drinking right now. I heard that the small wine shop in my hometown has countless wine bureaus, but Master Ingguan has never been drunk. Of course, the second shopkeeper has never lost money. Qin Pingan quipped, Actually, I drink moderately. It's just that the drunkards in the shop have too much alcohol, so I rely on my peers. Cheng Chaolu feels a little regretful. If Nalan Yubi is here, she must have recorded this golden and jade good saying in the book again. Chui Dongshan Yufeng left the flower sweeping table, and there were a lot of tedious tasks waiting for him to solve. On the way to Yufeng, she secretly glanced at Huang Yiyun and Shui Fuzi who were walking towards Mishue Peak. Found the white cloud, Yiyun raised her head and waved to Chui Dongshan. Chui Dongshan is amazed, and he deserves to be an end martial artist who has just reached the first level of Guasian. Furthermore, Yi Yunyun's disposition is indeed related to her own Shindu mountain, majestic. After hesitating for a while, Chui Dongshan made up his mind and planned to meet Huang Yiyun alone for a while. The wind rushed, his snow-white figure drew an arc in the air, settled on the blue stone road between the blue cliffs, and when he came to Huang Yiyun he smiled. Congratulations to the master of Yeshan's martial arts. Yi Yunyun had already stopped, holding her fists in return, and frankly said, Thanks to the help of Lord Qin Shan, otherwise if I ask Wu Tan about the boxing in the future, I will have a big problem. If I am not careful, I will have to settle down with the king of Luzhou. Nearly the end. Chui Dongshan sighed and stopped talking. Yi Yunyun smiled and said, Sect Master Chui has something to say, he is not an outsider anyway. Chui Dongshan said, It is true that after returning from the barren world, my husband was injured not lightly. He only talked about martial arts, and he fell from Guasian to energetic, otherwise he would not be able to negotiate with the old of Jianghu Palace. Lu Yuanhuan happened not long ago. Yi Yunyun's heart was shaken. When Qin Pingan asked about a boxing with herself, she was only a little more energetic. She immediately turned her head and looked at xuanhuan, the last 2 furnaces of yuhua pills given to us by Jianghu Palace, how many are left? Yu Feijin believes in Tanzhong law, no matter how many more are there, bring them anyway. Xuanhuan was even more surprised than Yi Yunyun. The old master couldn't hide his stunned look. The fall of a pure martial artist was not a trivial matter. It was rarer and more troublesome than the fall of a chi trainer. But even so, Qin Shanzhu agreed to be with the master. Qin Quan of the game. Qin Shanzhu is indeed an upright gentleman, acting generously and upright, and a man of glory. It's no wonder that the young Qin Shanzhu was able to serve as the last hermit in the Great Wall of Jianqi, as a sword repairman in a foreign country. I believe that with Qin Shanzhu's character, the Great Wall of Jianqi will surely be well received and praised. I have to admit that now Pushun owes Shindu Mountain a favor from heaven, but such a debt of favor, is it not a kind of great deeds that cannot be met? Just a scan of the flower table and questioning boxing helped Master to reach the first level of return to the real. You see, Pu Shan Yun Xiaotang has a deeper foundation, and Yu Gong for the entire Tongji's Hao can also shock those monks from other continents who have misbehaving. Even if Wu Xing Wu Tan is not in his hometown, as long as the master has a solid state, he is a great sword immortal like Su Hao, who is extremely jealous and dare not ask the master about the sword easily. Chui Dongshan hurriedly waved his hand. It was not because of this that I complained to Yi Shan. There is old Lu sitting in Qingjing Mountain, and my husband's Yuhuawan is indispensable. The reason why I nag about this is just like what Yi Shan said, we are all our own family, there is no need to hide and tuck. Fortunately, Huang Yiyun is already a cultivator of the Yupu realm. If she is still Yuanying Dixian Tusk, if she wants to break the bottleneck and enter the 5 realms, she needs to face the demons. The consequences are unthinkable, and it is estimated that her husband will have to add a little more. It's a dull love debt. Chui Dongshan shook his sleeves, stretched out his hand and scratched his face and asked in a low voice, Master Yi Shan, Can I ask you for the identity of the progeny of Pushen Yunkatang? But this matter regarding my true identity, Pushen has at most 3 people. Know that you Shuahui Pomstan Rome. No problem. Yi Yunyun said quickly and nodded without hesitation. She knew that it was the trouble involved in Pushen's 7th fairy picture. The 3 of them walked towards Mishue Peak together. During the period they needed to pass by Zushan Qingping Peak, Yi Yunyun looked a little embarrassed. After hesitating for a long time, he tentatively said, Sect Master Chui, can you take the liberty to ask your husband who is he? How to practice boxing? Chui Dongshan embraced the back of his head with his hands and slowly said, in my hometown in a foreign country on a long journey on the way home, in the mountains and outside the mountains, in the hearts of the people in the world, in the beautiful scenery of the mountains and rivers, in the sun and the moon, in the beauty of the world. In the mud of the world, where swordsmanship is like a cloud, after hope, disappointment and hope again, the husband is practicing boxing alone, asking questions about the world and asking himself about the boxing. Turning his head, the white-clothed boy finally smiled and said, so my husband never regards Chao Ci as a great enemy, a mortal enemy or an old enemy. There is Chao Ci in the world. There is a pure Chao Ci in front of the martial arts road. A kind of great fortune, so it will only make Mr. climb higher and faster. Yi Yunyun heard the words, her mood was agitated and her thoughts flew over. After a moment of silence, she couldn't help asking, there is a Fengzong Tudi newspaper, and it says that Qin Pingan asked for a punch at Gongdalin and Chao Ci. Isn't the punch special? From start to finish, punches and punches? Chui Dongshan turned his head and sighed fiercely, Fart, what a thief, dare to slander my husband with a conscience, it's so wicked. Yi Yunyun will be suspicious. Qin Pingan was at the flower sweeping platform and asked Pei Qian to imitate Yi Yunyun and Xue Huai to make punches. He had more than 60 piles of punches, and Pei Qian had already practiced like a 7 to 8th. Even Yi Yunyun and Xue Huai's tricks to suppress the killer skills at the bottom of the box. Pei Qian also learned a lot, full of spirit and passed on more than Pushen's diary. This put Qin Pingan, who had originally planned to put on the air of the master and help his disciples check and fill in the vacancies, into an embarrassing situation with nothing to say. Cheng Chaolu thinks that Sister Pei's punching is of course very beautiful, but it seems that the hermit is still punching with others, which is better. Xuanhui felt that it was a pity that Bai Xian was not present today. Pei Qian stopped his figure and turned to look at the master. Qin Pingan smiled and said, not bad. Bringing Pei Qian to Qingping Peak, Qin Pingan smiled and asked, what did you want to say before? Pei Qian said, I discussed with Xue Fuzi the last punch. Xue Fuzi shouldn't stand still as if waiting to be killed. As a pure martial artist, I think this is wrong. In fact, when the punch was over, what I want to say is that I just feel that Xue Fuzi is an elder and there are too many outsiders present, so I am not ashamed to speak. Qin Pingan smiled and said nothing. Pei Qian felt that most of the words were wrong. This is a very good reason, so I should talk to Fuzi Xue. Qin Pingan nodded and said, but it's not necessarily what you said at that moment, so your hesitation and ultimately your failure to say it is appropriate. From Master's point of view, it may be more correct than the truth itself. Pei Qian was so surprised that he showed a somewhat ashamed look that is not common nowadays. From Xiao Heitan back then to Pei Qian today, I have always believed in one thing. The good truths in the world are all on Master's side. As for herself, she knows the truth of a fart. Qin Pingan laughed softly, we reason with others not to deny others. In addition to give others goodwill, in addition to our own clear conscience, we also need to pay attention to a sense of proportion. This is the difference between Taoism, the only way but the way. There are thousands of them, which vary from person to person and from place to place, so it's hard to be a good person. Reached out his hand and patted Pei Qian's head lightly. Qin Pingan had a gentle expression and said softly, if you can think about it today, Master can safely teach you 2 homemade punches and a certain half punch. In fact, Qin Ping's 2 punches created by him are both a boxing technique and a sword move. One is simple and the other is complex, which is like 2 extremes. One of the punches, or swordsmanship, is named Pianyue. It is powerful and kills. The strength is not low, and it is most suitable for violently in the battlefield. Qin Pingan added, but it's not a hurry. I will go back to Shaodong and retreat within a day. When the ceremony is over, I will find some free time to teach boxing. Now and the disciple are both at a level of enthusiasm, and Qin Pingan is really a bit embarrassed about feeding Pei Qian. Pei Qian felt relieved. Qin Pingan was in a peaceful mood and glanced at the scene outside the mountain. The mountains are endless and the clouds and water are indisputable. The reason why Chao Qingqing didn't show up at the flower-sweeping platform to watch the battle today is because the next sovereign of the internal decision, as a monk in the Dragon Gate realm, has begun to officially retreat and settle the golden core. Study and practice do not delay. Such a proud disciple, you can't find it even when you play the lantern. However, Chao Sunny's current retreat is not on Qingping Peak or Mishue Peak in Shindu Mountain, but on a new mountain that has not been seen until now. Cui Dongshan used the array method to show his blind eye. Even Yi Yunyun neither Qiu Du could see through the truth. The other two old mountains, Cui Dongshan, were named Yunzhengshan and Simiashan. The main peaks of are Wuqiao Peak and Jingxing Peak. Two monuments were erected on the tops of the two mountains. Cui Dongshan personally seal-carved, Wuqiao cannot go out, and heaven and earth purple qi. Cui Dongshan will discuss matters in the Patriarch's Hall in the first session, and raise an issue in public, and among the younger generation of monks who will be included in the next genealogy in the future, the first sword repairman who is among the monks of the Yupu realm can enter the master of my Chaofeng. And Chao Qingqing is the first monk who prepared for the mountain and Xingfeng. Obviously, Cui Dongshan intends to create a next sect tradition. Every next master of Qingping sword sect will be the peak master of Jing Xingfeng. So today the Qingping sword sect boundary actually has a rough shape, with the immortal capital, clouds steaming and preserving, 3 mountains rising side by side, 1 main and 2 auxiliary. Although Xiaoma built a hut on the side of Luobaodin, he actually paid attention to Chao Qingqing's retreat and the 2 questions on the top of the mountain. For an ascendant pinnacle sword repairman, it is a little distracting and does not hinder things. Xiaomo is now waiting for that Eugene to trouble him. That incident has nothing to do with my son, and it has nothing to do with Sovereign Shui. Yes, I copied your nest under the sea and emptied your family. Can you bear it? As long as the fat man nodded slightly, Xiaomo would only practice his hands with Yupu realm. Sweeping the flower platform, only Qing Chaolu and Yu Shehui were left, 2 fellow villagers who were in a foreign land but didn't feel the slightest hardship, sitting on the railing and chatting together. Little cook, if you give you hundreds of years of work, you can't have the realm of our hidden officials today, right? It's necessary, it won't happen in 1,000 years. Why do I think you are so proud? What? Would you like to drink with me in the future? Forget it, master will be angry. Brilliant. Be afraid of master. What kind of sword repair? Among the 9 people of the same age, Bai Xian, Yu Qingzhang and He Xiangding, the 3 of them were born in poor alleys. Even Bai Xian's master would follow the tall walls and huge doors of Taixiang Street and Yuhu Street without half a coin. Relationship. And Nailan Yubin, Higu, Yao Xiaoyan, the 3 of them are all children in the big family. Sun Xuanhuan, actually not bad, he is a distant relative of Sun Jiyuan, a sword repairman in the Yupu realm. He slanted back and followed Qing Chaolu. They were not bad at all. There was no shortage of money at home and there was no big money. So it is said that a group of people is based on the origin, and the family is based on the inheritance. Anyway, each has its own life. In Jianxi Great Wall, I don't really like to compare this. Reincarnation is also a skill. If he is not convinced, he will be moved from the back alleys to those 5 streets by virtue of swordsmanship and combat exploits. Because the eldest sword immortal once set a rule of immovability, the house is in the upper 5 streets of the big family, unless there is no one in the family, otherwise there will be only 1 sword repairer in the lower 5 realms, regardless of age, all have to go to the battlefield to hand over their swords. If you feel that you will die if you go, then move early and move out of the 5 streets as soon as possible before the war. So in the Great Wall of Jianxi, apart from the fact that there are no graves, there is not even a so-called ancestral house. Even a few old sword immortals with lettering on the head of the city, their ancestors have moved their homes in history. Just like the Dong family, during the 100 years when Dong Sanging traveled alone in the wild world, he almost failed to guard his ancestral home. The 5 streets and alleys struck by iron, the sword repairs are like flowing water. Because of the relationship with Mi De Jiangxian, these children are not unfamiliar with the gold-branded Qingshan wine from the wine shop in their hometown, the Dumb Lake wine from the back, and the innocent brands. Mi De Jiangxian used to be on the side of Luapa Mountain. He was a leisurely street slipper. Whenever he came to the worship platform, he liked to chat with Bai Xian most about the great achievements of Chunban's High and Summer Palace. You slanted back a few times. In his leisure time practicing swordsmanship, he just sat aside with a small bench and regarded it as a book. Listening to Miyu, there was an old Jindan monk in the wine shop where the hidden officer and the treasurer folded together. One day he drank high and he hung an innocence sign on the wall. On swordsmanship I can't beat Xiaodong. But if it's about drinking, even if I put 3 legs on the wine table, I can easily win Xiaodong. If I am not convinced, come to me. After a beating, my nose and face were blue and swollen the next day. I took advantage of the opening of the wine shop just before dawn and ran again, but on the opposite side of the accident sign, I wrote one more sentence. Yesterday I was too drunk and drunk. Don't count. As a result, he sneaked home on the way and it was useless to go sneakily, and he suffered another flying sword. Xuanhui said suddenly, "Little cook, we must form golden pills in the future, raise yuaning and enter the 5 realms." Qing Chaolu nodded and said, "It is necessary." A group of 3 people left the South Sea Water Palace, stopped for a while at the Xielong Stone, and then went to the old site of the Dadyulong Palace, which was connected to the sea. Finally, the group of 3 officially landed ashore on the west coast of Tonggishao. A middle-aged man of abundance, accompanied by a beautiful maid in colorful clothes, and a small, dignified man who obeyed. It was Li Yeho, one of the newly promoted 4 sea kings. When he set foot on the land, his figure was slightly stagnant, but he quickly returned to normal. The maid on the side is carrying a piano bag, named xuanhuan. She likes to eat silverfish in the book, and the master next to her happens to be the #1 book collector in the entire Haran world. The short man carried a short spear on his back. He is now a water ghost. He was an end martial artist before his death. By coincidence, he went to the Jianghu lake where the owner had changed many times in history and served as the chief guest. Xuanhuan most admires Lu Qi, and at the same time most annoys someone who brags and does not draft. The Jiujing Wufu named Shiman, who was born in Luxiazu, is a terrestrial dragon with its roots and feet. Before, Shiman was in the former site of the Dragon Palace in Dadu, and he had a battle with his predecessors. At that time, in the spectator team beside the true Dragon King Zhu, there was still a cowering young man. He habitually bowed his head and bent over, as if he was extremely afraid of Wang Zhu. Even when the young man was talking with Wang Zhu, his eyes were erratic and never dared to face Wang Zhu. Xuanhuan smiled and said, "Mrs. Tan Dan knows how to be a man." This old master of lush Viking, the road number Qingzhong, is now the master of land and water transportation. The fishing fairy who guarded Xialongxi back then seems to be in Jidu, Beiju Luzhou now. And those Nanhai lone horsemen were actually given to Jigue by Mrs. Tan Dan in private. I heard that the Zhuozhu in the lush Viking treasury was directly emptied and given away. This is not a small amount of money. Get connected everywhere. In fact, on the side of the host, Mrs. Tan Dan also expressed her respect, and her courtesy was not light. Li Yeho smiled, "You will learn more in the future." Finally asked, "This time we are going to the pole to talk to Qin Pingan about business. Will we be killed?" Xuanhuan angrily said, "What kills pigs?" Finally said, "That's what it means." Li Yeho sighed, "Qin Pingan will discuss it very well. I'm afraid that person is responsible for the guests. Embroidered tiger. Or half an embroidered tiger Chui Yang." Finally asked, "Can I discuss it with Qin Pingan? The previous one is too much to see." Li Yeho shook his head and said, "This time is not appropriate, let's talk about it later." In the previous meeting at the Zhongtu Confucian Temple in their spare time, there were a large number of people, and they all went fishing at the Mandarin Duck in Zhu. The strangest thing is that these guys are mostly end-of-bound martial arts, and the lowest is also the mountain state. If you are a wandering martial artist, it seems that you are not qualified to sit and fish there. And among the great masters of martial arts, there is xianxia, who is nicknamed Long Bow. There is a middle-aged man next to xianxia, sitting on a bamboo stool that he carries around all the year round, with a small fish basket tied around his waist. In the eyes of outsiders, he has been wandering the ruins of the ancient battlefield all his life, and he does not ask anyone. Don't fight with people either. The fish basket around this person's waist is not the Dragon King basket, but a treasure known as the Wandering Immortal Cave, Bottomless Cave, on the top of the mountain. It is rumored that it can raise tens of thousands of ghosts and ghosts at the same time. Because this pure martial artist is too isolated from the world, I don't know his name. There was only one person who leaked his tongue with others at the wine table, calling him Laoji, the admirer of Mrs. Aoyama gods Tianzi, the kind who didn't dare to look at her from a distance, just look far away, miss her a lifetime of infatuation. There are also the masters and apprentices of Leigong Temple in Aiazhao, Peiaxiang and Lu Suiyu. Wang Fushuan of Baijiluzu. Wu Tan the martial sage of Tonggishao. The chief guest of the Moon Lake, finished. In addition, there are many top sects and 10 dynasties. The total number of people must be a small 20. Only Pei Cup, Song Changjing, and Li Er were not present at the time. The younger generation Chao Ci, Zheng Qian and Yu Yufu also did not appear. Of course, there is something to talk about Li Er's fist. The old man Wang Fuwan had a conclusion that the old man takes care of himself. After all, he was the only one at the time who really had a fist with Li Er. Li's second fist is not heavy and unhappy, so. Half of the mountain warriors have bet on the no-loss game of Liu's AI Zhou, but of course they all bet that Chao Ci will not lose a boxing in the next 500 years. In fact, she is a pure martial artist, and his lifespan is far inferior to that of a gash trainer. Even a territorial martial artist who has reached the top is only 300 years old. But there are exceptions such as Zhang Xiaoxia or Tongyi's Hao Huangyun and his ilk. This is also the reason why Zhang Xiaoxia was the top martial artist in the world before the rise of the Pei Cup, and she sat in this position for thousands of years, but the old man was reluctant to ask people about it for many years. Zhang Xiaoxia did. It's just like idle clouds and wild cranes just obsessed with fishing. The reason is very simple. In the eyes of the old man himself as a pure martial artist, it is the biggest impurity to be reluctant to die. Only Yu Panshui, the supreme emperor of the Shenmi dynasty, and a bully who claimed to be Zhou Paoshan, instead of treating money as money, they dropped 501,000 Guyuqin respectively, betting that Chao Ci would lose. Wait until the young hidden official was on Yuan Yang's side, under all eyes, and fought with the immortal Yunyao, and then on the Gongdalin side, there was a terrifying blue and white battle on the other side of the Gongdalin. So some people started to mutter, but unexpectedly Lu from AI Zhou gave a sentence, which has been sealed. According to legend, in this gambling game, the Lu family in Aiazhao, who was sitting in the village, gathered almost 40,000 Guyuqin and lost too. Therefore, many old monks on the mountain, as well as a large number of emperors, generals, and patriarchs of the great dynasty, treat the bet as if they were to bet for the teacher, or for the direct disciple, or for the treasury to save money for interest. Although the collection is late, you have to wait patiently for 500 years, but it is destined to make a steady profit without losing the income due to droughts and floods. The credibility of Liu's gold letter signboard is very strong and reliable. Those who have something good, the more they think about it, the more they feel that something is wrong. Don't you lose the game, Lu Jubao, this the god of wealth? Would he lose if he rushed to Chao Ci early? 10,000 steps back and said, even if anyone really beats Chao Ci, the Lu family of AI Zhou will also make a lot of money. Sure enough, there is no business in the world where Lu Jubao will lose money. In the Dadyulong Palace site, after the three of Li Yeho left, the beautiful woman took off her boots and sat on the bank, dipping her feet into the lotus pond water, gently rippling ripples. Gong Yen remembered the previous confrontation. I still wonder how I can't understand how the young man in the yellow hat and blue shoes at the time found out the hidden traces of all of them at the same time, especially the Jade Taoist who was a fairyland and was extremely proficient in escape. The means were precisely traced by the wisps of sword aura, aiming at them one by one. The burly man said, "Is it because of his heart?" Gong Yen shook her head, "Not very similar, not to mention that a few of them, they are not young children who have just gone down the mountain. They will all be extremely careful when they are cloned, holding their breath. Not to mention listening to the heart of a monk. Not everyone can do it, just like the ordinary master at the foot of the mountain. Naturally he can't hear the heartbeat of others. On the mountain monks do the same to monks. Probably only Fu Lu Yuxian, Dragon Tiger Mountain Zhao Tianlai, Fire Dragon True Man, these great monks who have ascended to consummation, may be able to listen to the voices of immortals and even monks in the same realm." Daohao Li Ba, who had quenched his palm, suddenly said, "It is a heartstring that is more subtle than the voice of his heart." Taoist Jade rubbed his eyebrows and said helplessly, "Could it be an ascendant swordsman? It's just that we are in the world, is there such a number one person?" Gong Yen quickly patted her chest and smiled charmingly, "I scared my old lady to death." Li Ba said, "Like the Taoist Nen and the fairy Chao Rong of Aquarius Island, it seems that they all popped up suddenly, just get used to it." In the water pavilion, Zhigui leaned against the railing, resting his cheek with one hand in a daze. At the bottom of the steps outside, there is a teenager standing with a slightly raised forehead. There used to be a four-legged snake in Mud Bottle Alley. Song Jisin, who was an eyesore, was thrown into the yard next door several times, but he crawled back every time. She was often stepped on the sole of the shoe by her maid, GQ, and repeatedly ran, otherwise it would be early in the morning to pick water from the lockwell. After listening to some breeze, GQ returned to his house and saw it. He often kicked it. This young man who had not succeeded in refining the shape for a long time was given the surname Wang, Xiongju, and Yusha by Zhigui, and he was rewarded with a Taoist name Hansu. The young man was carrying a glossy purple gourd on his back. Jiku turned his head and raised his chin. The poor young man immediately understood, moved quickly, hid in a place where the master could not see, and stood, lest the master's eyes become annoyed. Jigue laughed and said, "I heard that there was an execution platform in the ancient heavenly court. There were a few magic weapons which were specially used to deal with the earth immortals and dragons who violated the heavens. In addition to the sword and the broken mountain halberd, there are 2 more. The knife seems to be called Xiaotu and Xianxia. That Xianxia is in Qin Pinggan's hands. I would have known that I would not let you watch the wind from afar at sea. When you two meet, you will definitely dislike each other and then click. Click tut." The teenager shrank his neck in fright. Xiaomo started to practice cultivation at Luobao Beach on the banks of the Tsingyi River, saying that it was cultivation, but in fact it was turning a book. For today's Xiaoma, the only practice is to choose an avenue, above the road, no one has gone before, so that he can hope to be among the 14th realms. What's more, even if the great monk who ascends to the top of the realm finds a way to the sky, the difficulty is still as great as an ordinary master. Otherwise, for thousands of years, the number of monks in the 14 realms in the world would not be so scarce. Furthermore, Xiaomo also set a threshold for himself. He must be a pure sword repairman and enter the 14th realm in one fell swoop, without taking a side door or taking shortcuts. Like the awe-inspiring swordsman Pei Min, one of the 3 great swordsmanship Pei Min, it is estimated that he also has this thought. Anyway, this Pei Min Xiaomo would definitely find a chance to ask Jian. Xiaomo placed some futons and benches casually on the open space outside the hut that looked like a suntan field. Chui Wei, on the right of Sui, the 2 Yuanying realm sword repairmen often go to Luobaotan to inquire about sword practice with Mr. Xiaomo Qing Chaolu, and Yu Xiehue go as often, and Pei Qin will occasionally come to watch while he is busy at the ferry. As long as someone visits, Xiaomo will sit on the bamboo chair under the eaves, with the bamboo stick on her knees as if. Cui Dongshan left Mishue Peak this day and came to a blue cliff on Qingping Peak, bending his fingers and gently knocking on the door. At the top floor of the immortal mansion, Qin Pinggan calmed his mind, opened his eyes and nodded. Qin Pinggan sits cross-legged with a green shirt and bare feet. Everything is kept simple. There are no extra decorative objects in the house. Compared with the previous case in front of Qin Pinggan, there is only one more horizontal sword for traveling across continents. Cui Dongshan just stood outside the door of this small dongtian, without any nonsense, and talked to her husband. Fei Jin sent a letter from the Longgong site, saying that it is the new South Sea King Li Yeho, and he is coming to our side today as a guest. I guess he came to discuss the sale and purchase of the water transport in the Luluo River. The husband just keeps on purifying and practicing. The students can go to discuss the price with Li Yeho. The gentleman can rest assured that even if the husband does not show up, Li Yeho will never think of Xiandu. The mountain hasn't served guests well. It's enough to have me treat guests. Li Yeho and Jigue are one of the 4 sea kings, so if you want to leave your own waters and enter the boundary of the East China Sea, you must first ventilate with Jigue. Moreover, you need to report to the Zhongtu Confucian Temple. After getting permission, Li Yeho can leave. Qin Pinggan suddenly got up and put on a pair of cloth shoes. Wait a minute, I just have something to go out. I'm going to take Xiaoma and take a trip to Xiaolankyu. Let's go down the mountain together. Walking out of the Changchun Xiadongshan, which was used as a temporary cultivating place, Qin Pinggan came to Cui Dongshan and said with a smile, "It's better for you to go there, just pay the price on the land. I talked to Li Shuijun about business and it was really open, can't speak." To say that he is a bag fast Qin Pinggan is really a bit emboldened, and he will never belittle himself, but is ruthless to kill familiar. Because Li Yeho, who was still at the Confucian Temple Gongdalan at the time, was still the Moon Lake Shuijun, brought a maid with a very high rank in robes, and an unsurprisingly looking martial artist. They visited the husband together. Li Yeho gave a gift at that time. The priceless piece of drunk as mud stickers, apart from the wine bugs in the copybooks, is extremely rare. The key is the copybook itself, which can be regarded as a large lake of 600 miles rich in water transportation, and it is an excellent place that the genus of dragons dreams of. The place of monasticism. After going down the mountain together, Cui Dongshan went to find Li Yeho. Qin Pinggan found Xiaomo at Luobaotan and went to Xiaolankyu together. Above an intercontinental ferry. Millet grains, small heads swayed, small shoulders swayed, shoulders carried a golden pole, holding a green bamboo stick and going around the ferry at night to watch the mountains. Uncle Bai Xian sat on the railing of the bow, holding the rail with both hands, looking up at the bright moon and exclaimed, I am so valued by the hidden officer and there is a long way to go. Named the Dao surname and wanted to participate in the next festival by himself, that little hermit, Qin Li, received this treatment? The colorful world, soaring to the city. The shop was closed and there was a man with a stooped figure standing behind the counter, drinking wine and looking at the wall. After the second shopkeeper leaves, there will be no new accident cards. Some people have made troubles, but they are finally passed away by the man. Some restaurants in Feishing City wanted to follow the gourd to draw a scoop and copy this action. As a result, no one was in favor of it and it was embarrassing to be a mess. Yup. Heaven and the world, the only one. How do you learn? Impossible. Think about it. Starting tomorrow, I will learn to write with the second shopkeeper. I will write a letter of appointment for Nayland Xuanhuan, who has never had a daughter-in-law. Beside Miss Zhou, she doesn't have a smiling face without me. This must be the case. Since Aliang said it personally, I have to ask Miss Zhou. I will go tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. Please don't scold Aliang anymore. Unlike me, you never scold him for a while. Whoever dares to be my face in the future, if you scold him for a while, it's asking someone Zhao Jian with me. Aliang is a close friend at the gambling table and even a good match at the wine table. You actually don't understand his good intentions of my family, only I understand, so you can kowtow to me. My name is Miao Ran. As for the last name, it is engraved on the top of the city. Want to live in the jar all my life. Swordsmanship is not high, but I haven't been counseled. I heard from Aliang that there is a kind of building called brothel in the world, and there is a kind of wine called flower wine in the world, but the second shopkeeper said no. Who should I trust? Sun Juyuan is actually poor in swordsmanship, so he deceived women from other villages. I heard that monk Howren, all pay attention to a good pen and inkstone for life and enjoyment. Don't they need to practice swords? The land sword fairy of the two realms of Jindan Yuaning, haha, I'm so ridiculous. It turns out that the sword fairy there is cheaper than the drinks of the girl. Me de Jiangxian can enter the summer palace, why can't I go? You King Mihu, you sword sages, listen to my advice. The left and right swordsmanship is actually so general, it is the number of 3 axes. If you don't believe it, go and ask the sword. Spring dreams are easy to find, but golden cores are hard to find. Zhong Yuan never came here to drink, I really missed too much. I woke up and liked her better than yesterday. Han Huizi of Taihui Jianzong has rescued me twice, and has not thanked me personally. I shouldn't. Xia Songhua looked at me twice, there is a play. Wine beauties are xianxia, everyone, we are not drunk or return. I beg you to help that dog Day. Who is a great sword immortal who is good. Go to Qingtu and engrave a word in front of the fierce word. Just take it as a surname for him. Pick up a son for nothing. Happy. The person I like has a way of punching and drinking is the best style. It doesn't matter if he is not a sword repairer, this girl is. 10 drunkards and 9 palates, what can I do? Thinking of a monarch is like a crescent moon, full night and night. The next big sword fairy engraved on the head of the city will definitely be my Yuan Liang. A safety card was hung beside. I believe that after Yuan Liang, there will be more engraved swordsmen such as Du Ling. In fact, on the wall of the small wine shop, there are a lot of such a pair of accidental signs hanging next to each other. Maybe friends who drink at the same table, full of alcohol, and take advantage of the wine to finish writing one by one. It could also be 2 jianxiu who didn't know each other at all before, or just a familiar face, but never spoke to each other, just like a temporary visit, and said hello. The second shopkeeper became an official and went to the summer palace, and it seemed that drinking would not have a taste. Luozhini in the summer palace is really beautiful. The second shopkeeper will get the moon first when he is near the water. The blessing is not shallow. What is the second shopkeeper? What is the new hidden official? I see you outside every time I squat by the side of the road to drink with him. How often do I call him by his name and call him Qin Pingan? Let's pull it down. You Huang Shou and the second shopkeeper drink again and again, and you can't wait to lower your head into your crotch, a lot of age, and laugh like a son. Someday there is really no need to fight, just go to Beiju Luzhou. Remember to call me together. As Lu Ji said, maybe the second shopkeeper is a woman and she hides so well. No wonder Yu Yufu is so fierce. It turns out that women embarrass women. So what about girl Ning? Worry. Reading for good luck, peace and tranquility. At first glance, I borrowed it from the second shopkeeper, but the words are good. Quit drinking is harder than practicing sword. What's the difficulty of quitting alcohol? I quit every day. Nothing happened today. It's safe and sound. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.